November 5th, 2024. An unidentified space object fell directly into the capital of the country of R. The huge shockwave instantly destroyed the island nation, leaving the cities in ruins. The 5 major Blue Star nations, overnight, sealed the place off from the rest of the world. And to find out what happened, they sent their best scientists to the island. Since then, a new era has dawned for mankind, and we're transported 1 year ahead to China, the city of hygiene, where a guy named Sam was bragging to his best friend about his conquests on the love front. Except his friend wasn't interested. And it's not because of jealousy or anything. It's that Jean had just come back from the future. Until a minute ago, he was in the middle of chaos. In the future, some people have awakened new powers and abilities, and some people have changed jobs and become losers. In the new world, there were secret dungeons, and beasts awakened to fight with people. Mortals had only to gather their resources together and fight for survival. Civilizations collapsed in an instant. Only the laws of the jungle remained, where there are only the weak and the strong. To improve their skills, Jean, along with his brother, fought monsters. However, their enemies attracted a ferocious, high-level beast with incredible strength. That day, Eric tragically died trying to protect his brother. His brother sacrificed his life to lead him out of the secret world, but they were attacked by monsters sitting in ambush. And the reason for everything was the Ascension Crystal. The boys couldn't just give it up. In the age of chaos, weakness is the original sin. Going back in time, the first thing Jane asked was today's date, November 12th, 2025. That meant he had been reborn and returned to the day of his awakening, 3 years ago. Judging by the view from the window, it was now morning, and there were still a few hours to go before the ability awakened. Suddenly, the general manager of the company, named Tom, who had come to fire Jean just because he wanted to. Tom was not known for his kindness or politeness. He always used his high rank in the company to manipulate the regular employees. In his past life, Tom transformed into a true monster upon awakening, taking the organs, limbs, and lives of ordinary people in exchange for resources to increase his power. He also forced innocent people into prostitution and did terrible things to please his hideous soul. So when Tom fired him, Jean was happy to leave. After all, it wasn't long before everything was about to change. In a previous life, our hero had beaten Tom to a pulp, which landed him in the police force, and missed the first stage of awakening. And when he came out of the isolation center, almost all people reached the 10th level and above. As for his family, Jean had only a brother, Eric, with whom they spent their entire childhood in an orphanage and survived by stealing. While still in the orphanage, Eric was caught by the police and imprisoned for 15 years. But recently he was released from prison, and then Jean's life became colorful again. Eric was released early because he had awakened top-level powers in him and was able to make a great contribution to the fight against monsters. After his release, his brother took Jean with him and they went on difficult missions together. Sometime later, a terrible incident occurred. Our hero accidentally killed an ordinary man. That's when he realized that in him awakened forces. That's when he learned that thanks to his powers, he could deprive another person of his power level by simply killing him. Unfortunately, Eric didn't allow our hero to just kill someone, and as a result, the evil people became even more evil. All of which resulted in them losing all of their loved ones and dying. Having been reborn, Jean was determined that in this life he would no longer experience the helplessness and hatred he had felt. If kindness is not encouraged, Jean will turn to justice through the heavens. He will be more ruthless than the most ruthless people. He will control his own destiny, and his enemies will be his incentive to become stronger. And in the end, he will take the throne of the victor. Not wanting to waste a minute, Jean went to the Awakening Center, where the test results gave him the rank of F and the profession of plunder. With his current rank, he can only take 1% of the value of an ability or characteristic when he kills people. It's just like in his previous life. As a reborn human, Jean knew the secrets of all known dungeons, secret passages, traps, and teleporters. More importantly, he could upgrade his talent to the rank of SSS in a short period of time. Suddenly our hero heard Tom's voice in the hallway, boasting on the phone that he had awakened a talent of rank S, Healing Grasp. The awakening of a talent of such a rank is very rare, and this was a great opportunity for John to start pumping immediately. Taking out a pre-prepared shoelace from his shoe, Jean prepared himself. Waiting for the right moment, he crept up to Tom from behind, threw the lanyard around his neck, and began to choke him with all his might. A moment later, Tom summoned a healing spirit that could cure almost any disease. But having tightened the cord even more, our hero whispered with a smile, "Fool, it's too late to heal." Having finished what he started, Jean took a part of Tom's skill, thus raising his rank to E. But Tom had a lot more mana than our hero had expected, and as a result, he raised his level to rank S. In his previous life, it had taken him 3 years to raise his abilities to rank A. And now, just a few hours after his awakening, he had surpassed himself in his previous life. In addition to such a dramatic jump in rank, our hero had gained Tom's spirit summoning ability. Eager to test his newfound power, Jean summoned a new spirit. The Dark Emperor is our hero's unique spirit, rank S, and is able to absorb a portion of the enemy's power. Even in the age of chaos, the Dark Emperor will be better than any human. Spirits with S rank have a maximum characteristic value of 200 points except for health. And the higher the rank, the higher all the stats are. Currently, the Dark Emperor has 3 characteristics that have the maximum value, and the disadvantages of this spirit are its intelligence, defense, and attack range. But despite these disadvantages, it is the strongest S-rank melee spirit. The Dark Emperor's ability to gather a portion of power doesn't work on other spirits, but our hero's abilities make up for it. Simply put, Jean has just gotten rid of an incredibly formidable foe, and gained an equally formidable ally, and Tom's corpse, the Dark Emperor, was hidden in the toilet on our hero's orders. Now the world is undergoing unprecedented change. Millions of people have awakened unique abilities. Jean's former classmates were no exception. There were 2 guys with high ranks, but the highest rank was a guy named Lu, who had awakened the power of the S rank. In his past life, Lu had a relationship with the Academy's top hottie right after waking up. After that, they killed many innocent people in various ways, and also joined one of the factions. After thinking for a while, Jean decided to do the same thing to him as he did to Tom, to prevent another enemy from appearing. Ironically, most of the S rank awakened were bastards. Thanks to his awakening, the Lu could summon a spirit to fulfill his master's wishes. The name of this spirit was Lord of Prayers. It was because of her ability that Lu started dating the most beautiful girl in the school. The Lord of Prayers was akin to a genie, except she didn't have a wish-granting ability, and she didn't have a great combat ability. But given her ability to grant wishes, none of that is a problem. Having taken possession of the beauty's mind and body, Lu couldn't wait to take advantage of her. All his high school life, he dreamed of spending the night with her. It's no wonder that after receiving such a powerful spirit, the jerk quickly lost his mind and thought he was all-powerful. Realizing that such power in the hands of a madman is incredibly dangerous, Jean arranged a meeting with him, saying that he too had awakened an S-rank talent. Thinking that our hero wanted to use his power for selfish purposes just like him, Lu was even more excited. 5 minutes later, Jean arrived at the hotel. From the doorstep, the guy began to ask our hero about his abilities, and in general he was interested in our hero's plans. Leaning to the guy's ear, John whispered, "The secret of my skills is that I can summon the spirit of the Dark Emperor." With a sly smile, added our hero. Feeling someone behind him, Lu turned around in surprise, and at that moment, the Dark Emperor hit him with all his strength, knocking out a couple of teeth. The force of the blow was so great that the guy slammed into the wall opposite and lost consciousness. After knocking the guy out, Jean activated his main skill to take his power. But to his disappointment, there were no outstanding abilities for the Lu. But then how was he able to awaken the S rank? Jean thought. Realizing that his power was not hidden in his characteristics, our hero decided to take his abilities. After the successful robbery, Jean got the wishing book. Is a rare skill of rank S, able to apply 3 forms of desire. The first form increases the number of hits by 30% and multiplies experience. The second form increases evasion from attacks by 20%, and the third form increases luck by 10 times. Wish book is a really good ability. It's good for both offense and defense, and it can also increase luck. Like Lu, Jean was able to summon a skill spirit, but with one difference. Since it was a stolen skill, there was a limitation in the difficulty of the wishes being granted. And also, unlike the Dark Emperor, our hero's Lord of Prayers was able to talk to him. Lord of Prayers is a special spirit that can do more than any other. And if the Book of Wishes is in Jean's hands, the spirit will be able to fulfill his every wish. And one more limitation. If our hero makes too many wishes, this spirit will lose all its power and simply die. But in return, the Lord of Prayers can give advice, thanks to a high index of intelligence. If you approach everything wisely, the Lord of Prayers can be the best helper. For example, there is no need to ask him for treasure. It is better to ask him where the treasure is. This will allow the spirit to retain enough strength for emergencies. After all, creating something out of nothing takes a lot of energy. It's much easier to create a winning lottery ticket than it is to create a bottle of plain water. After a little thought, Jean said, Lord, if I want my brother to be released from police surveillance, how much will it cost me? Given Eric's rank, it would take away all of his spirit power, causing him to fall into silence for a while. Also, due to the complexity of the wish, the process may take longer. It turns out that the ability of the Lord of Prayers is not so limitless in the hands of our hero. It seems like the most appropriate solution is to ask for information about other S rank abilities. While Jean was inquiring about the new spirit's capabilities, the Dark Emperor had already hidden the Lu's body. Suddenly, our hero noticed that in the chest of the spirit hidden watch, the hands of which are in the same position. Seeing the bewilderment on our hero's face, the Lord of Prayers said that the images of spirits are directly related to the abilities and power of the host. It is strange that the Dark Knight does not have a single skill related to time. Perhaps this watch appeared because our hero has traveled through time. But it's too early to draw any conclusions. He left this question, but then decided to use his power and clean up all the dungeons and secret areas. When he left the room, our hero met a beautiful woman, who did not understand what she forgot in this hotel and in such a form. Apparently, since her death, the desire for Lu has been breeding. Going down to the front desk, Jean asked to extend room 414 for a week and canceled all housekeeping. This would be more than enough time to keep the corpse odor from spreading to the other rooms and to draw suspicion away from our hero. Meanwhile, a guy named Derek was trying to find out from his spirit why his time travel had been rescheduled. Sir, when I returned to you, an unknown entity took some of my power. Because of this, there was a distortion of time-space, the spirit answered anxiously. These words made Derek very nervous. After all, he had spent a fortune to avoid any trouble. Derek had awakened an extremely rare ability of rank SSS, time travel. With this skill, he killed one of the gods to break through to another dimension. But unfortunately, he encountered one man from the illogical clan. This mute warrior was able to easily defeat him. So Derek had to activate the time travel skill, using up all of his spirit energy. And this caused the Time Lord to fall into a time loop. He couldn't even think that this could happen. He wanted to return a week before the general awakening, and ended up returning just hours after. And his spirit had lost its power. After a while, a small amount of power returned to the Time Lord, and she discovered that the thief of her power was in Hangzhou. It was good that she was able to detect the missing part of the power, but Derek was worried about the other. Why did this even happen? Going on a search now was too risky. The Time Lord had lost her main ability and she was useless in close combat. And besides, she had suspicions that the thief might be a person from the illogical clan. After thinking it over, Derek decided to go to the dungeon and find his former teammates, to help them find the thief. Meanwhile, in one of Hangzhou's neighborhoods, a gateway to the dungeon has opened, and the newly awakened heroes rushed in, hoping to gain new powers. However, when it came to the question of who would go first, there was no one willing to go. Everyone was very scared. But luckily for them, our genie decided to take on the role of pioneer. Some were delighted with his courage, but others thought he was crazy to go into the dungeon alone. In a previous life, our hero was one of the last ones who dared to enter the dungeon, but this time, it's different. When entering the dungeon, a full body duplication takes place. This is done in order to return the person to their original state after the dungeon is over. That is, all damage received after the passage will be cancelled, and in the case of death, the person will be resurrected. And only after dying 3 times, a person dies for real. In addition, you had to choose one of the 6 main specializations: mage, archer, warrior, guardian, assassin, priest. In his past life, Jean chose the warrior class. This profession is quite mediocre up to level 20. However, this time things are quite different. Our hero has 2 strong S-rank skills. Therefore, he decided to ask the Lord of Prayers for advice. The spirit advised him to choose the profession of mage. Thanks to the 2 high-rank skills, after reaching the 20th level, Jean can gain the profession of Mage Seer. In addition, using the power of the Dark Emperor, our hero will get rid of the main disadvantage of the mage: close combat. Lord, and what happens if I choose the mage and the skill robbery? Then what profession I will go after the dungeon? Jean asked excitedly. I do not recommend choosing looting, because it simplifies the ability of the mage, replied the spirit. Although Lord of Prayers gave very good advice, but our hero could not just give up his main ability. Therefore, given the strengths of the Dark Emperor, our hero was most inclined to choose assassin. But he was concerned about what profession it will change to when he goes to the next level. Spirit suggested that the profession will change to Assassin Outlaw, which will be a great combination with the skill of robbery. But he still recommended choosing the profession of Mage, because it is easier. After listening to all the arguments and thinking it over, Jean chose the profession of Assassin. Although the Mage was indeed more suitable for the skills of our hero, but the robbery, this is the main skill through which Jean becomes stronger. After choosing the profession of Assassin, the system began to create a unique interface, taking into account all the features of our hero and his new profession. As an assassin, his strengths were dexterity, speed, and intelligence. Assassin's special skills also became available. Shadow Hunt increases the damage on the target in case of a successful attack from the back. Phantom Strike gathers power from the entire body in a single blow, dealing critical damage to the enemy, throwing him backwards. Speed doubles your speed. Swift Strike increases dexterity by 5 units while decreasing stamina consumption. Quick Reaction increases vision in combat by 10%. In addition to the special skills, Jean also received a special assassin weapon, the Rookie's Shadow Blade, which adds 6 points to attack power. The assassin profession was ideal for fighting in a team with the Dark Emperor. After choosing a profession, the system asked for the exact number of people going through the dungeon. And lastly, the system asked you to choose the difficulty level of the dungeon. And of course, Jean chose the hardest. Now, the rank of Dark Emperor equates his strength to that of a warrior of about level 30. That's why our hero was so confident in his abilities. The first dungeon was quite trivial. As soon as Jean entered it, he was met by a whole horde of low-ranked red-eyed goblins. Although they were very weak monsters, they had a good amount of life and an interesting skill that increased their speed. But all of them pale in comparison to the Dark Emperor, enhanced by a special skill. Without thinking long, Jean ordered his spirit to destroy all the goblins in his path. One blow was more than enough to turn the red-eyed goblin into a lifeless pile of meat and bones. For killing goblins, our hero received experience points, which were required to increase the level of the profession. Very quickly, the Dark Emperor filled this dungeon with a sea of blood. Ordinary monsters had no chance of standing against such an opponent. A barrage of powerful attacks turned the goblin squad into mincemeat in seconds. For killing 15 red-eyed goblins, Jean received 2,250 experience points, taking into account the reinforcement of the complexity of the dungeon and the special skill of the Dark Emperor. The experience gained was enough for Jean to reach the 6th level of the profession. Fast passing the dungeon on high difficulty, our hero received a golden treasure chest. In a previous life, the reward for passing this dungeon was quite different. This applies not only to the chest, but also bonuses. Bonus accrual works like this. If a lot of people passed a weak dungeon, they get minimal bonuses. But if people were a minimum, and the difficulty is maximum, the bonus will be appropriate. Simply put, the tougher the dungeon, the higher the bonus. Originally, this mission is low level. Even on maximum difficulty, brought only a chest of black iron. Chests are divided into different types: bronze, black iron, silver, gold, dark gold, diamond, holy, earth, heaven, and immortal. Each species is categorized into 3 minor species: common, rare, and experimental. Thanks to the Lord of Prayers, you can easily get a gold chest. The main thing is to use the hints correctly. As a rule, the higher the level of the chest, the higher quality items it contains. From the golden chest, our hero received several vials of advanced potion, several low-rank items that are worth like trash, 1 fire spell and some coins. But all of that is trash compared to the main reward: 2 top-level items, a light guard armor and a short guard blade. Given his profession, Jean was most interested in the new blade. This dagger has a skill called Bleed, which, when successfully attacked, causes the enemy to lose health points for 10 seconds. And Light Armor Guardian, increased protection from light blows, and compensate for a small part of the damage received from serious attacks. The ideal equipment for Assassin. After clearing the first level of the dungeon, the system asked for a nickname, and our hero came up with nothing better than Dark Emperor. Meanwhile, at the entrance to the dungeon appeared a notice. Congratulations to the player Dark Emperor with the fact that he became the first in the world who single-handedly passed the dungeon on maximum difficulty. The reward is a lucky ticket for 10 rounds of Wheel of Fate. This news got the rest of the Awakened thinking, and Derek, as a time traveler, noticed something unusual. The first announcement of the dungeon wasn't due until the following evening. Realizing that something was wrong, he asked his spirit, Are you sure time travel doesn't change the course of events? Of course, time travel allows the soul to return to its previous body, nothing more. It can't affect the course of events in any way. Answered the spirit, replied the spirit. After thinking for a while, Derek had two theories. One, the Dark Emperor in this world took the power of his spirit to become stronger through the dungeon. The second, the Dark Emperor from the future takes his spirit power to travel to the present. The thing is, his spirit power can't improve his ability, so his theory is unlikely. But that doesn't change anything drastically. Derek needs to stop him now, or he'll never get his spirit power back. Meanwhile, our hero was rejoicing over 10 tickets to Wheel of Fortune. It's a rare thing to spin it even once. Holding these tickets in his hands, Jean called on the Lord of Prayers. He hoped to win something of value with his help. In the Wheel of Fortune, you can get anything from an F to an SSS. Besides, any way you look at it, it's just a lottery, where the chance of getting really good stuff is practically zero. Simply put, it doesn't matter how many tickets our hero has, it's his luck that counts. Lord of Prayers can help to knock out certain items of the highest rank, but in this case, he will sleep for 6 months. And such a long sleep of one of the strongest spirits will greatly affect the overall fighting ability of Jean. After thinking for a while, our hero decided to ask the spirit to conjure at least 2 items of rank S or higher. That way he wouldn't waste too much energy, and there was a high chance of getting a really good item or skill. At this stage, any high-rank item wouldn't be out of place. Calling upon the Wheel of Fortune, Jean noticed that almost all the useless items had disappeared from it. After activating the Wheel of Fortune, Jean obtained some pretty good items. A high-ranking communication crystal that increases the spirit's range of movement, a true crystal that increases the spirit's energy limit, and an extreme crystal that gives the spirit a short-term boost. It's a shame that only the extreme crystal is of SS rank. The other items are far inferior in power. Since the Dark Emperor is our hero's main fighting force, Jean gave him a communication crystal to increase his attack radius. Now, this spirit is able to work within a radius of 6 meters. I know it's not much, but before it was less than that. In addition to these, Jean also received a crystal called Spirit Enhancement, and there was absolutely no description for it. So, to get a better understanding of the matter, our hero asked the Lord of Prayers what they could do. Upon seeing these crystals, the spirit with maddened eyes said, "Sir, let me take these crystals for myself." Since the Dark Emperor had also improved, Jean thought it would be fair to reward the Lord of Prayers as well, so he gave him these crystals. By absorbing them, the spirit increased its total energy and also accelerated its energy recovery, allowing it to fulfill its wishes more often. These crystals were all very good, but our hero was hoping for a crystal that would improve his skills. Even from his past life, he knows that the best item to improve his skills is the Space Crystal. And to find it, you have to go forward. With all the rewards sorted out, he finally left the dungeon. Jean can now be considered the strongest awakened, and this is just the beginning. For he has a plan to get to the top of his game in no time. And to do so, he's going to the Tower of Babel to get his first achievement. One of the features of the Tower of Babel was that there were an infinite number of floors, and the higher the floor, the higher the difficulty. Simply put, it's a great place to level up. But Jean goes there for another reason. For every 10 floors you can get a ticket to the Wheel of Fortune. As soon as our hero came out of the dungeon, a beautiful woman approached him and offered to team up with him. But despite her attractiveness, Jean just walked on by. Even from his past life, he had learned the lesson that teaming up with strangers was a bad idea. The Tower of Babel treats newcomers very well, and on the first floors gives them a chance to prove themselves in a fight with weak monsters. So, our hero, with the help of the Dark Emperor, literally a couple of blows cleared the first floor. And as a reward for clearing the first floor, Jean received 5 fragments of fate. And for being the first awakened person to clear the first floor of the Tower of Babel, the system made another notification about him. On the second floor of the Tower of Babel, there were more serious opponents awaiting him, with greater strength and intelligence. However, this will not help them much in the battle against the Dark Emperor. Interesting facts. Every successful passage of the floor of our hero, the system showed the rest of the awakened. Of course, people quickly wondered who the Dark Emperor was. Having cleared 9 floors in less than 7 minutes, Jeanne finally reached the coveted 10th floor, the only way out of which would be to clear it, or die. In a previous life, the first person to reach the 10th floor had his profession leveled up to level 20. In this dungeon, our hero will have to face a kobold named Ilfin. This is the first boss, Tower of Babel, which has very serious skills. His skill, Crazy Blow, combined with a machete is not the best combination for our hero. One hit would be more than enough to send Jean back. Fortunately, our hero had a Dark Emperor whose power allowed him to inflict incredible damage to the enemy. Despite his increased defense and high health points, the Ilfin could not resist the spirit's onslaught. But even the powers of the Dark Emperor were not enough to kill this boss with a single successful attack. Of course, he was able to take away a good part of the monster's health. But the most important thing is that now Ilfin entered the state of rage. When activating this passive skill, all physical abilities of the boss increases tenfold. But along with this, the intelligence scores are lowered. So dodging such predictable attacks was quite easy. Using his advantage in speed, the Dark Emperor came at Ilfin from the rear and struck a decisive blow. Thus, our hero became the only person who passed 10 floors of the Tower of Babel, while spending less than 15 minutes. As before, the news of the sweep and the reward of one lottery ticket was sent to all awakened people. Now people not only wanted to know his name, but also to break his record. Honestly, they were just jealous. The increased activity in the dungeons awakened the magic stone. When the world's first second-ranked player on a level 20 blue star appears, many places around the world will begin to experience grief-level disasters. The scientists were not happy about this information. They didn't understand what exactly would happen, but they knew that nothing good should be expected. So the head of the R Scientific Corps asked them to find the Dark Emperor. Meanwhile, Jean summoned the Wheel of Fortune. Just like last time, he hoped to get something valuable from the Lord of Prayer's abilities. But this time the reward was a little worse, except for one S-rank space crystal. Thanks to it, you can return to the real world. This time, Jean took 2 magic crystals to improve his own strength and defense. But he gave the 2 life crystals to the Dark Emperor to make him stronger. By absorbing them, the spirit added 5 points to his strength, 4 points to his defense, and a full 80 points to his health. At this point, our hero still has 2 lottery tickets and 275 shards of fate. The right thing to do is to collect 10 lottery tickets and then make a wish through the spirit. You also need to accumulate a few more shards of fate to then go to the store and exchange them for something useful. Before going further, the guy decided to sell all the equipment that he had in his inventory, because the sooner it will be sold, the more expensive it will cost. Currency in the game and real life is a little different. The current exchange rate is from 5 to 6 yen. Right now, equipment is very expensive. For example, black iron level equipment costs several hundred gold coins. After thinking for a bit, Jean decided to sell 2 rare high-ranked weapons as well as a top-level spell, which he sells for a very high price. But even though the price was very high, these items were sold out in less than a minute. And in terms of real money, he made about 5 million yuan. At that moment, Jean realized that he had underestimated the rich and their financial capabilities. Anyway, he still got good money. Now his main goal is to climb to the 20th level. The Smiling Coffin, Great Tomb, and Baki Society are 3 infamous clans that emerged after the Age of Chaos in a previous life. Bailey, one of the 8 leaders of the Baki Society, carried a knife instead of an umbrella in rainy weather. Among the 10 guards of the Great Tomb, 2 of them, the Blood Witch Sarah and the Icy Fury Torkil, who contributed greatly to the development of the clan. And finally the leaders of the Smiling Coffin, the Grand Masters who have awakened the S talents. At this point, they were all our hero's main targets. With their help, he wanted to go to Sin City. Sin City is a place where people torture each other. It is full of embittered people who can never atone for their sins even if they die 1,000 times. And as for those who killed Jian and Eric, they were people who were hired by monsters who hadn't reached the S rank. Our hero was going to finish off anyone and everyone who had anything to do with their deaths. Meet Xing, responsible for the Villa Crouching Tiger in Hangzhou, and at the same time one of the best hackers in China. And believe me, this scumbag doesn't use his abilities for the good of the people. He used to be in jail for hiring people for illegal work in Central Asia. When he got out of prison, he decided to go back to his old business. Only this time, he wanted to blackmail people into joining his crew. Meanwhile, our hero has successfully made it to the 11th floor. The monsters here are a little stronger than before. They're skeletal soldiers armed with rusty swords. On the previous 10 floors, you could only get shards of fate for mopping up. Starting from this floor, you can get equipment here. In his past life, our hero spent many hours in this dungeon with his brother, hoping to get high-ranked ammunition. The Dark Emperor was able to deal with ordinary skeleton warriors as easily as the monsters on the first 10 floors. However, at the end of this floor, our hero was waiting for a mini-boss, a skeleton general of level 17. Despite its appearance, a very dangerous opponent, especially when you consider that John is now only at level 13. But skeletons of all ranks had one weakness that our hero was well aware of. They are not immune to stealth attacks from the back. And for Jean, as an assassin, that kind of attack was one of the most important. So killing the skeleton general was quite easy, even though there was a difference in levels. Besides, in his previous life, our hero had killed thousands of skeletons. So even without the assassin profession, he would be able to handle him. After another 8 minutes, Jean finally reached the 20th floor, where he had to fight the boss, Skeleton Lord Tedemir. Unlike the previous boss, all of his stats were much higher, and his skills more varied and dangerous, which is not surprising considering the floor. About his most dangerous ability is the summoning of uncleanness. Tedemir summons an entire army of skeletons from hell and makes them fight. The summoned monsters completely copies all those skeletons encountered before, from skeleton soldiers to skeleton generals. However, Tedemir summoned about 200 of them. The difficulty of this floor far exceeds all the previous ones. To cope with so many enemies, even with the help of the Dark Emperor, will be incredibly difficult, because being near their lord, the skeletons have become much stronger and smarter. But despite all these enhancements, ordinary skeletons couldn't take more than one hit. The main threat was the boss of this dungeon, so the Dark Emperor concentrated on killing him. Given his spirit characteristics, it shouldn't be too hard to defeat Tedemir. In the meantime, Jean drew the attention of the small skeletons to himself so that they would not interfere with the Dark Emperor's battle. Very quickly, our hero realized that this was a rash decision. His strength was not enough to deal with an entire army. Realizing that he was likely to die, Jean called upon the Lord of Prayers. Before entering the 20th floor, he wished for the Dark Emperor to deal double damage to the target upon activation. Given the current situation, now was the time to activate it. After amplifying the Lord of Prayers, the Dark Emperor began to emit an incredibly powerful aura, which suppressed some of Tedemir's powers and scared the hell out of him. Feeling elated, Jean began slicing up the skeletons one by one, and the Dark Emperor, with renewed vigor, rushed into battle against the dungeon boss. From the first blow, an incredibly high column of dust rose up and covered the entire battlefield. When it cleared, the Dark Emperor was nowhere to be seen, and Tedemir didn't have a single scratch on him. Had Jean lost? He hadn't. Dark Emperor took advantage of the dust cloud to conceal his presence and take a favorable position to attack. When the moment was right, the spirit struck a powerful blow, paralyzing the boss. Now that the enemy is completely helpless, it's just a matter of finishing him off. Given his incredibly large health points, it took the Dark Emperor about 5 minutes to kill him. At that moment, Jean realized how powerful the Dark Emperor and the Lord of Prayers could be. After defeating the boss, Jean gained a whole bunch of experience and rose to level 14. As before, all the people in the real world found out about it. They generally did not believe that a person is capable of such a thing. But our hero was not going to stop there. He continued to conquer this belly of the Tower of Babel. After clearing 9 more floors, Jean reached level 5.5. He'd climbed that high just to raise his level. But the boss room was closed to those under level 20. But to be honest, that wasn't really a problem. The Dark Emperor had forcefully opened a gateway to the 30th floor. On this floor, our hero awaited a boss named King of the Minotaurs, an extremely dangerous monster. In a past life, it took a group of 5S rank awakened to defeat him. To be honest, Jean entered the Tower of Babel just for him. He wanted to rob him. The thing is, this centaur possessed a skill that no other human being in the world possessed. And what exactly this skill is, we'll find out a little later. First, we have to defeat him. Before you can fight the centaur, you must pass through his labyrinth, where the awakened die all the time. But Jean, from his previous life, had learned all the moves and passed this trap in a matter of minutes, surprising the boss. The level of this monster is twice the level of our hero, and is about the same level as the Dark Emperor. In this fight, Jean no longer has such a strong advantage. His only trump card is the Lord of Prayers. In his previous life, our hero learned the hard way that it's not a good idea to quickly traverse floors 21st through 29th, as the monsters the awakened fought will be reborn and come to the king's call to support their boss. In a previous life, thousands of awakened died for this stupid trap. Jean himself might have been one of the victims, if not for his brother. But now, knowing that, he has a plan that takes into account his strengths. First, the Lord of Prayers was to strengthen our hero and the Dark Emperor, helping him deal double damage. Now, the spirit's blows would do a lot more damage. With one powerful combination, the Dark Emperor almost killed the Minotaur. But John stopped him a second before he did. He needed the boss to summon his subordinates and attack. Waiting for the right moment, Jean activated his loot skill and ordered the spirit to attack again. Using all the available reinforcement skills, the Dark Emperor still managed to finish off the Minotaur. And at that moment, Jean finally accomplished what he had planned. He stole the boss's skill. Submission. And just at that moment, a loud stomping of hooves came from the dungeon gate. It was the army of monsters that the boss had summoned before his death. Which was just in time. Raising his hand to the top and releasing a huge amount of mana, Jean shouted, "My warriors! At my command, retreat!" Given the low level of our hero, there was a high probability that the obedience would not work. He would still have to fight monsters. But luckily for him, it worked perfectly. The centaurs recognized him as a strong leader and obeyed his will. But the best part is that the submission skill works on all living things. The main condition for successful activation is the ratio of levels. If the enemy is superior to you, it will not be possible to subdue him. Meanwhile, in the dungeon for beginners, the secret kingdom of mushrooms, a newly awakened guy was hunting. He was incredibly lucky, and he was awakened with a power of rank SS, which was identical to the power subjugation, except his skill was named Divine Eye. Surprisingly for this guy, he was followed by Derek. Seeing the guy's ability in person, Derek said, "I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Teruo. Who are you? And why aren't you afraid of my Eye of the Emperor?" Mr. Teruo asked rudely. "How rude of me. My name is Derek. I am a man who lives outside of time, and I am also someone who can make you stronger," answered the boy. Of course, Derek seemed like an ordinary weirdo. However, he could sense how strong Derek was, so he decided to listen to him. Derek wanted to make a deal. He wanted Teruo to use his divine eye to subdue someone. Meanwhile, our hero was making the most of his newfound power. For fun, he made a whole bunch of centaurs sing his favorite song from Desperate Housewives. But when he was done having fun, he ordered the Dark Emperor to kill all the centaurs. I'll be honest, it's kind of cruel to make the monster centaurs kneel, then mock them, and finally kill them. But be that as it may, this way of farm was incredibly effective. Jean himself felt that he had done wrong, but the age of chaos was getting closer every day, and he had to become stronger. In just a few minutes, our hero had risen from level 18 to level 22. While people were admiring the result of the Dark Emperor in the Tower of Babel, Jean discreetly left it, so as not to attract unnecessary attention. Now that he has reached the desired level, our hero can reach a completely different level of power. After leaving the Tower of Babel, Jean went to his favorite cafe to regain his strength. The next dungeon he's about to go into is much more dangerous and difficult than the one he's already been through. And the experience from his previous life can't be used, so he must eat and drink well now. When all of a sudden there was some kind of scandal at the next table. As a result, some guy punched a girl right in the face. Upon closer inspection, our hero realized that these guys were his former colleagues. The whole time he worked together. These idiots insulted Jean, calling him scum and trash. And in the future, they would be the ones who would kill people for profit. When the girl was on her knees, she tearfully begged for forgiveness. "You're a fool! There's no point in apologizing when you've already ruined everything," one of these guys shouted angrily and kicked the girl. Judging from their conversation, it looked like they had lost some person who was apparently already dead. After beating the girl half to death, these cretins ordered 3 bowls of noodles and the restaurant's specialty. Coughing up blood, the girl whispered, "When the captain was here, you didn't treat me like this." Brushing a lock of hair away from her face, one of those guys replied, "Do you still consider yourself a supervisor? And where is now your favorite supervisor?" Now it's getting more or less clear. Now that this girl has lost some power, these assholes are trying to pay her back for the past. From their behavior, it looked like after the restaurant they wanted to use her body and then kill her. It's funny that they were all friends before, but now the world has changed, and their attitude towards each other has changed. After awakening, they formed a strike team to go through the dungeon. And on a previous raid, the captain of their squad was killed. So now they're actively searching for another member of the team. But then one of these guys spots our hero. Something inside him urged him to come up to John and talk to him, and the girl cried at the sight of our hero. She realized that he could save her from them, but it is unlikely to do so, given how she treated him before. Scooting over to Jean and putting his arm around him, the guy said, "Where have you been since everyone woke up, huh, buddy? I've missed you." To be honest, our hero was very surprised. I mean, they'd never talked to each other before, but this sweet talk was just part of the act. This guy wanted to find out what ability Jean had awakened, and if he did, to offer him a chance to join their team. In a previous life, our hero was detained for 10 days for beating up Tom, but when he got out, Patrick contacted him. Then Jean told him the whole truth that he had only awakened as an F rank, and then they blew him off, beating him up and robbing him. And since then, our hero has learned some lessons, so this time he didn't even talk to Patrick. Just thanked him for the spicy rice and said he wasn't looking for a team. "So you're gonna go through the dungeon alone? You are crazy. You will never become like the Dark Emperor," Patrick shouted with laughter. But Jean decided to just ignore his words and walk away. But at that moment, Scarlet screamed his name. The girl grabbed his leg with all her strength and tearfully begged him to save her. And in return, he could do whatever he wanted to her. To be honest, Jean was ready to agree. It had been a long time since he'd had a girlfriend. But common sense prevailed. And our hero refused her offer. The age of chaos is getting closer and closer. There's no time to do things like this. And with all this going on, Patrick was literally insane. He was ready to kill Scarlet on the spot. "You're a dirty girl, selling your body for nothing. You think this trash is strong enough to save you?" he shouted at the girl. Now, after the failed escape attempt, Patrick was determined that after dinner, he and his friends would do whatever they wanted to her. He also mentioned Jean's family, his parents, and his brother, to which our hero replied in a creepy voice, "I wouldn't advise you to open your stinking mouth on my brother." "Really? What are you going to do to me? Steal something from me? Don't make me laugh. You were trash and you still are," replied Patrick. "You realize that it's too risky to draw attention to yourself now." Jean decided to just leave the situation and go away. But the thing is, he had a temper. And now he was doing his best not to attack Patrick and rip his head off. But this guy had a different view of the situation. He didn't want to leave it alone. He wanted to show Jean what he could do. After waking up, Patrick and his dogs had gotten some pretty good powers that made them think they were kings of the world. So they rolled up their sleeves and went at Jean with their fists. A normal awakened person would probably die from such a blow. But our hero had already had time to seriously pump up, and such blows do not affect him. And he in turn had something to answer. Literally one blow, he took down 2 grown men at once. Our hero was itching to kill these assholes. But if he did, there's a good chance he'd end up in jail. Which he can't do. After seeing 2 of his team's strongest damagers lose, Patrick started to panic. But despite that, he wasn't going to back down. Patrick had awakened a pretty good A-rank ability, so he thought he had an advantage. His skill was similar to one of the assassin's main skills, Shadow Strike. So it wasn't really a surprise to Jean. On the contrary, it amused him. Remembering all the words Patrick had said to him, our hero decided to humiliate him as best he could, and hit him between the legs with all his might, so that his machine would never rise again. After that blow, the guy couldn't walk, he couldn't even breathe. Now, for our hero, A-rank awakened and below are just weaklings that you don't even want to get your hands dirty. But once, they were the height of his dreams. Realizing that they could never handle Jean, the 2 men knelt down, apologized, and offered their help. Our hero answered them as before. He didn't want a team, but he wasn't going to kill them either. All the while, a very interesting man was watching. His name is Bailey, and he is one of the 8 founders of the Great 8 clan, an awakened S-rank. After what he saw, Bailey wanted one of his men to look after our hero. In the end, Jean decided to let these guys go, making them promise not to racketeer anymore. And Scarlet, seeing how strong he was ready to get her wet panties off right now. Before Jean left, the girl tried to stop him again and said, "I know I was mean to you before, but I was forced to say it. I'm sorry." "Whatever you say, I don't care," replied our hero. Realizing that she would always be safe with him, Scarlet tried to seduce Jean again. But Jean was serious. He wasn't about to change his mind. Scarlet was determined to get his attention. Our hero's rejection had hurt her female ego. And then one of the guys said, "Don't you forget? That idiot is head over heels in love with Alice. Even your big tits couldn't help." "What's wrong with me? I'm much prettier than that chicken Alice," Scarlet said with anger and a touch of despair. The thing is, the girl our hero is in love with is the exact opposite of Scarlet, in the sense that she's kind and sensitive, and the only thing that attracted people to Scarlet was her promiscuity and her gorgeous body. Waiting for Jean to leave, the guys wanted to take advantage of the moment and have some fun with the girl. And surprise, surprise, after a fight with our hero, the guys lost their powers, so now Scarlet can fend for herself. The girl had awakened her D-rank healing abilities, and didn't have any outstanding combat characteristics. However, compared to ordinary people, she was still incredibly strong. Therefore, beating up 2 idiots wasn't much of a problem for her. Bailey, too, turned his attention to Scarlet. He found her quite interesting. He even had the idea of inviting her to join his team, since the rest of the group complained that there were hardly any girls on the team. Besides, with Scarlet's help, Bailey wanted to know more about Jean, what he did for a living, and what his weaknesses were. After beating her former co-workers to a pulp, Scarlet finally felt safe and invincible. When suddenly, an unassuming man with glasses came up to her and asked her if she knew anything about the Great 8 clan. After talking for a while, Scarlet accepted the stranger's offer and joined the clan, all to get Jean. She didn't want to get him now, but to show him who he'd lost. From now on, Scarlet becomes part of the G8 family. Her problems are their problems, and their problems are her problems. After making a formal deal, the stranger starts asking the girl about our hero. After learning that they used to work together, the stranger said, "I think he hurt you badly. Maybe he has some weaknesses so we can get back at him." Without thinking long, Scarlet replied, "His weakness, one woman named Alice." Leaving the cafe, Jean decided to walk the empty streets of the city and think about his next steps. And as soon as he left the building, the Great Eight immediately assigned a spy to him to gather all the information. By the way, Bailey brought Scarlet into the clan for one reason, so his men could have fun and do a better job. Of course, Jean immediately noticed the surveillance, but he didn't take any action. He wanted to find out who it was and what he wanted, and having found out what our hero's main weakness was, the Great Eight had already started working on finding Alice. They wanted to do it for one purpose, to control Jean, seeing that even after an hour of surveillance, this guy wouldn't leave. Our hero went to extreme lengths to trap him. "I suppose you have something to tell me?" John said with a wry smile, turning to his pursuer. Passing the guy, our hero did not recognize his face. That meant they'd never seen each other before, which means that the guy is not acting of his own free will, he's just part of some system. And to find out which one, our hero decided to resort to the best kind of interrogation. Interrogation with a beating. With his first blow, the Dark Emperor slammed the guy into the wall opposite, leaving him no chance to resist, thus showing the stranger his advantage. A demonstration of strength can tell you much more than mere words. Jean wanted to know who this guy was working for. "What are you doing? I was just passing by." Coughing up blood, the guy replied. "Don't lie. You followed me as soon as I left the cafe," Jean added. Noticing a small earring on his left ear, our hero realized that this guy was from the Clan of Eight. According to the events of the past life, the Clan of Eight should not have appeared so early. After thinking for a while, Jean gave the guy just one chance to tell the whole truth. But the guy denied everything. There's a strict hierarchy in the Great Eight clan, and it's also a violent clan. And from the looks of it, the guy who was following our hero was a common private, so it's a waste of time to keep interrogating him. But still, Jean knew how to get what he wanted. Calling the Lord of Prayer, the guy made a wish. "I want him to explain why he was following me." After a moment, the wish was granted. "My name is Lan. I am a member of the Eight clan, under the leadership of General Bailey. Recently, an awakened one joined us and told us all about one of the best awakened ones named Jean. So the general ordered me to keep an eye on him. And then he assigned me to investigate a girl named Alice. I managed to find out that it's Alice who is Jean's greatest weakness. General Bailey plans to use her to blackmail him. The general wants to make him one of his warriors." "Under the spell," said the spy. "In a past life, in the third year after the beginning of the Age of Chaos, when one of the leaders of the Great Eight killed Alice, Jean wanted to avenge her death. He constantly risked his life to improve his abilities. But in the end, he didn't have time to accomplish together and fell at the hands of the monster. Now, the most logical move seems to be to kill Bailey before the Eight clan finds Alice. After finding out what he wanted, our hero killed the guy and ordered the Dark Emperor to dispose of the body. And the spirit had no better option than to hide the body in a dumpster. After thinking for a bit, our hero summoned the Lord of Prayers and asked, "If I wish for the Clan of Eight not to attack Alice, how long would it take?" "Lord, with my current strength, about 24 hours, replied the spirit. Before killing Bailey, our hero must have time to change his profession, and 24 hours should be enough time. Now that Alice is relatively safe, it's time to go to a more serious dungeon. This dungeon was called the Secret World and informally belonged to the League of Assassins. Upon entering, our hero was confused by the fact that the place was absolutely quiet, there was no one, and already entering the dungeon, Jean felt some kind of unease in his soul, but still hoping that everything would go smoothly. At the very beginning of the Secret World, our hero was waiting for NPC named Miles, a former professional thief of the 30th level. Miles is a kind of dungeon manual. Only after listening to him, you can go further. After listening to the guy, Jean realized he had to fight black snowmen and a king penguin. And don't be confused by their name. They're bloody dangerous creatures, who dwell in a snowy wasteland. Even the terrain itself can kill, not to mention the monsters. The level of this secret world is indeed much higher than any dungeon Jean has been in before. Just getting here, our hero felt how the environment takes away his strength. And it's not just the cold, but the overwhelming aura that hovers around. After a couple minutes of mindless wandering, the guy came across the first monster. It turned out to be a black snowman of the 20th level. In normal circumstances, a very serious opponent against which Jean would have hardly put up a fight if not for one but. And that but was the Dark Emperor. For a spirit, such a monster is no match. Yes, it's much bigger than him, but that's it. The Black Snowman was inferior to the Dark Emperor in strength, speed, and intelligence. This monster could be seen as just a monster trying to slow you down. However, he was carrying a very interesting and useful item. Namely, its ice horn. What the specific properties of this item are, I'm still hard-pressed to say. But the fact that Jean was eager to get his hands on it speaks volumes. Oh yes, I forgot to mention one more thing about black snowmen. They live in large groups, and if you meet one, it means there are more nearby. And the bigger the group, the stronger each individual member is. From now on, the battle in the secret world has begun. Given the number and strength of the enemies, it would be impossible to leave all the work to the Dark Emperor. So Jean prepared for battle. During the time he was preparing, the black snowmen had transformed into snow yetis, and their defense and damage had increased, but their dexterity had also been greatly affected. The most reliable strategy against these monsters was to strike with quick and deadly blows. It was too dangerous to engage in a long fight with such an opponent. In addition, Jean did not forget about his very modest defense, so he acted together with the Dark Emperor, concentrating on a single target. Since the snow yetis were essentially mutated snowmen, their bodies also had ice horns falling out of their bodies. However, our heroes had no time to collect the prey, because losing tribesmen, the monsters only became stronger, and our hero's strength was no longer enough to kill them so easily. But he came up with another plan: how to win. Using the privileges of assassin, he appeared out of nowhere and deprived the monsters of limbs, after which they were killed by the Dark Emperor. Thanks to his coordinated work, the ranks of monsters were quickly dwindling. While fighting, Jean tried different methods of killing them, and the most effective was the stun method. Our hero attracted the monsters' full attention and delivered a stabbing blow that stunned the monsters. After that, the Dark Emperor conducted a lightning combination of attacks and killed them. Thus, in a short period of time, they were able to defeat almost all of the snow yeti in the area. And out of 50 monsters, Jean was able to collect 37 ice horns. And just when it looked like the monsters were finished, new ones appeared on the horizon. And the reason for the endless appearance of snowmen was the boss of this dungeon, King Penguin. What exactly was capable of this boss, it was hard to predict, because in this dungeon bosses and their capabilities are always different. But what was always constant was the location of their lair. So instead of fighting the black snowmen endlessly, Jean decided to deal with the boss right away. As he approached the boss's room, our hero saw a floating drop of water. The splash from this drop flew in different directions, emitting bright rays of light, which meant the boss had launched his attack. So we must be careful because there's no telling what this monster is capable of. Soon, the spot from which the drop of water had appeared began to emit a strange aura. And soon, another black snowman emerged from the hole. Strange that there was only one. Looking at the endless stream of aura from the boss's room, Jean remembered that he had already passed a similar dungeon. And if it's as he thinks, then this black snowman is the most dangerous enemy he's ever encountered, because he's immortal. And frankly, he didn't feel like checking to see if that was true. So Jean decided to just run away. Fighting a very weak opponent but an immortal is absolutely stupid. In such a case, tactical retreat is the best option. Realizing that things were only going to get worse, our hero decided to deal with the boss. Having sensed a specific place from which the aura emanates, Jean asked the Dark Lord to throw it. Without further ado, the spirit obeyed the order. King Penguin, a level 20 boss, and he only gained his level by summoning immortal warriors. He was a very bad characteristic, so it was easy to kill him. After defeating the boss, our hero received a very rare item, King Penguin's beak. After the death of the boss, all the black snowmen and snow yetis turned into piles of snow that posed no threat. After returning back, Jean had to give all the loot from the dungeon to Miles. In return, this NPC provided 3 unique specializations for the assassin: Noble Bandit, Windrunner, and Apostle of Darkness. But that wasn't all. There was another secret specialization, the one that interested our hero the most. Before our hero chose one of the cards, Miles warned, "If you change specializations incorrectly, you die. If you change specialization, you have a 70% chance of dying, but it's worth the risk." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Miles was always joking and laughing. Even though our hero was serious, he was still very worried. I mean, the chance of dying is really high. Well, I can feel your heart yearning for change. It's time to choose a profession. From now on, there's no turning back. Miles suddenly said. Then, he transported our hero to another space which he calls the Void. Here he will have to choose his specialization. In his previous life, Gene was desperate to get a specialization to become stronger. But when it came to choosing one, he got cold feet and left. But when he was reborn, he was determined that this time he would do anything to change the future. And gaining a new specialization is another step towards his goal. Our hero had heard about this place from other awakened people, but he never believed them when they said it was completely empty. But when he found himself in the Void and saw everything with his own eyes, he realized that they were not lying, but telling the absolute truth. While wandering through this void for some time, John came across a strange object that looked like a hockey puck. As soon as this object came into contact with our hero, it immediately awakened and released a huge amount of energy, which took the form of a pillar. There was no doubt this pillar was one of the manifestations of a new specialization. And following the red pillar, two more appeared. A blue pillar and a purple pillar. To understand what specialization each pillar represented, it was enough just to touch it. Behind the red pillar was the specialization Dissident. Choosing it, Jean will get a small increase in strength and stamina, as well as agility. But the most interesting is the skill Impunity, which helps to avoid responsibility for the crime. This is the specialization the Lord of Prayers recommended our hero choose. Behind the blue pillar was a specialization called Shadow, which gave more serious enhancements to the same traits. And of the skills was Shimmering Shadow, which created a shaft of illusion. And frankly, Shadow suited Jean better than Dissident. But before making a final choice, one must explore all available specializations. Suddenly, at that moment, the purple pillar changed its color to gold. The guy thought it was very strange and couldn't wait to find out what was behind it. Now it's clear. The golden color of the pillar meant the legendary specialization, Storm Swordsman. By choosing it, Jean would receive an even greater enhancement of all the characteristics, and would receive 3 skills at once: Supersonic Sword, Hurricane Sword, and Sword Spirit. The most amazing thing is that the guy had never heard of specializations or professions of legendary level. By choosing the Storm Swordsman specialization, Jean would easily be able to fight back against Bailey and the entire Great Eight clan. But at this moment, he sensed a catch. After all, the Lord of Prayers didn't mention this specialization. Trying to figure out what was going on, Jean summoned a spirit. "You're not confused, are you? Why the hell did you lie to me?" Looking angrily at the Lord of Prayers, our hero said, "Sir, I don't quite know what you're talking about. Why would I deceive you?" "Lord," replied perplexed. Visibly nervous, the spirit added, "The specialization Dissident, you perfectly suited. Besides, it's the most proven choice." The Lord of Prayers had never let Jean down before, so there was no reason not to believe him. But the phrase, "the most proven," said otherwise. After a bit of thought, our hero asked to show the probability of successfully mastering this specialization. If you believe the Lord of Prayers, then the chance of success in mastering the specialization is only 0.5%, and the chances of mastering skills 1%. That's a hell of a small chance of success. And don't forget, if he fails, he's dead. Jean, wanting to understand this issue better, asked to see the probability of success in the case of specialization Shadow. There were already much higher rates, but still very risky. And then our hero, for curiosity's sake, decided to see what his compatibility with the specialization Dissident. And here, the probability of success is 98%. Apparently, Lord Prayer wasn't lying, and Jean would have chosen the Dissident specialization without a second thought, if it weren't for the spirit's strange behavior, and that phrase, "a proven choice." It's not even that Jean didn't trust the Lord of Prayers, it's that the spirit is only a helper. Jean alone chooses what he does, and how he does it. And he made it clear to the spirit so that no more incidents like this would happen. In addition to the low chance of successful mastery, our hero was interested in one more question. If everything went well and he survived, would he be able to squeeze the full potential out of this profession? Lord of Prayers was fully confident that if successful, Jean would be able to unleash the Storm Swordsman to its full potential. However, he was greatly worried that our hero would die, and with him. Actually, our hero didn't care much about the chance that he might die here. After all, if he doesn't get stronger, he'll die in the future anyway. But strength and fist-pounding weren't the only things that set Jean apart from the rest. He was smart as hell, so he made a wish before learning a new specialty. "I wish that the process of learning a new specialization will be a success," with a sly smile on his face said our hero, realizing that the fulfillment of this request would most likely deprive him of his strength for a few days. Lord Prayer was still glad that Jean had thought of it. Now, the chance of successfully mastering the profession is 100%. Now, Jean would have to wait a while for his body and mind to learn his new specialization and skills. Upon returning, Miles immediately noticed that our hero had chosen the strongest of the specializations and had successfully mastered it. Even the awakened SSS ranks are unable to master this specialization. Even them, the chance of success is less than 5%. But to be honest, even with the help of the Lord of Prayers, it wasn't easy to master the Storm Swordsman specialization. Even with a 100% chance of success, Jean had to understand the true nature of the storm and death. Otherwise he wouldn't die. No, he would just stay in the void forever. And thanks to being reborn, Jean already had some understanding of death. While learning specializations and skills, he heard a song. Loyalty to wind and sword keeps loyalty in your heart. No matter how many battles you fought, they will all fall with you. But putting aside the fear of death and trusting in your heart, you will hear the whisper of the wind, that at your call will change your song to a sword and make you a glorious warrior for the ages. This strange song was accompanied by some strange fragments from someone's life. It was like a short video training to a new specialization and skills. It was only after watching it to the end that our hero finally felt his powers begin to grow, which meant that the Storm Swordsman had been mastered. Realizing that his help was no longer needed, the Lord of Prayers went to the spirit world to fall into an impenetrable sleep. After finishing his skills, Jean's body was on the verge of death. The guy literally felt incredibly tired and energized at the same time. He only had enough strength to come back from the void. He fell to the floor, completely exhausted, while talking to Miles. At some point, the NPC stopped feeling our hero's heartbeat. That could only mean one thing, that he was dead. Similar, I was wrong about you, and you chose the wrong specialization, Miles whispered sadly, looking at Jean's breathless body. A moment later, there was a notification that the world had its first awakened person, who had acquired the second specialization. It's only been a few seconds. I wish you were dead. You'd be the awakened one, Miles added with a double smile on his face. Jean whispered, "Who told you that I was dead?" "It's me, the awakened one who got a second specialization." To be honest, Miles was incredibly amazed that Jean had survived after mastering Storm Swordsman. His surprise was so great that he couldn't even hold his cigarette. After gathering his strength, our hero took out a previously stashed potion of full recovery. Drinking it down, he regained his strength. You'd never know he was dying a minute ago. Waiting for our hero to come to his senses, Miles asked, "How did you do it?" "I'd love to answer, but you're on fire," smilingly replied Jean. Taking advantage of the Samadahoha, the guy decided to leave so as not to answer stupid questions. The new specialization was given to Jean at great cost. Lord of Prayers fell into a deep sleep, and it is unclear how long it will take him to recover, and whether he will be able to wake up at all is unclear. Returning to reality, our hero was surprised that it was already night. But that's not surprising, because he'd been in the dungeon for 5 hours, and during that time, he received several messages from Scarlet. The girl suggested that our hero meet tomorrow at noon at a restaurant so she could thank him for his help. And given what Jean learned from the spy, it wasn't hard to figure out it was just a trap. Meanwhile, Scarlet was doing the basic job that got her into his clan. Right in the middle of it, the girl's cell phone started vibrating non-stop. Of course, Scarlet didn't care about these messages. She wanted to continue, but Billy had a different opinion. Realizing that this was a trap, Jean agreed to meet, but on his own terms, today in an hour near the East Bay. Not realizing their plans had been discovered, Bailey either packed up and left immediately. Of course, Scarlet didn't like it much, but Bailey wasn't interested in her opinion either. Meanwhile, a group of scientists monitoring the space monolith noticed that the message had changed. After midnight, disaster would strike. The first holder of 2 professions will be announced. They didn't know what to do with this information, but they knew they had to do something. At the appointed time, our hero arrived at the cove. And just then, news broke that the government was imposing a curfew because of the impending disaster. In previous lives, a curfew had also been imposed, but with one big difference. This time it's 5 days earlier. Last time there was a curfew just before the insect infestation. For the awakened, it was a time when you could get 4 times as much experience per kill. So many guilds were able to raise a lot. Unlike last time, this will be much more dangerous. Last time, the battle was just over 2 weeks long. Last time, Jean only ran away and hid in the insects because he was very weak and couldn't protect anyone. He didn't know about his unique skill, but this time it would be different. He swore to himself that he would protect those who had protected him in his previous life. Turns out it was Alice. As a kid, she was like a big sister to him, always helping him out of trouble. And even when her family found out Jean had been stealing from them, they didn't get angry, but took him in. And soon, the innocent childhood friendship grew into something more. Our hero fell in love with Alice, and it was mutual. All the good things that happened in his life were all about her. They dreamed of building a strong family. But when she needed his help, Jean wasn't there for her. So now our hero's main goal was to finish off Alice's killer, Bailey. Meanwhile, the head of the Great Seven was on his way to his death. The atmosphere in the car was very tense. Bailey received a phone call that made him nervous. When he answered the call, he just waved his head approvingly and occasionally said something. Scarlett was surprised that there were people who made Bailey so nervous. Voice from the phone. The engagement of Princess Yoshiko and Miyamoto will take place next month. Get ready. Miyamoto has awakened his SSS rank abilities. Therefore, he believes he has the power to reclaim his country. S rank ability holders need to gather power crystals soon to raise their levels. That was the end of the conversation. Bailey was clearly not happy with what he heard, as he suddenly whispered angrily, "You vile worm Miyamoto, how dare you steal from me? Princess Yoshiko is mine, and mine to you as well." In light of recent events, Bailey realized that he needed to find all the crystals before the end of the month to raise his rank to SSS level. He didn't have time to search for crystals himself, so he wanted to entrust this job to our hero as soon as he recruited him. After thinking for a while, the guy said, "Scarlett, increase the surveillance on Alice. As long as we control her, Jean will be forced to work for us." Bailey wouldn't go to meet our hero. He gave the task to Scarlett. The guy wanted her to convince our hero to join their clan. At the agreed time, Scarlett showed up at East Bay where Jean was waiting for her. Having seduced Bailey, the girl was fully confident in her abilities. She planned to pull the same trick on our hero. When she got a little closer to him, the girl started running towards him, screaming how happy she was to see him. The plan was quite simple. She wanted to jump on top of him, so that her breasts would be right in his face. And then I see. But the moment she jumped, Jean just pulled back, and Scarlett fell face first into the sand, staining her white blouse. The first thing our hero said when he saw Scarlett, "Where's that Bailey now?" The girl tensed up when she heard that name, for he had clearly given her the task of keeping Jean from finding out about him. Scarlett made a cute face and pretended that she was hearing that name for the first time. For the last time, Bailey is the man who leads the Great Eight clan. Where is he? Leaning over to the girl, Jean added menacingly. Realizing that she couldn't get out of it, the girl confirmed that she had recently joined the Great Eight clan. But she didn't know the name Bailey. Not wanting to waste her precious time, Jean simply turned around and walked away. But Scarlett stopped him and said that she had asked the heads of the clan to take our hero in. The girl tried to persuade Jean, but he just ignored her. Instead of idle talk, he decided to call Bailey personally from the spy phone he had stolen. Picking up the phone, the guy said, "You only had one assignment to spy on Jean. Why did you call now?" "I'm afraid you won't see your dog anymore. I killed him," replied our hero. "What? So you knew we were following you?" added Bailey in surprise. "How about we meet in person? I know you're here," said Jean, hanging up the phone, then tossed the stolen phone right into the ocean. A minute later, Scarlett and Jean were joined by Bailey, who was incredibly pleased with himself for finding such a talented, awakened man. He promised that with their help, Jean would be able to get everything he wanted. After listening to the Bailey's proposal, Jean replied, "You're talking about your plan to rebuild the country, Kudosawa?" Bailey was horrified to hear this, for the true motives behind the creation of the powerful clan were a closely guarded secret. Realizing that the boy would tell him nothing of value, Jean decided to finish him off. After all, that's what he came here for. No, he came here to save Alice, our hero, hoping to end it all in one blow. But no matter how you look at it, Bailey's not a weakling either. He's an awakened S rank. He was able to summon his spirit before the Dark Emperor could strike. Bailey summoned a martial class spirit, similar to the Dark Emperor, but in a girl's body. Amazingly, this spirit could easily keep up with all of the Dark Emperor's attacks, even though it wasn't of maximum rank. And even those attacks that she couldn't dodge, she could easily block. At this moment, Jean realized that it was too naive to hope for an easy fight. The Bailey spirit was as strong as the Dark Emperor in every aspect, so the only way to deal with it was to kill its master. But given the spirit's speed and defense, it would be incredibly difficult to do so. Plus, the genie can't use the Dark Emperor's summon for long, so if he doesn't get rid of Bailey soon, he'll die. But don't think that our hero is the only one in trouble. After his run-in with the Dark Emperor, Bailey's spirit is also badly damaged. Generally speaking, it's in their best interest to finish this fight as soon as possible. As suddenly a guy shouted, "Kaguya, switch to rainy night mode and change your sword, then kill his spirit." Well, here's a surprise already. At this moment, the Lord of Prayers returned. Taking advantage of this, Our hero conjured a Bailey, unable to dodge the strike at the Dark Emperor. Completely ignoring the Kagwa, the Dark Emperor rushed towards the enemy, taking serious damage in the process. Realizing what Jean's plan was, he had no choice but to fight the spirit himself. But before he did, he ordered Kaguya to kill Jean. It's interesting. Now it's all about the personalities of the guys. And whoever can last the longest against the spirit wins. Because of the magic of the Lord of Prayers, Bailey couldn't dodge the Dark Emperor's attack. Let's see how Jean handles it. You know how I said that personal characteristics make all the difference these days? Well, in that respect, our hero has a huge advantage. He's the only one in the world with 2 professions, and with his special assassin skills, dodging Kaguya's attack was a cinch. A moment later, our hero appeared again, but this time right behind Bailey. Jean recognized that the boy was incredibly strong and had a great future ahead of him. To be honest, at some point our hero was even ready to spare him. But remembering with what cruelty and pleasure he had killed Alice in his previous life, his doubts disappeared. Jean ordered the Dark Emperor to finish what he had started. Having accomplished it together, our hero expected to feel relief. But she felt absolutely nothing. Given the level of strength, Bailey would be foolish not to use the skill, Loot. As before, Jean had 4 options to use the skill: take inventory, talent, skill, or soul power. Taking into account all the characteristics, Bailey was inferior to Jean, so the choice was obvious to take his skill. Especially since Rainy Night was originally ranked S, which said a lot. When the skill was activated, 3 passive effects were triggered. Through the use of the umbrella, reduced visibility, and a small zone appeared, which suppressed some of the enemy's strength. But the most interesting thing is that in the rainy zone, attack speed increased by 10%. And with the new skill, Jean got a new spirit, Water Spirit. On its own, the Rainy Night skill is questionable, but when paired with Kaguya, it gave her an incredible performance boost. I can see why in battle, Kaguya was superior to the Dark Emperor. Furthermore, Kaguya's intelligence reached 30, meaning she could fight on her own, without the control of our hero. If used skillfully, this spirit can be an incredibly dangerous weapon. There is a chance that when you kill your enemy, you may receive items that have fallen out of his hands. This happens completely randomly, and there is no guarantee that you will get anything of value. But after killing Bailey, from his inventory, our hero was able to get 1 lottery ticket for the Wheel of Fortune, which was just in time. However, there was one problem, and for the frequent fulfillment of wishes, the Lord of Prayers was again inaccessible. And at that moment, Jean remembered that there were rare energy-restoring items in a secret area in one of the dungeons. Suddenly Kaguya said, "Sir, are we going to heaven through the dungeon now?" "No, we must go to a more important place." "Think smile," replied our hero. Meanwhile, Princess Yoshiko tried to call Bailey, but all to no avail. His phone was out of range. At this point, the girl began to worry, because her lover had never turned off his phone before. She's supposed to meet her future husband, Miyamoto. It's a simple marriage of convenience, aimed at rebuilding their country. After all, she's a grand princess, and Miyamoto is a great warrior of SSS rank. Bailey isn't really Bailey. It's a fake name he lived under in exile. His name is Tarikoto. And once upon a time, he and Yoshiko lived in exile for a year, the best year of their lives. Bailey planned to use his clan to rebuild his country and bring back the Yoshiko. And he might have succeeded if he hadn't been such an asshole who did what he wanted, for which he deservedly paid with his life. Bailey's one of the leaders of the G8 clan, so if he was found dead, there'd be a real uproar. The whole clan will be busy finding the killer, and Alice will be safe in the meantime. "Sir, do you really like this girl?" Kaguya asked in surprise. Seeing the perplexed look on Jean's face, the spirit added, "Is it because now I can call her mistress?" Jean, embarrassed, replied, No, of course not." "Why not? I can see you like her. You're ready to spend the whole night here. Maybe we can at least be girlfriends," Kaguya added with a smile. Indeed, Alice is the most important person on this planet to our hero. He'd do anything for her, but she is not the only one who is dear to his heart. There is still an unresolved issue with his brother. To protect his loved ones, Jean is determined to become even stronger, because with his current level of strength, he couldn't solve the problems that lay ahead. After making sure that Alice was safe, he traveled to the Holy Land to become stronger. Holy Ground is another funny name for a deadly dungeon. At the portal to the dungeon was a police force guarding the entrance. Upon learning that our hero wanted to enter the Holy Land alone, one of the policemen rudely informed him that he could not do so. However, the policeman had no right to stop the Awakened just like that. So to avoid a conflict, Jean decided to show them his personal data. Seeing the nickname Dark Emperor, one of the policemen lost his speech. Realizing that they were not facing a living legend, They let Jean into the dungeon. Before entering, the policeman reminded our hero that he only had 3 chances of rebirth. You could see that this guy was genuinely worried about Jean. Our hero is mankind's best hope for a brighter future. Inside, there were incredibly dangerous monsters waiting for our heroes. Even ordinary mobs were level 30. Such a high level of opponents was the main reason why Jean came here. After all, for 1 kill of such a monster, you could get an incredibly huge amount of experience points. But there were also plenty of weaker monsters, which the Kaguya handled with great ease and grace. Although she was inferior to the Dark Emperor in some aspects, the fact that she could fight on her own without Jean's help was a huge advantage. In addition, the Kaguya had imbue skills that only grew stronger with each level. This dungeon was the only dungeon that was suitable for leveling up. In just a few minutes, the spirit had single-handedly cleared an entire square of monsters. In his previous life, this kind of pumping John could only dream of. The main mission in the Holy Lands is to help the elves defend their settlement, protect it from foreign enemies. In the very center of the elven settlement, there is a divine tree. Its fruit can restore the player's energy. So if they help the elves defend the house, they will reward them with the fruit of the divine tree. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. The thing is that in the past life, some players developed a different strategy. They killed ugly monsters after the defense of the elves was completely broken. Then you can get much more fruits of the divine tree. One big disadvantage of this strategy is that you have to wait a long time for the elves to fall. Now, you just have to wait for the lucky chance. Meanwhile, the monsters were already in full swing. The main walls of the elven city were breached in minutes. After waiting for the elves to be at a severe disadvantage, Jean entered the battle together with the Kaguya. Their main target was the boss of the dungeon, the head of the ugly monsters. This boss had an impressive attack and defense, but what made him dangerous was his skills. In a state of intense anger, he could shoot deadly rays of light from his mouth. The main target of the ugly monsters was the fruit of the divine tree, so Jean knew where to wait for them. It was foolish to spend his strength on the defense of useless walls, so our hero immediately decided to start guarding the most valuable thing. When he saw Jean, the boss shouted, "Human! How dare you steal my food? Are you looking for death?" But the guy just ignored him. Our hero needed to replenish his energy and bring back the Lord of Prayers. After consuming just 2 divine fruits, the Lord of Prayer regained his strength. The Lord of Prayers had so much energy that he was not only back, but ready to do any task. After some thought, Jean ordered to strengthen the Dark Emperor until the King of Ugly Monsters died. With a full supply of energy, it would be very easy to fulfill this wish. The thing is that the boss of this dungeon has a passive regeneration skill, thanks to the fact that it is made up entirely of small monsters. Therefore, Jean ordered Kaguya to activate the Rainy Night skill to strengthen the Dark Emperor even more. Only a fast and strong attack can bring victory in this battle. Therefore, Kaguya went on the attack as well, but even that wasn't enough. The King of Ugly Monsters' base health is too high. Of course, they were able to inflict quite an impressive amount of damage on him, but if they didn't continue attacking, it would all be for nothing. After discarding the Kag and Dark Emperor, the boss began to accumulate natural energy. Do it, he was preparing to strike, namely the Rage Ray. Realizing that he could kill both spirits with this one attack, Jean ordered the Kagi to spend all his strength on defense. In his past life, dozens of high-level awakened ones had died chasing after the fruit of the divine tree. It was only thanks to the Rainy Night buff that Kaguya was able to repel the rays of fury. But unfortunately, she used up all her energy in defense and won't be able to fight for a while, and even the Dark Emperor has taken quite an impressive amount of damage. However, now was the perfect moment to counterattack. After using the Rage Ray, the King of Ugly Monsters becomes almost harmless for a while. After consuming a few fruits of the divine tree, Jean filled the Dark Emperor with energy, allowing him to attack at full strength. And in the end, the King of Ugly Monsters couldn't withstand the onslaught and died. For the victory over the boss, our hero as much as 9,500,000 experience points. This is taking into account all the reinforcements. Thanks to this, was able to activate another interesting skill. 10,000 swords. For the experience gained, you can open and learn new skills inherent in your profession or specialization. 10,000 swords is one of the skills of the Storm Swordsman. Thanks to the divine power emitted by the tree, some parts of the boss were able to come to life. And following their instincts, they attacked our hero. It was just in time. On them, our hero wanted to try out his new skill. When you activate 10,000 swords, opened portals from which these very swords flew out. If you think about it, this skill is ideal for destroying a group of enemies. Weak monsters below level 20 have no chance of surviving this. The attack power has increased a lot and the fighting power hasn't decreased with the double strike. That's great. But if you stop attacking for even a second, the damage is minimal. And then Jean remembered that when a mage reaches a certain level, he has two new skills: Magic Recovery and Magic Absorption. Thanks to the first skill, you can speed up your own energy recovery, and with the help of the second, to absorb the energy of monsters. Which gave our hero a certain thought. Now it's time to get what he came here for. Given that Jean is not limited in any way, this mission went better than he expected. In total, he managed to collect over 100 fruits of the divine tree, an amount equal to 5 SSS rank supercrystals. This is the advantage of skipping levels. If you advance through the levels too quickly, then the next time fruits of the divine tree, there might not be as many. Once you have enough energy, it's time to use the Wheel of Fortune. But before making a wish, our hero asked him to eat 2 life-extending potions. That way, he would be able to make a difficult wish and not send the Lord of Prayers into a long sleep. Calling on the Wheel of Fortune, Jean made a wish. The next 10 spins must necessarily appear items above the S rank. For our hero, every spin of the Wheel of Fortune was incredibly exciting, but this time especially so. On his first attempt, he received a SS-ranked Chilling Crucifix. It allows him to reduce the time it takes to regain his strength after a battle. Considering the intensity with which Jean fights, this crystal was perfect for him. Next was the S-rank Intelligence Crystal. It allows you to increase your intelligence by 10 points. The Lord of Prayers advised Jean to give this crystal to one of the spirits, clearly referring to himself. And our hero had a serious problem. He didn't know who needed the crystal more. But before making a final choice, you need to understand what exactly intelligence points affect. Intelligence points directly affect the mind of the spirit. In turn, intelligence is not the same as wisdom or intelligence. It is the ability to solve problems quickly. The higher the intelligence value, the faster the spirit assimilates knowledge and gains experience. It is this ability that will manifest itself in combat, communication, and much more. Dark Emperor attacks only with brute force, and as the monsters become higher and higher in level, their strength prevailed over the Dark Emperor, putting him at a disadvantage. It seems that he is the one who needs this crystal most of all now. Dark Emperor, Jean's first spirit, so he had a special relationship with him. After all, it was he who helped him become who he is. That's why our hero gave the Crystal of Intelligence to him. He may not have become stronger or faster, but he has become more adaptive to his opponent. And besides, with increased intelligence, he will be able to make decisions independently in battle if necessary. Having absorbed this crystal, the spirit said, "Sir, thank you for your concern. I will do everything to remove all enemies in your path." "So you can talk?" our hero asked in surprise. Although the Dark Emperor had become smarter, his intelligence was still not high enough for him to fight on his own, when suddenly Jean said, "The increase in experience points is never as fast as with direct robbery." After which, he gave 2 crystals that increased the limit of life energy to the Lord of Prayers. He wanted this spirit to help him find another S-rank ability for their week-long journey. Let's move to the real world, where a group of young thugs bully their classmate. A boy who was bullied his entire life awakened an A-rank fire talent within himself. In skilled hands, it is a very dangerous talent, capable of destroying almost any enemy, but its rank is low. You may ask me why I'm telling you a story about some school children. So, the main bully of the class awakened in herself a rare talent of rank S. It's interesting that the strongest talents are not awakened in the best people, as was the case with Tom, Bailey, and the others. All in all, this guy was the perfect candidate to become the next victim of the robbery. Jean would never steal a profession from a good man, because to do that, he would have to kill him, and there is no pity for such scumbags as he. Even in his past life, Jean understood that taking away such people's abilities was his mission. Of course, the boys didn't intend to kill their classmate. They just wanted to make fun of him, as always. For some reason, they took particular pleasure in hurting guys like him. When suddenly someone shouted, "It's already very late. What are you doing anyway?" And that someone was their teacher, Mrs. Tai. Seeing the teacher, Cedric, that's the name of this poor guy, he thought that he was finally saved. And the hooligans, seeing Mrs. Tai, began to panic. All except Reggie. Having awakened his S-rank abilities, Reggie literally imagined himself to be the king of the world. I feel in power and with impunity. The guy even allowed himself to attack the teacher. Coming up to her, Reggie whispered, "You are so sweet and hot. What do you think I am doing now?" Meanwhile, his tentacles were creeping higher and higher, lifting Mrs. Teach's skirt. There was no doubt that Reggie wanted to use her teacher's body. "Hey, Cedric, don't worry so much. After I have fun with her, I'll take on you," the hooligan added, laughing. But then, someone cut all his tentacles and freed Mrs. Tai from captivity, after which this stranger repeated the same thing, only with the necks of his friends. "I feel threatened." The guy activated the maximum level of spirit available to him. Appearing from the darkness with Kaguya behind him, Jean asked, "Are you Reggie?" "What the hell? In our school, except for me, there was no one who awakened the S rank," Reggie shouted angrily. Realizing that he had found the right person, our hero called upon the Lord of Prayers and made the following wish. In 30 seconds, this bastard should be in a lot of pain. And Reggie kept trying to figure out who Jean really was and what he wanted. "It doesn't matter anymore who I am and what I want. You have exactly 3 seconds to think of your last words," our hero answered with a sly smile on his face. But Reggie is a young and stupid guy. He is sure that there are no people stronger than him in the world. So he decided to respond to our hero's threat with an attack, and to his surprise, Jean didn't come empty-handed. Our hero couldn't wait to find out what the Dark Emperor with enhanced intelligence was capable of. Seeing another spirit, Reggie was very surprised and confused, which the Dark Emperor took great advantage of and attacked him. At some point, Reggie's tentacles began to wrap around the Dark Emperor's arms and legs, and a moment later, they completely immobilized him. "What do you say now? Watch my green demon eat him!" Reggie shouted, laughing. But Jean was ready for it. Reggie lost his guard as Kaguya launched a lightning attack and released the Dark Emperor. But she didn't stop there. Using her speed, Kaguya cut all the tentacles, leaving the guy defenseless. On the verge of death, Reggie screamed, "Wait, I'm the victim in this situation. Cedric was bullying my brother. I just wanted to protect my brother." "You idiot. What are you talking about? Who am I making fun of?" Cedric shouted angrily. Jean had enough life experience to know that Reggie was lying. "I understand that I did not convince our hero." Reggie asked Mrs. Tai for help, and from the woman's eyes, it was clear that she was ready to help him. Mrs. Tai thought he was a good man. She thought he just got involved with a bad crowd. But before she could do or say anything, Kaguya cut the guy's back. It's funny that this bastard still wanted to get help from the teacher, which he wanted to use just a minute ago. Our hero couldn't stand people like him, who do evil, although they have the power to do something good. So death for them is happiness. With all the dirty work done, it was time to take what he came for. Using the robbery skill, Jean realized that Reggie's ability was much stronger than he thought. Apparently, the guy could not reveal its full potential due to his low characteristics. When it was all over, Cedric came up to our heroes and thanked them for saving them. "You're welcome, but in return I ask only one thing, that this remain a secret," Jean added, smiling. After which he simply turned around and left. Our hero went to the nearest 24-hour restaurant to think over his plan of further action. First of all, he wanted to get to grips with the new skill. In fact, he was a little surprised. The description of this ability was too general. With this skill, you can extract the essence of any two monsters and perfectly mix them together while maintaining their respective characteristics. This ability lasts for about 5 minutes. Now it's clear why when Jean received this skill, he felt as if he had acquired 10 new abilities at once. Plus, this skill has a passive ability called Elastic Skin that reduces damage taken from blunt objects by half. This explains why the Dark Emperor's attacks were useless, but Kaguya was able to kill Reggie with one blow. But the Dark Emperor has many interesting attacks and a special level of defense against spells, so he can also be considered a good fighting spirit. After thinking for a bit, as a sign of his gratitude, our hero decided to treat his spirits to fried chicken. Of course, they don't need food at all, but they love to eat delicious food. Why not make them happy then? A couple of minutes after our hero had placed his order, the waitress came up to him and said, "Good evening. Were you the one who ordered 300 chicken rolls, 300 spicy burgers, and 200 slices of tender beef?" "Yes, that's right," John answered. "Excuse me, but our restaurant doesn't have that much food," the girl answered confusedly. "Then bring as much as you have," our hero added. Such an unusual order was due to the fact that in about 6 months, there will be big problems with food. And the space crystal can store food from the moment it is placed in it, so it is worth stocking up in advance. While waiting for his order, Jean couldn't help but notice how the weather outside had suddenly gotten worse. Something similar happened in a past life. So Jean knew that this was the beginning of a catastrophe, a plague of insects that had flown in from another dimension. Last time, about 1.5 million people died because of these monsters, and people barely managed to win. When suddenly, a woman with a child in her arms ran into the restaurant where our hero was sitting. She begged for someone to save her child. But at that moment, the spider grabbed her by the jacket and dragged her out into the street. And if no one helps her, then she and the child can be considered dead. But luckily for her, the cafe was home to the strongest awakened at the moment. Jean literally snatched the girl from the clutches of the monster. Apparently, it won't be possible to have a quiet dinner. In a past life, our hero has already met similar monsters. Summoning the Lord of Prayers, Jean wished for the white fog around them to dissipate. After all, there could be even more monsters hiding in it. Without thinking for a second, the guy pounced on the largest spider to deprive the monsters of their leader. These insects have a strict hierarchical system, so without a leader they are relatively harmless. Despite its gigantic size, this spider was only level 7. This means that its stronger relatives are even larger. Of course, for killing such a monster, our hero did not receive any additional reward, only a little experience. For Jean personally, fighting low-level insects was useless. But for the Dark Emperor and Kaguya, this was the perfect chance to easily level up. Thanks to her ability to levitate, Kaguya dealt with flying insects with ease. Well, the Dark Emperor, even without the ability to fly, was not inferior to her. The fight with these insects was more like training, for which you could get 4 times more experience than usual. By the way, all this time, someone was watching our hero. The whole time that Jean was leveling up and was in the dungeon, Derek was gathering a squad of the strongest awakened. In addition to Teruo, during this time the man was able to find 2 more team members. But now, they weren't going to fight Jean. They wanted to take advantage of the disaster to raise their levels. Derek planned to use one trick to raise his team's level to 20, after which, he wanted each member of his team to receive a second specialization, just like our hero did. After a massive killing spree, the insects seemed to have overcome their instinct to seek out the light and did not dare to come too close to our hero. But this is all temporary. Since it was now the middle of the night, the 24-hour restaurant was a strong attraction for all the insects. And at the moment, this was very profitable for our hero. And in the meantime, Jean decided to pick up his order. Before leaving, our hero advised people not to go outside for the next 10 days and wait for rescue. Hearing this, the woman with the child begged Jean to take them with him, but of course, our hero refused. He told them to close the door and turn off the light right after he left. Now these people can only believe that the state will not abandon them in difficult times. As she was leaving the restaurant, she had an incredibly bad feeling. This made him think that perhaps he had missed something. His rebirth sped up the events, which means there is a big risk that Alice won't be able to survive this insect invasion. After all, she hardly managed to cope last time. In just a few minutes of the disaster, there were already huge losses among civilians, and with each passing minute, the number of killed and wounded only increased. But fortunately for the people, the awakened quickly cooperated and began to repel the attack. Among the first to enter the battle was Derek's team, each of its members an incredibly powerful awakened SS rank. A monk named Takachi deserves special attention. He is a damn strong and smart man. However, he has a very bad character. He is used to always receiving a reward for his help, but the rest of the team did not lag behind Takachi. During the time that Teruo spent with Derek, he was able to upgrade his Emperor's Eye to Dark Emperor's Eye. I think it's time to introduce you to the 4th member of the team, a necromancer named Max. Unlike his teammates, Max did not need to fight living monsters. He could absorb their corpses, making his spirit stronger. Max, like everyone else, had the SS rank skill, King of Shadows, when suddenly, these guys saw Jean, who, like them, was fighting monsters. To be honest, they were surprised to see him here. After thinking for a bit, Takami said, "Does he really know that they give more experience?" At that moment, Derek realized that the guy they had just seen was the guy he had been looking for. According to the original prediction, she should have survived this disaster, but he still had to make sure that she was safe. That's why our hero ran to their house. The door was opened by Alice's mother, Laura. "Laura, where are Alice and Aunt Lee now?" Jean asked anxiously. "I don't know. Mom should have come home from work and Alice isn't home yet," the woman answered. After learning that Alice didn't think there was any way to contact her, Jean began to get very nervous. "Laura, close all the windows and doors and don't open them under any circumstances. No matter what noise you hear," our hero screamed hysterically. In such a situation, without awakening the ability, meeting monsters is, in fact, a direct path to death. And that means Alice is in incredible danger right now. While searching for the girl, our hero came across the body of a stranger. Unfortunately, it was already impossible to save her. Realizing that the disaster was gathering momentum, Jean called upon the Lord of Prayers and asked, "Where is Alice now?" According to the map, the girl was a few blocks northwest of our hero, but the way there was filled with monsters. Now Alice was locked in a small building with her friend and boyfriend, whom she had been friends with since school. If the girls somehow managed to cope, the guy completely lost his mind from fear. He was sure that the end of the world had come and they would all die before dawn. So something in his head told him to take advantage of this moment and satisfy his vile desires. When the girls asked him what he was doing, the guy replied, "I live in the moment and do what I have long dreamed of." This bastard, ever since school days, dreamed of getting Ellis. And now it seemed to him that this was the most opportune time. Of course, Alice tried to break free, but she didn't have the slightest chance against the awakened one, and the guy simply pushed his friend, who was trying to help her, aside. Unzipping his pants, the guy said, "I've been waiting for this for so long. Just let me die without regret. Don't touch me, let me go," Alice cried pitifully. By hitting her in the face, the guy wanted her to shut her mouth. After all, he loved it when a girl was silent and obediently obeyed him. At that moment, someone broke the window going inward. Hearing the sound of falling glass, the guy whispered in a trembling voice, "Beetles. Beetles have come here." And a second later, someone hit him right in the head at incredible speed. And again, this someone turned out to be Jean. Seeing our hero, Alice began to cry with happiness. Surprisingly, Alice's friend was able to survive our hero's blow. In addition, the guy offered Jean to use the girl together. Well, in response, our hero summoned the Dark Emperor and grabbed this bastard by the neck. Jean didn't kill him for only one simple reason. He wanted the guy to tell everything that happened. "You fucking bastard, I'll kill you!" the guy screamed. "Dark Emperor!" "Squeeze his neck hard enough to break all his bones," Jean added. "Stop, I'll tell you everything!" The guy felt pressure on his throat and screamed. After the Dark Emperor let him go, this idiot threw himself at Jean's feet and begged him to spare him, because he hadn't done anything to Alice. Well, of course, our heroes didn't care. He knew perfectly well what would have happened if he hadn't intervened. So Jean gave the guy two options. Either our hero would kill him, or he would go out into the street and meet his death with dignity. Don't think for a second, the guy chose the second option, because this way he has at least the slightest chance of surviving. Jean also understood this perfectly well, so he called upon the Lord of Prayers and asked that 200 beetles attack the guy in a minute. Our hero simply could not leave him alive after what he wanted to do. This idiot wanted to break a large window so that the bugs would tear Jean, Alice, and her friend to pieces, and he himself wanted to hide in a safe area nearby. But our hero is not such an idiot as the guy thought he was, and he prepared everything in advance. An ordinary D-rank awakened had no chance of surviving against such a horde of monsters. Now that Alice was finally safe, Jean felt calm. "Brother, did you really let him go?" Alice asked with tears in her eyes. "Of course not. How could I let him go after what he did?" Jean answered, "You can be sure he is no longer alive. The monsters tore him to shreds," added our hero. Blushing a little and leaning towards Jean to kiss him, the girl whispered, "Thank you." But at that moment, Kaguya appeared and cried out enthusiastically, "Sir, will she become your girlfriend?" Embarrassed, Alice pushed herself away from Jean, and our hero shouted, "Kaguya, shut up!" Perplexed, the spirit added, "Why should I remain silent? You said that you like her. Or did you lie to me and you don't like her? I don't understand." Kaguya added, putting Jean in a very awkward position. Got very nervous, our hero said that Kaguya misunderstood him and he was indifferent to Alice, which of course was absolutely a lie. And at that moment, the friend came to consciousness. "You will see that everything is fine with her," Alice, not holding back her emotions, rushed to hug her. "Everything was fine with my friend, but because of the strong blow, she had a severe headache." Seeing Jean, the girl screamed, "Your mother, another one, what do you want from us?" "Sister, don't worry, this is my friend Jean. He is the one who saved us, actually," Alice whispered in a loving voice. "A friend, you say? And he's a handsome guy," the girl replied. Well, having made sure that everything was fine with everyone, it was time to leave. Having made his way through the previously cleared streets, our hero took Alice home, where her mother was waiting for her. After what Alice had been through, when she saw her mother, she threw herself into her arms with tears in her eyes. As the streets became relatively quiet, Laura offered Jean a cup of tea. The woman thanked our hero for saving her daughter, when suddenly Alice asked her mother, "Where is Dad now?" To which the woman replied, "Darling, your dad is a government official. He will be at work today." Having heard this, our hero became very wary. The thing is, Alice's dad worked in the city office in the city center. If the light source in the building attracts monsters, then all the workers could be in great danger. Realizing this, our hero was going to go to work for him. But Laura and Alice tried to dissuade him, saying that it was very dangerous. "Don't worry about me. I promise I'll get Uncle Henry back safe and sound." Our hero responded to the girl's worries. Arriving at the building where Alice's dad worked, Jean noticed that a swarm of insects had already been there. The entire building was covered in their saliva and blood, when suddenly our hero felt an incredibly powerful energy. Even in the most dangerous dungeons, he had never felt anything like this before, which was quite unexpected because the monsters in this disaster reach a maximum of 20 levels, so they cannot emit this kind of energy. While Jean was trying to understand what was happening, an explosion thundered on the second floor. The feeling of that very energy became only stronger. This meant that the progenitor of the catastrophe had appeared. If we were to classify this disaster by rank, it would be rank E because the monsters here are quite weak. However, if a progenitor appears nearby, the monster's level will be higher than that of the disaster itself. Such monsters are called guardians of the progenitor. Only by killing such a monster can a catastrophe in a certain area be stopped. In a past life, before entering the era of chaos, the government decided to deal with those who surrounded and suppressed the guards. Those who completed the task received a generous reward. Don't think that it was he who met the so-called boss, whose level is clearly higher than 30. I don't even know whether he was lucky or not. Be that as it may, the size of the progenitor was still frightening, so Jean decided to prepare properly. And don't forget why he came here, to save Uncle Henry! Especially since low-level insects have already made their way inside the building. There were no awakened people among the city office workers. After all, keeping people with superpowers in such a job would be too stupid. The only thing the workers could do was barricade the doors and hope that someone would come to their aid. This plan was not the most reliable, but given the current situation, they simply had no other choice. The men were lucky that they worked in a government agency, and the doors to their offices were made of strong metal that was difficult for monsters to get through. But the door was not the only way to get into the room where the men were hiding. Hearing the sound of falling glass, Henry and his friend prepared to meet their deaths. But at that moment, the terrible sound of insect wings died down, and soon it became completely quiet. A second later, a cry was heard. "Uncle Henry, it's me, Jean. Are you here?" Hearing a familiar voice, the man and his friend went out into the corridor to see what had happened. And there they saw our hero, who was standing with a blade in his hands on the corpse of a monster, and smiling affably. Meanwhile, Derek and his team decided to replenish their energy reserves in the Holy Land dungeon. But, to their surprise, this dungeon will be unavailable for some time, since it was recently completed and requires time to recover. Seeing this, Derek shouted in anger, "Bastard! You robbed me of several major achievements that would have helped me reach the strongest awakened. And now the secret world ended earlier than I thought." When suddenly Max added, "It's interesting, but why did he take so long to clean it? The Dark Emperor clearly knows the secrets of these dungeons. If you do everything as the system asks, the reward will not be that big. But he waited for the right moment and took everything. That's why the dungeons are now unavailable," Derek answered confusedly. Whatever the case, Derek's team is in huge trouble right now. The only downsides to their awakened SS rank abilities is that their spirits have become too strong and consume a lot of energy. There wasn't much time left until the end of the disaster. Derek wanted to explore a few more secret places. He didn't believe that the Dark Emperor was able to clear them all out. Meanwhile, our hero brought Uncle Henry back home, where Laura asked him about what had happened to him. "Aunt Laura, Uncle Henry, it's simple. I have developed an S-rank talent," Jean answered when asked about his new abilities, which Alice's parents were very surprised about, because they also awaken powers in themselves, but are still considered ordinary people. After all, Henry simply has increased endurance, and Laura has intelligence. I think it's worth clarifying that many more people have awakened powers in themselves than you might think. It's just that most of them have awakened powers that are so insignificant that they are considered ordinary people. Only talents of rank A and above are truly considered awakened. For example, Alice awakened the abilities of rank A, Sounds of Nature. This ability can make her singing even more beautiful. It also gives the ability to restore physical strength and improve old skills. When suddenly Aunt Laura asked, "Jean, what talent have you awakened?" Noticeably nervous, our hero began to mumble something unintelligible under his breath. But then Alice interrupted him and said, "Mom, you can't ask about such things, especially when he has such a high rank." "You're right, I ask too many questions. It's just that I remember Jean as a child, and now he's so strong it's hard to get used to it," Laura added. "Don't worry, you are like family to me, so I can tell you. My ability, Heaven's Justice, has awakened. It gives me incredible attack power," Jean answered. Naturally, our hero couldn't tell the whole truth that he gets his power by killing people. After all, it could greatly affect his relationship with Alice. You know that with such power comes great responsibility, don't you? Uncle Henry asked anxiously. Of course, I understand everything. Besides, I would like to take Alice with me to one of the dungeons, if you don't mind. Jean answered with a smile on his face. I don't think she's in any danger with someone like you, so I don't mind. We have a spare guest room, you can stay the night, Henry answered with a heavy sigh. Our hero was unsure whether he should stay the night at their house, but Alice just took him by the hand and dragged him along. Once upon a time, Henry lost contact with a boy who lived in an orphanage for many years. But today, this boy saved his family. In this life, Jean has already saved Alice, but he can't stop here for long because he still has to save his brother. If everything were different, and under different circumstances, our hero would never have left this house, because living with Alice and her family is his dream. But now the most important thing is to improve the characteristics, and find another one to Nora rank S. And here's the perfect candidate, a man named Dean. In his youth, he was a copycat of a famous serial killer, but was never caught. And in the era of awakening, he received the ability of the rank SS. Bloody Harvest. When activated, the spirit Lord of Terror appeared. It is not yet known what specific abilities this spirit possesses, but one thing is clear. It feeds on the despair and fear of people. The more a person fears him, the stronger he becomes. Dean had a little 3-year-old daughter, for the sake of which the man was capable of anything, and given his past, anything in the literal sense. Thanks to his robbery skill, Jean had already taken away the skills from Lou and Bailey. But besides them, Jean knew of the existence of 2 more awakened ones with high ranks who would become real monsters in the future. And one of these awakened ones was Dean. Unaware of his true abilities, Jean made him his next target. From this moment on, the ghoul hunting season is declared open again. Meanwhile, Dean and his spirit hunted insects, leveling up one after another. But the Dreadlord had one peculiarity. The longer you use it, the angrier you become. At that moment, one began to curse his dead wife because she abandoned him with their small child. But then, Lord of Terror said, "Human, listen, these monsters bring very little strength. I need more fear to strengthen my teeth." "But where can we get so much fear?" asked Dean in surprise. "People! Only the fear generated by your souls can fill me with strength," the spirit answered. Even though Dean was a real bastard before, he has changed a lot since the birth of his daughter, and has come to understand the value of human lives. But the influence of the demonic aura of the spirit once again awakened in the man the former thirst for killing people. Especially since if he kills someone during the disaster, it is unlikely that anyone will investigate the matter. Bursting into the first house he came across, Dean came across a newlywed couple with a baby. At that very second, the Lord of Fear became many times stronger. With every cell of his body, the spirit felt how scared these people were. The man desperately rushed towards Dean with a knife in his hands to save the family. He didn't even have time to run a couple of meters before the Lord of Fear pierced him with his finger. The spirit received true pleasure from absorbing human fear and despair, and in doing so only became stronger. At that moment, even the former serial killer realized that the spirit he had created was a real monster. But it wasn't only the negative emotions of people that gave the demon strength. Most of all, he liked to absorb the tormented human soul. After killing the man and absorbing his soul, the Lord of Fear wasn't going to stop there. He wanted to do the same to his wife and child. But at that moment, Dean stood between the demon and the woman and shouted, "Stop it! I didn't summon you for this. I wanted you to help me deal with the monsters and level up." Pressing his master to the ground, the demon said, "Fool, you are my servant. I was born from the despair and thirst to kill in your soul. I am a natural disaster. I need you only so that I can regain my strength and free myself." "You won't stop me with your humanity, so don't interfere or you'll die," added the Lord of Fear and threw Dean aside. Remember I said that this spirit, or rather Dina, becomes stronger by absorbing fear. So now he has enough strength to completely control his own master. Now it is clear why in the future Dean became a real monster. Realizing that the owner's humanity will prevent him from becoming stronger, the demon ordered Dean to personally kill the woman and her newborn child. Whoever he was in the past, he is a completely different person now, and he is simply not capable of committing such a murder. But unfortunately, his soul was too tormented, so the Lord of Fear easily gained control over him. Not even wanting to, Dean grabbed the knife that fell from the man's hand and was ready to kill an innocent woman and her child. Being incredibly frightened, the woman with tears in her eyes begged him for mercy. But Dean could not be stopped, and a moment later, with one blow, he took the life of an innocent child and his mother. After which the guy threw the bodies out the window. And by this time, Jean approached the house where this poor family was located. He knew that in the future Dean would become a real monster, but seeing how he inserted a knife into the body of an already dead woman dozens of times, Jean summoned the Dark Emperor and ordered him to kill Ding immediately. Our hero had never been so furious. It will be interesting to see the fight between the Dark Emperor and the Lord of Fear because they are both attacking spirits with fundamentally different positions. Having felt the aura of the Dark Emperor, the demon immediately understood that the fight would not be easy. Holding back the Emperor, the demon turned to Jean. Your spirit is incredibly strong, but I feel that your soul was plunged into despair. Don't worry, I'll soon rid you of them forever, the demon added, attacking the Dark Emperor. The Lord of Fear understood perfectly well that fighting the spirit was absolutely pointless. One could only win by killing its master, so he directed his next attack towards our hero. But he did not know that Jean had more than one spirit under his command. By the way, Jean did not summon Kaguya. She appeared on her own when she felt a threat to her master. It is worth admitting that the Lord of Fear is an incredibly strong and formidable opponent. The speed of his attacks exceeds the speed of all the spirits of our hero. Realizing that Kaguya would not be able to withstand such an onslaught for long, Jean decided to coordinate the actions of his spirits. Taking advantage of the moment while the demons were distracted, the Dark Emperor attempted to attack him. He managed to hit the demon, but it didn't bring any significant result, except that the Lord of Fear became even more angry. Now the demon's main target became Jean and Dark Emperor. In an equal fight, our hero's spirit has no chance of winning, even with the Lord of Prayer's enhancement. The only way to win is teamwork. Kaguya summoned her strongest sword, Nightstorm. At that moment the demon screamed, releasing a huge amount of energy that threw the spirit in different directions. This was one of his skills. With his scream he not only pushed back enemies, but also dealt them serious mental damage. Due to the low intelligence, the Dark Emperor received a concussion effect after this attack, and became easy prey for the Lord of Fear. Realizing that he could lose one of his strongest spirits, our hero summoned the green demon that he stole from Reggie. It won't be possible to kill the Lord of Fear this way, but it is quite possible to immobilize him and save the Dark Emperors. In addition, if you remember, the green demon has the skill of absorption. Thanks to this, it was possible to take away part of the demon's power, which allowed Kaguya to plunge the Nightstorm straight into his heart. This blow was more than enough to deprive the demon of all his strength and send him back to the underworld. Dying, the Lord of Fear said, "It is impossible, I cannot die. I am the greatest fear of all people. As long as fear dwells in your hearts, I will live forever." "As you say, then the next time we meet, you will once again bow your head at my feet," Jean answered, smiling. Thanks to the well-coordinated teamwork of the spirits, our hero was able to defeat this demon. Immediately after the death of the Lord of Fear, an incredible, heartbreaking scream was heard in the street. The source of this scream was Dean. After the death of the demon, he regained his sanity again. Looking at his bloody hands and the corpse of a woman with a child, he realized that this was his doing. Even though the main reason for Dean becoming a scumbag has been eliminated, Jean decides to leave him alive for a little while. And there are two reasons for this. First, there is no guarantee that after this, Dean will not go crazy and return to his old ways. And the second was that Jean needed his skill. "You realize what you've done?" Dean fell to his knees and whispered. "Please kill me. I don't want to live like this anymore. But I will have only one request. Protect my daughter. Tell her that I left, and when she grows up I will return to find her. I ask with tears in my eyes because I am a man." After listening to Dean until the end, Jean plunged his dagger right into his chest, after which he leaned towards him and whispered, "Don't worry. I will take care of your daughter." In the past, Dean was a terrible person, but after the birth of his daughter, he changed a lot, and did not want his daughter to know her father as a murderer. Having finished what he started, our hero activated the robbery. Now Jean had a serious choice to make, what to take from Dean. The Lord of Fear is too dangerous and uncontrollable, and can also subjugate the owner to his will, which is a big risk. So after thinking for a bit, our hero decided to take the power of the soul to raise his own rank from S to SS. The thing is that the connection with the stolen spirit is much weaker in comparison with the first owner, which means that even with a high level, our hero has a very small chance of controlling the Lord of Fear. However, having raised his rank, our hero discovered a new ability: Emotional Detonator. Thanks to this skill, Jean can feel the emotions of all living beings within a radius of 300 kilometers, and also amplify them tenfold. But for an SS rank skill, the abilities were quite meager, so Jean suspected that there was something more hidden within it. This skill is most likely similar to Rainy Night, and most likely enhance his spirits. And to test his theory, Jean decided to summon the newfound spirit, but instead of a demon, only a small egg appeared. I think it's worth clarifying that every time our hero activates robbery, he gets a new ability regardless of what he stole. And each ability has its own spiritual form, so with each new murder, Jean gets a new spirit. Visually, this egg was not much different from a goose egg, except that it emitted a strange aura. But fortunately it came with a description. But based on it, little was clear. The description said that this spirit feeds on the emotions of its owner. Is it possible that this spirit does not have a specific ability and form? Most likely its form and abilities directly depend on the owner. Not yet understanding how this spirit works, John decided to try out a new skill. When it was activated, our hero not only felt people's emotions, he also heard their thoughts. Now every person in the city was very scared, and Jean felt it. After 5 seconds, the skill's effect ceased, but this was more than enough time to cause serious damage to mental health. In order to use the emotional detonator more effectively in the future, you need to seriously engage in pumping up your mentality. Feeling the fear of people, Jean realized that Dean's true spirit was not a demon at all. It was an egg that simply absorbed his fear and turned into the Lord of Fear. Even though the spirit that appeared out of fear was incredibly strong, it was still dangerous. It was best to wait until the situation in the city was restored and try to summon the spirit again. Having more or less figured out his new abilities, the guy called upon the Lord of Prayers and asked him to find Dean's daughter. Meanwhile, the little girl was locked in the apartment and waiting for her dad. After a couple of hours of loneliness, someone knocked on the door of her room. "Mia, I'm your dad's friend," a voice behind the door. "My dad's friend?" the little girl asked anxiously. Only after making sure that Mia would not be scared did Jean enter. In order to establish relations with her, our hero got hold of a small part of the supplies that he had bought before the disasters began. And when the girl asked where her dad was, our hero replied, "He had to leave the city to protect you. While he's gone, I'll take care of you." "Wow, I knew my dad was the coolest," Mia cried excitedly, when suddenly our hero said, "Don't you think that I'm deceiving you?" To which the girl replied with a smile on her face, "My ability is to feel emotions, and I feel that in you there is only kindness." Now it's clear why Mia trusted Jean. After all, he really only wanted the best for her. After feeding her and making sure that everything was okay with Mia, Jean decided to wait until the disaster subsided and find her a good family. The whole world is in chaos now, and there must be a lot of people like Dean who can't control themselves, and all human values suddenly lost their meaning. Now, Jean wanted to help the whole world. His goal was to become the king of the whole country and create a happy future. And anyone who stands in his way will turn into ashes under his feet. Meanwhile, Derek and his team arrived at the Temple of the Wasteland. According to the man's recollections, it is in this temple that the guardians of disaster live. Only by killing them can they stop the disaster in Hangzhou. At some point, Takachi decided to deal with these guards alone. The man believed that he had enough strength to cope with them. In this way, Takachi was questioning Derek's authority. In other words, the man wanted to take his position as team captain. Understanding where he was going with this, Derek replied, "We are the strongest team in Hangzhou, but we must remember that the Dark Emperor has serious abilities, and he is definitely not weaker than us. Listen, Derek, do you think highly of this guy, since you never heard of him in your past life? We both have SSS rank abilities. Can he really beat us?" Takachi said. Because of his awakened ability, the man was sure that there was no one stronger than him in the whole world. He promised to help Derek get rid of the Dark Emperor, but in return, he asked for the title of team captain. In fact, Takachi had long been thinking about seizing power in the team. He wanted to kill the Dark Emperor with Derek's help, and then kill Derek himself. But more on that later. Before entering the Temple of the Wasteland, Derek asked Max to check if there was anyone nearby. Max had some pretty serious detection skills. Overall, his skills were perfect for a spy. After finishing scanning the area, the guy found no one within a kilometer radius except for a giant level 7 praying mantis. Teruo and Takachi thought that this dungeon was also cleared by the Dark Emperor. But Derek understood that due to the time shift of the disaster, many things had changed, including the habitat of the Guardians of Disaster. Meanwhile, Jean found one of the main monsters of the disaster in the very center of Hangzhou. It turned out to be a monster called the Void King, an incredibly dangerous level 34 creature with incredible stats and skills. The biggest problem was his huge life pool and the skill Parasite Army, which summons a whole horde of insects as soon as you attack the King of the Void. But if you think about it, this monster is not as strong as it seems. except for its size and summoning ability. So if everything is done correctly, the King of Emptiness will not create big problems for the Dark Emperor and Kaguya. She only needs such a monster with powerful and continuous combinations. Previously, Jean considered the summoning skill to be the main danger, but he did not take into account another of its abilities. Royal Call, which completely deprived the Dark Emperor of his powers. Now the spirit's attacks are no stronger than those of an ordinary person. Taking our hero by surprise, the King of the Wasteland immediately summoned his army of insects. Even though these monsters are very low level, if they attack Jean in a pack, there is no guarantee that he will be able to fight back. But on the other hand, killing these monsters gives a lot of experience points. If you kill enough of them, you can raise your level quite a bit. Completely ignoring the Wasteland King, Jean ordered the spirits to focus on the smaller monsters. This plan had its own huge risks, but it was the best that could be done in this situation. But Jean wasn't going to push all the work onto Kaguya and the Dark Emperor, and he himself wanted to take part in this massacre. Meanwhile, a helicopter from a local news channel arrived at the scene. Since the disaster began relatively recently, people still did not understand what exactly was happening on the streets. Therefore, in this situation, reporters act as scouts. A huge monster the size of a 30-story building quickly appeared in the lens of their cameras. But the reporter was most surprised not by this monster, but by the fact that someone was fighting it. Although there are more and more awakened people in the world every day, as a rule, they are all low-ranking. The girl, without thinking twice, asked the pilot to come closer so that she could take a close-up shot of this hero. Meanwhile, our hero's kill count has exceeded 200. The result is amazing. And all this is thanks to only Dark Emperor and Kaguya. But such a protracted battle took too much energy, so Jean had no choice but to use the fruit of the divine tree. But even with these magical artifacts, the process of energy restoration is very long. Moreover, Jean didn't collect these crystals to defeat low-level monsters, so using the fruit of the divine tree was a last resort. But then, having killed a few more monsters, our hero finally raises his level to 24, which was very timely. For leveling up, our hero received some points to improve his skills. In the current situation, the most logical thing to do was to improve the skill 10,000 swords. After all, it was ideal for getting rid of a whole crowd of insects in a matter of seconds. Now not only does it require less energy to use, but more blades are created every second. The skill improvement generally raised the level of the Storm Swordsman's specialization, which improved Jean's combat power. During the time that our hero was distributing experience points, Kaguya and Dark Emperor had completely restored their energy reserves. With improved skills and stats, Jean decided it was time to finally finish off the main monster. But even these improvements and a full supply of energy and spirits did not guarantee absolutely any success. To defeat the King of Insects, you need to put in maximum effort. For the first time since receiving the new socialization, Jean finally decided to use her Great Storm skill. With this skill, Jean and her husband disorient the boss for a while so that Kaguya and Dark Emperor could get away. And our hero solved the problem with his army of insects with the help of the Lord of Prayers. The guy made a wish that not a single insect could come closer than a meter to him. By absorbing the crystal of cruelty that fell from the Wheel of Fortune, Jean increased the power of the Green Demon by 30%. With the help of the Green Demon, our hero wanted to farm a little more experience, while Kaguya and Dark Emperor fight their leader. It's too dangerous to fight such a monster personally, Jean. Even with his high stats, won't cause him any significant damage. At some point, the Insect King screamed again, but this time the scream was completely different. This time, by activating the King's Call, he strengthened his army twice, but at the same time deprived himself of 30% of his health points. This means that it will be more difficult for Jean, but it will be easier for the Dark Emperor and Kaguya. All this time, our hero is being followed by reporters in a helicopter. They would like to help him, but unfortunately their helicopter is not equipped with any weapons, so they can only watch. Journalists considered it their duty to show all the heroism of our hero, so that every person in the country knew him by sight. Fighting non-stop with hordes of insects, our hero used up almost all his strength. Well, now there was the Dark Emperor, who solved this problem with just one spell. At that moment, Jean realized that this could not go on any longer. It was time to end. Besides, Kaguya and Dark Emperor gave the Insect King a lot of damage. Now is the perfect time to end it all with one blow. For the final attack, Jean summoned the Green Demon to immobilize him, after which he activated 10,000 swords so that the boss could not restore his health points. After which he finally delivered the decisive blow with the Storm Swordsman's strongest skill, Striking Blade. This combination of skills created an incredibly terrible sound that could be heard in every corner of the city. But none of this matters, considering the result. Thanks to his perfume, Jean finally deprived the insect king of his head. The severed head fell and created a small earthquake, which only further demonstrates how huge this monster was. But given his skill, a severed head did not guarantee his death. So to make sure the insect king wouldn't rise again, Jean stabbed him straight in the head with a dagger. After this, world news broke that the Dark Emperor had become the first person in history to kill the insect king, and as a reward for this, he received 10 tickets to the Wheel of Fortune. Seeing this, the reporter realized that the Dark Emperor that everyone has been talking about lately was the same guy she had been filming all the time. She was filled with pride that the strongest man on the planet was from her hometown. Jean knew that he was being filmed the whole time, and he didn't mind at all. There was no point in hiding anymore. In addition to the Wheel of Fortune tickets and crystals, our hero also received 43,200,000 experience points and raised his level to 27. Crystals of Destiny that dropped from the Insect King are ideal for crafting equipment, but they can only be used to their full potential with high-quality equipment, so Jean decided to deal with them later. After the death of the king, the insects gradually began to leave the city, and the white fog will remain for some time. Kaguya was very worried that the celebrity could interfere with our hero in further raids. Maybe so, but Jean did it on purpose. He was sure that after what he saw, the city authorities would find out about him, and this would help him free his brother. Due to the fact that our hero spent too many fruits of the divine tree in battle, he was going to replenish their supplies, and then go to the dungeon to increase his combat power. But first, Jean asked the Lord of Prayers to find Mrs. Tai, the same teacher who tried to stand up for Cedric. After Reggie died, his friends didn't become good people. Bastards will always be scum. Because the teacher tried to save the poor boy, they tricked her into a dark room and forced her to film intimate videos. Poor Mrs. Tai thought that this was the filming of some TV series, so she just agreed, because since childhood, she dreamed of becoming an actress. Her former students knew about this dream, so they were able to take advantage of her weakness. These 4 bastards pounced on the poor teacher and did whatever they wanted to her, after which they beat her and abused her for a long time. But Mrs. Tai was not as simple as it might seem. She, like many, awakened abilities in herself, but unlike the others, she was afraid to use them. And in the meantime, our hero had already driven up to the building where, according to the Lord of Prayers, Mrs. Tai was. Jean found it strange that the spirit led him to one of the abandoned warehouses of the local factory. And besides, the chains on the doors were broken. Realizing that something strange was going on here, our hero asked the Dark Emperor to open the door in order to inadvertently fall into a trap. Luckily, there were no traps or anything like that inside. But there was something even stranger. Right at the entrance, there were 4 male corpses. Judging by their appearance, they had been without water for more than a month. I don't understand what's going on. Jean summoned the Lord of Prayer and made a wish that for the next 30 seconds he would not receive any damage. Before the spirit could do anything, the dark room was filled with bright light, after which Jean lost consciousness. And on top of that, his heartbeat suddenly started to slow down. He was dying. When the bright light died down, a creepy female silhouette appeared at the end of the corridor. Feeling the ominous aura emanating from this silhouette, the Lord of Prayers asked the Dark Emperor to protect Jean with all his might, while he and Kaguya will figure out who is behind this. And meanwhile, our hero found himself in some strange place, in a formal suit, and the room around resembled the groom's room. Seeing the photograph standing on the nightstand, Jean shouted in surprise, "Alice and I are married?" Before the guy could understand anything, someone knocked on the door, and behind her stood Alice and Kaguya in very revealing outfits. Seeing them like this, Jean screamed in a squeaky voice, "Why are you here, and why are you dressed like that?" But instead of talking to the girl, they rushed into the arms of our hero and began to stroke him in every possible way in interesting places. Meanwhile, in the real world, Kaguya was fighting with the spirit of Mrs. Tai. The fact that this spirit fought almost equally with Kaguya indicated that this was a spirit of at least rank S. In addition, Mrs. Tai's spirit enveloped the place in a pink mirage, which gave it a certain advantage. Pink mirage is a unique spirit skill that is somewhat similar to Kaguya's rainy night. When suddenly the spirit laughed and said, "You are funny. I helped your master find peace. Now he is resting in the heavenly world!" But I'll be completely frank, this place will not be heavenly for long. He will die soon. The spirit added with a smile on his face. If so, thank you for the explanation. The Lord of Prayers answered laughing. What are you talking about? The spirit asked, no longer smiling. Without explaining anything, The Lord of Prayers summoned the Book of Wishes. With the help of his skills, he wanted to pull Jean out of the world of sweet illusions. And meanwhile, our hero sank deeper and deeper into this illusion. But then Alice said one phrase that became her fatal mistake. "Jean, finally my dream has come true." And her mistake was because Jean knew her too well and knew that Alice would never have made the first move herself. And immediately after realizing this, Jean returned to the real world. Immediately upon returning, Kaguya pounced on our hero with tears in her eyes, screaming about how happy she was to see him. And then the spirit of Mrs. Tai asked, "How did you manage to get out of my pink mirage?" "So you are a spirit. Is this illusion you're doing?" Jean asked indifferently. Without waiting for an answer, he ordered the Dark Emperor to deal with this spirit as quickly as possible. In an equal fight, this spirit has no chance against the Dark Emperor under the control of our hero. Coming out of the illusion, our hero thought that this spirit could be very useful. Having dealt with the spirit, the Dark Emperor found its owner, who had been hiding in the closet all this time. Realizing she was in trouble, Mrs. Tai screamed, "Please don't kill me, I didn't mean to hurt you." "Don't shout like that. Just answer a couple of questions." "Did you kill these guys?" asked Jean. "No. More accurately, yes. But they tricked me into coming here. And then they did horrible things to me," Tai replied with tears in her eyes. "Please spare me. I can do anything you say. My mouth is capable of incredible things." The girl added in a seductive half-whisper, "It's interesting how it works. I feel like you're trying to put pressure on me, but it won't work." "Kaguya," our hero answered, after which Kaguya pierced the girl with her sword. At this moment, Tai desperately screamed, "Why?" My S-rank skill, Fatal Attraction, didn't work. Our hero killed the girl not because she killed those guys, because they were real freaks, but because she tried to kill him. With the help of the skill, Jean can make anyone fall in love with him in a matter of seconds. However, the stronger the target's willpower, the slower the skill will develop. And also, this skill only works on the opposite sex, which is quite logical, but can be considered a disadvantage. After the robbery, our hero wanted to meet a new spirit. And what he saw caused him genuine surprise. His spirit was visually very different from his previous incarnation. "Sir, you seem a little upset. I can change my form as I wish," the spirit said in a gentle, almost childish voice. "If you wish, I can return to the image of a slave in which my previous owner kept me," Melania added in a mature and sexy voice. Queen of the Night, the first spirit in our hero's arsenal that had its own name. As for her characteristics, there was nothing outstanding about them. Very mediocre combat abilities, which could not be said about skills. Melania could change her forms, which changed her skills. The main weapon in the spirit's arsenal was the so-called Pink Mirage. Considering that he is Jean and miraculously escaped from the Pink Mirage, this skill may be much more useful than it seems. With Melania's help, you can put your enemy into an illusion and finish everything with one blow. Although the clock was rapidly approaching midnight, Jean had no intention of resting. In his past life, after the disaster, another person with SS rank abilities appeared. To be precise, the guy awakened this ability at the same time as Jean. He only found out about it after the disaster. The thing is that this skill is activated only when taking damage. The point is that when going through a dungeon, a person can restore their strength, but if they get injured in the real world, they will have to be treated in the usual way. And the guy who received such an unusual ability was called Kan. I'll tell you a little about him. Quite recently, during the era of awakening, the guy was dumped by his girlfriend. But as soon as this cheap girl found out that Kan had awakened SS rank abilities, she immediately wanted to return to him. Overall, Kan was a pretty good guy who lived quietly and never bothered anyone. In the modern world, he could even be called a good person. But that's what he was like before he learned about his true abilities. Also, you might have a question. How did his ex-girlfriend find out about his abilities? If he just awakened them and hasn't gotten tired of telling anyone about them yet? It's very simple. This whole story with his ex-girlfriend is just a pink mirage created by Melania on Jean's orders. Unfortunately, like many people, fame due to high rank will turn Kan into a monster. That's why Jean, without a twinge of conscience, was ready to kill him, right in his sleep. Well, what a surprise. Even while in an illusion, the guy was able to stop Kaguya's katana with his bare hands. Moreover, he didn't just stop the blade, but squeezed it so hard that Kaguya couldn't even pull out the blade. For Jean, something like this was a real surprise. After all, he didn't know about Kan's ability, and a moment later, the spirit of the guy Cold Destroyer appeared. It was he who stopped the katana Kaguya, trying to protect his master. Realizing that Kan could break out of the pink mirage at any moment, our hero called on the Dark Emperor to deal with the Destroyer of Cold. With the very first blow, the spirit threw Kaguya aside, and from the attack of the Dark Emperor, he hid behind the Ice Dome. Fortunately, the Dark Emperor's strength was much higher than the Ice Dome's defensive ability, so the spirit was able to simply break through it. On-defensive skills were not the only thing that the Frost Destroyer could surprise with. He also had a binding technique called Frost Chains, with which he grabbed the Dark Emperor and began to drain his strength. Possessing a high intelligence stat, the Cold Destroyer understood that the spirits would fight as long as the master was alive. So he aimed his next attack at our hero. Although the speed of the Cold Destroyer's attacks was quite astonishing, Kaguya was still faster. She managed to protect Jean. All this is only due to the fact that our hero managed to activate the Rainy Night in time, which increased the spirit's characteristics. After thinking for a bit, the guy ordered the Green Demon and the Dark Emperor to retreat, to which the Destroyer of Cold said with a smile on his face, "Are you scared? Are people really such cowards? Am I the one who's afraid of attacking?" "I didn't think that spirits could joke," Jean answered laughing. "Stupid man, you will pay for laughing at me," shouted Destroyer of Cold. Jean ordered his spirits to retreat for one simple reason. He saw that the Cold Destroyer was trying to lure him into a trap, but he himself did not attack first. Moreover, it was very difficult to fight this spirit since its rank was SS. Even working together, our hero's spirits are unlikely to be defeated. But in such a case, Jean has an ace up his sleeve, a rank S skill, Perfect Fusion, through which Kaguya and Dark Emperor will merge their souls together, creating one powerful spirit. In such a merger, the strengths and weaknesses of each spirit are taken into account. As a result, you can obtain an ideal fighting spirit of rank S++, devoid of any serious shortcomings. The resulting spirit had the appearance of a Kaguya, dressed in the characteristic armor of the Dark Emperor. One of the skills was a very interesting robbery sword, which with each successful attack took 30% of the enemy's energy. The characteristics were also at a very high level. In combination with the armor of the Dark Emperor, the main disadvantage of Kaguya is compensated: her fragility. Now our hero has a huge advantage over the Cold Destroyer. We are not a spirit, surpassed this Ice Demon in almost everything. Feeling the enemy's incredible superiority, the Cold Destroyer attempted to trap the spirit in his icy prison. But with enhanced characteristics, Kaguya destroyed the ice barrier with just a few swings of her sword. Previously, the Cold Destroyer had an incredible advantage due to its astonishing speed. But now this advantage has been nullified. Realizing that he couldn't hold out against such an enemy for long, the Ice Demon decided to take extreme measures. After spending a huge amount of his spiritual energy, he activated his strongest sealing technique, Ice Coffin. Ice Coffin is capable of holding monsters of level 30 and above. But after fusing with the Dark Emperor, Kaguya is comparable to level 50 monsters, so even such a powerful barrier was not able to hold her back. Having broken through all of the Cold Destroyer's defensive techniques, Kaguya was ready to deliver the decisive blow. In close combat, the Ice Demon has no chance of winning. However, for such a case, the spirit Kana had a trump card hidden away, the strongest S-rank skill, Ice Blood, which turns the spirit's body into a solid and incredibly strong piece of ice, which even Kaguya is unable to penetrate. Could it be that such a swift attack failed? Not at all. Kaguya had another skill, Liberation Power. When activated, the Dark Emperor's armor is destroyed, but thereby Kaguya receives an instant boost to all characteristics by 60 points. And only after that, the spirit was finally able to cut the Ice Demon in half. "This can't be. I'm the legendary Ice Demon," the spirit whispered as he died. "I will protect my master until my last breath, otherwise I am not Princess Kaguya." "Kaguya," answered the dying words of the Destroyer of Cold. Having dealt with the spirit, it's time to deal with its owner. After completing the mission, our hero gave his spirits a small energy crystal so that they could restore their strength. In Can's case, Jean had no idea what exactly to take from him. After what he saw, the guy wanted to get the Cold Destroyer at any cost. In addition to the new skill, Jean also received an improvement in all basic characteristics. After a successful robbery, our hero received a skill of rank SS, Personal Mask. This skill completely copied the Khan ability, which was quite surprising, but meant that it only worked when Jean was in danger. At first, our hero thought that this was some kind of mistake in the description, so he tried to summon a new spirit. But after a couple of unsuccessful attempts, he realized that there was no mistake. Falling to the floor, Jean screamed, "Damn it! I finally got a rank SS spirit, but I can't use it." But relying on a spirit you know nothing about in a critical situation is too dangerous. So Jean had an idea. He wanted Kaguya to start beating him up. Naturally, the girl refused to do so, for to attack one's master is absurd. However, Jean gave her a sensitive order which she could not resist. Moreover, you need to attack with full force to ensure that the spirit appears. Kaguya, without holding back her strength, aimed her katana straight at Jean's neck, and stopped just a few millimeters from his vertebrae. But the spirit never showed up. When suddenly, the Lord of Prayers said, "Sir, I think that our colleague simply did not sense the danger. Because Kaguya did not intend to kill you. There was logic to it, but fighting Kaguya seriously was too dangerous. So our hero asked the Dark Emperor to attack him and try to kill him. And unlike Kaguya, the Dark Emperor did not need much persuasion. He began to act in the same second. And exactly 1 second later, the Dark Emperor froze like a statue. And along with it, everything around froze. Time stopped. After which, Jean heard a voice. There is no willpower in your heart to resist. You want to go more than a dozen ways. From today on, I am all you have. Forget your previous goals and desire to change the world for the better. With my name, we will destroy this world," added the spirit. Finally, he has shown himself. Now it's time to call him. This spirit bears the name Savior, because of its unusual abilities. Feeling threatened by the Dark Emperor, the Savior was going to kill him. And at that moment, the time dilation effect stopped, and the Dark Emperor was able to repel his attack. After which, the Dark Emperor said, "You have funny wings. Let's see how they will be in hell." Before their quarrel went too far, Jean stopped them. It would be bad if the spirits were on bad terms with each other. "Hey, since when can you do anything without my permission?" Jean shouted menacingly. "Excuse me, sir," the Dark Emperor answered timidly. "Master, I will do everything for you. I await your next orders." The new spirit answered. The Savior surprisingly had excellent manners. Our hero was glad that he was not like the Demon King because, in essence, they are very similar. As befits an SS rank spirit, its stats are much higher than all previous S rank counterparts. Besides, his skills are incredibly amazing. Besides the life-saving skill, he has a good ranged skill. It is much more powerful than Cold Destroyer. After studying the description of the Savior, Jean said, "What does Patron of 23% of reincarnation mean?" Adjusting the collar of his shirt, the spirit replied, "Sir, it is because of the danger you have just been exposed to. I have calculated that 23% of my powers will be enough to protect you." Milan suddenly intervened in the conversation and shouted in surprise, "So you want to say that you can block the iron block of the Dark Emperor using only a small part of your power?" "Not exactly. For him, even 2% of my strength is too much," the Savior answered pompously. Not wanting to tolerate the insults addressed to him, the Dark Emperor, without Jean's order, rushed at the Savior. Our hero sighed heavily and shouted, "Stop! And you, Melania, stop setting them against each other." Jean also added angrily, hitting the girl on the forehead with his finger. After this, Melania, all in tears, threw herself into his arms, complaining that our hero was treating her cruelly. But even despite the order, the relationship between the Savior and the Dark Emperor is still tense. Our hero's team now has too many spirits, which makes it too difficult to control them. In addition, each of them has a high intellect and has their own individuality. And in the future, this can lead to not the most pleasant consequences. After thinking for a moment, Jean said, "Listen carefully. If I temporarily lose consciousness, you will all obey the Lord of Prayer. Understand?" Considering the relationship between the spirits, this was the most correct decision. All the spirits immediately made it clear that they understood the order, except for the Savior. But after Jean personally addressed him, the spirit also accepted his order. The higher the spirit rank, the higher the characteristics and stronger the skills. But at the same time, there are more problems. When everyone calmed down, Lord Praise thanked Jean for his trust and promised that he would not let him down. Meanwhile, Derek's team reached another dungeon, hoping to get as many resources as possible to level up. And frankly speaking, things were pretty shitty within the team. Because each member of the team is a high-ranking awakened with high ambitions, arguments quickly flared up between them about who should take how much of the loot. Or to be more precise, a heated scandal broke out between Teruo and Takachi. Luckily or not, they had Derek, who was many times stronger than them, and therefore had authority in the team. Realizing that he would not be able to maintain harmony for long, Derek decided the following. From now on, in addition to common affairs, everyone will act independently. And on general missions, the distribution of loot will be discussed anew each time, in order to avoid unforeseen conflicts. Of course, such a decision could cause even more controversy among them. But Derek hoped for their common sense. There are a total of 30 secret dungeons in Hangzhou County, And in addition to the Holy Land that our hero captured, there are still 12 left. Derek takes 4 dungeons for himself. Each team member gets another dungeon, and there are 4 secret dungeons left, which they will distribute among themselves. When suddenly Takakti asked, "I like your idea, but what if I need your help?" "In that case, I'll take 10% of the profit from you," Derek answered. Although this distribution of the dungeons among themselves had certain risks, it still eliminated a number of problems. Therefore, the rest of the team agreed to these conditions. Having resolved all the issues, the team finally decided to go into the dungeon. At that moment, Derek realized that at this rate, his power in the team would not last long, and to maintain his current power, he was going to become stronger. But first, he wanted to find his old teammates. Meanwhile in Hangzhou, the white fog after the disaster finally cleared. Now Jin's priority goal was to find another secret dungeon that was located right in the city in order to restore his energy. This dungeon was called the Weeping Grave. The legend said that the souls of real heroes were buried in this dungeon. And the purpose of the dungeon was to deliver supplies to the camp of the 6th Legion. In his past life, most of the dungeons rich in energy were captured by guilds, so Jin had never been to such places. And it's hard to even imagine what to expect in the Weeping Grave. But even if he suddenly finds himself in mortal danger, he will definitely be able to survive thanks to his spirits. In unknown worlds, the main thing is to act carefully and calculate all the risks. The beginning of the Weeping Grave was right at the foot of a huge canyon far, far to the north, which made Melania incredibly cold, as she was wearing a light nightgown. Jean was concerned that extremely low temperatures could negatively affect the perfume's capabilities. But the thing is that the Dark Emperor didn't feel the difference in temperature at all, and the clothes of the Lord of Prayers warmed him up quite well. And for Kaguya, cold is generally beneficial. Jean suspected that sooner or later he might come across a winter dungeon, so he prepared warm women's clothing in advance. So, as a caring owner, he dressed Kaguya in a light raincoat, and Melania in a warm dress. While exploring the Weeping Grave, Jean and the Lord of Prayers did not sense any monsters at all, as if the dungeon was completely empty. However, their loneliness did not last long. After a while, there was a loud noise. Jean hoped that it was monsters. He was eager to try out his new abilities in battle. Seeing the enemy army on the horizon, Jean ordered the Dark Emperor to fight in the vanguard while he prepared the rest of the spirits for battle. For the spirit, it was only a pleasure. Besides, he was glad that Jean still needed her. While the Dark Emperor holds back the monsters, our hero decided to use his trump card. He wanted to spin the Wheel of Fortune, but first he made an interesting wish to the Lord of Prayers. By absorbing 1 spiritual energy crystal to temporarily increase his spiritual energy, Jean wished for 1 SSS rank item. As expected, our hero received the highest rank reward, the Spirit Ascension Crystal. But for the rest of the cool, our hero received very mediocre, but still useful crystals. Spirit Ascension Crystal combines the power of doubles. It is said that it is the real miracle. It is worth at least 1 billion gold coins on the item market. However, this crystal can only give 70 ability experience points and still can't raise the robbery to rank SS. So after thinking a little, Jean decided to give this crystal to his brother so that he could use it at the right moment and save himself. But all the other crystals our hero gave to the Dark Emperor to increase all his indicators. Although each of the crystals individually was of low rank, together they provided a very significant increase to all characteristics. And before absorbing the powers of these crystals, the Dark Emperor easily dealt with these monsters. And now he kills 3 at once with 1 blow. Well, now that everything is more or less clear with the enemies, we need to come up with a strategy that will allow us to get the maximum profit. Players will have to help the 6th Legion, which has arrived, to investigate and explore the Tomb of Spirits together with the Legionnaires. And they will also have to meet the necromancer of the witch cult. The easiest way to go would be to kill this necromancer and receive a reward from the head of the Legion. It's very easy to do this, but the final profit will be very low. After thinking for a while, Jean came up with a more dangerous plan, but one that would ultimately bring much more. Well, before, Jean ordered Kaguya to help the Dark Emperor deal with all the monsters, but Jean himself was not going to stand aside. The faster they finished here, the faster they could go further. From the very beginning, as Jean entered the dungeon, he was watched by the same necromancer from the witch cult. This necromancer was the main boss of this dungeon. But he is not the only one in the Weeping Grave who was incredibly dangerous. Feeling a threat in our hero, the necromancer decided that he needed to be eliminated immediately. Meanwhile, the column of the 2nd Legion passed through the area known as the Canyon of Oblivion, and at the head of the column walked the commander of the Legion, Reinhard. He brought his warriors to this valley to cleanse it of the witch cult. From intelligence data, Reinhard knew that the first enemies were waiting for them in the Canyon of Oblivion. At the entrance to this canyon, the Legion met our hero, who politely introduced himself and said that he had information about enemies who were somewhere ahead. Map was genuinely surprised to see a person here. After all, ordinary people stay away from this place. Thinking that Jean was a mercenary, Reinhardt said, "Boy, tell me everything you know, and I will give you a reward that matches the level of your information." "Of course, but to be honest, I didn't get this information. My service did. So she'll tell you everything herself," Jun answered politely. Stepping forward, Kaguya whispered in a rough voice, "The thing is..." Without listening to the girl to the end, Reinhard felt that something was wrong, and a moment later, Kaguya attacked the commander, but he reacted in time and dodged. Why Jean attacked the commander of the Second Legion remains a mystery for now. After the first failed attack, our hero, with the help of Lord of Prayer, paralyzes Reinhard for 3 seconds, after which Kaguya deals a powerful blow, depriving Reinhard of most of his health. What frightened the commander most was the fact that he was quickly losing his spiritual strength, and moreover, could not move. Seeing the silhouette of the mage behind our hero, Reinhard realized that it was because of him that he could not do anything. I felt the spell's power getting weaker over time. The commander began to release some of his power to resist this spell. And besides, Reinhard's army did not stand aside and just watch as their commander was killed. But even despite this, Jean was not going to stop. He put more and more strength into each attack. Meanwhile, Kaguya fought desperately with Reinhard. It is worth admitting that this commander is really strong. When suddenly the commander looked at Jean and said, "Hey you, from the witch cult. Fight me if you are not a coward." "Finally, forward attack!" our hero answered with a smile on his face. The guy's behavior really confused Reinhardt. The commander felt that not everything was as simple as he thought. But be that as it may, he understood that he was obliged to kill him at any cost. A moment before his death, time stood still around Jean. And he appeared again, he, the savior, ready to kill anyone who dared to attack his master. Even though Reinhard couldn't move, he could still speak. How is this possible? Is a human capable of making contracts with more than one spirit? "You're right, a person is not capable of such a thing, but I am special," Jean answered. Thank Reinhard, our hero ordered the spirit to kill him, but wished that he would do it painlessly. As a result, the commander of the Second Legion simply disappeared into thin air. Of course, killing legionnaires, and especially their commander, was contrary to common sense, but that was our hero's plan. He wanted the surviving necromancer and the witch from this dungeon to consider him an ally, seeing how the main danger in the person of Commander Reinhard simply disappeared into thin air. The witch and the necromancer felt relieved and wanted to reward their savior. Meanwhile, the army of the Second Legion was preparing to avenge the murder of its commander, but to no avail. Without Reinhardt, they are unable to defeat such a powerful spirit as Kaguya. To be honest, this whole plan of Jean's is incredibly risky. After all, there is absolutely no guarantee that the necromancer will not want to kill him. In addition, for killing Reinhardt, our hero received a simply insane amount of experience. But what is much more important, only by destroying the Legion can you get the ashes of deceased heroes. While thinking about his next step, Jean noticed black smoke starting to appear from underground. And soon, from under the ground appeared the phantom of the necromancer, who said, "Distant wanderer, we are the witch cult. We invite you to the Tomb of Spirits, and leave these imperial dogs outside to us." At that moment, Jean realized that his plan had worked even better than he had imagined. Initially, he just wanted to rob the necromancer and escape while he fought the remnants of the Legion. But now that he has been invited to the main temple of the cult, there is a chance to hit the jackpot. The main thing is that the reward received is worth the effort. Following the phantom of the necromancer, Jean soon came to a huge mountain, at the foot of which was the entrance to the cave. To meet our hero, 6 monks of this temple and 1 witch came out. Now was the perfect moment to finish them off and clear this dungeon. But first, you need to make a plan and find out what ashes of the deceased are and where they are hidden. When suddenly the same witch in white addressed our hero. "Dear messenger, we are grateful to you for your help. May I know if you have brought with you any important instructions from the higher ranks?" Of course, for Jean, such a question was surprising, because he knew absolutely nothing about this world. But he understood that if he kept silent now, he would be exposed. Not being able to think of anything better, Jean asked, "How are you doing with the previous task?" "Sir, after 10 days of rituals, we have finally completed the Frost Dragon," the chief necromancer replied. Having gotten used to the role of a messenger from above, Jean ordered that they show him immediately. Sensing something was wrong, the witch agreed to show them the dragon, but now she looks at Jean with suspicion. From the inside, the temple resembled a banal dungeon from a well-known RPG, with gloomy walls and ghosts flying everywhere. In the most remote corner of this temple, something incredible was hidden. A huge frost dragon bound by dark magic. After the dragon spirit comes to life, it will definitely become a level 40 monster or even higher. Ordinary players cannot do this, and of course, Jean didn't want to let that opportunity go. However, it would take about 2 more days for the dragon to fully awaken. Previously, the dark monks were worried that they would not have time to complete what they had started, due to the arrival of the Second Legion. But thanks to Jean, this problem disappeared. Our hero didn't want to wait another 2 whole days inside the dungeon, and it was too dangerous. But he didn't want to miss the chance to take the ice dragon for himself. Understanding this, Jean asked, "I see. But where are the ashes of the deceased stored? I need to replenish the energy reserves that I spent in battle." "Mr. Messenger, the ashes of the dead are an important material for cleaning the dragon, and we have a little of it left," the necromancer answered excitedly. "So you want to say that the fact that I have no energy left is unimportant?" Jean said, looking at them menacingly. And a few minutes later, one of the monks brought all the supplies of ashes of the deceased that they had left. Having absorbed it, Jean felt how his energy slowly but surely began to replenish. And besides, it also added 100 energy points to all the spirits. Ashes of the dead is a very useful item. Our hero, and in the future, wanted to use the ashes of the deceased. However, in this case, the process of cleansing the dragon will take much longer. Seeing the worried faces of the monks and the witch, Jean said, "Don't worry. I will improve the ashes of the deceased. As soon as I collect the necessary amount, I will be able to continue to complete the original task." "Sir, but this is—" the monks whispered anxiously. "I didn't understand. Do you want to say something? Or will you follow the order of your superior?" Calling Kaguya and the Dark Emperor, Jean answered. Seeing the 2 fighting spirits, the monks bowed their heads obediently and were ready to carry out any order. Despite everything, the necromancer blindly believed our hero. Therefore, without the slightest doubt, he was ready to carry out his order. Let the monks carry out his order first, and they will talk about the rest when the time comes. However, not everyone in the temple believed our hero as blindly as the necromancer. The witch felt that Jean was not who he claimed to be, but she was not completely sure. So she decided to make sure that her guess was correct. Having contacted the chief monk of the cult, the witch said, "Sir, thanks to your help, we were able to finish the ceremony on time." "What are you talking about? What help?" the monk asked in surprise. "Well, didn't the main temple send us a messenger to help?" the witch asked in surprise. "Right now, we have too much work, and no free people to help you," the monk answered anxiously. Now everything becomes even more complicated. The witch did not understand why Jean helped them if he was not from their cult. Despite the fact that Jean the stranger, a monk, wanted to invite him into their cult, since he killed Reinhardt and became an enemy of the Empire. But the witch had a different opinion. She wanted to kill Jean. After a long conversation, the chief monk gave the order to give the guest the best reception and to give him everything he wants, no matter what the cost. Meanwhile, the monks of the cult were diligently processing the corpses of Imperial soldiers into ashes. Although these soldiers have long since died, powerful energy still remains in their bodies. Through necromantic magic, the monks are able to create dust of those with power. If everything goes smoothly, Jean will be able to achieve energetic freedom very soon. Seeing the witch, Jean asked her to come over and asked why she wasn't working with the others, to which the witch replied, "I know that you are not who you say you are, so you are a cat. And why did you sneak into our lair?" "Interesting. But the thing is that I didn't make my way to you. You invited me yourself, didn't you?" Our hero answered with a smile on his face. But if you look at this situation from this side, Jean is also right. They called him themselves. Remembering the order of the High Monk and realizing that she was wrong, the witch said, "I beg your pardon. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am the Witch of Desires. My name is Bride of Kara." "Nice to meet you, Kara. You can call me Dark Emperor." Our hero introduced himself in response. The witch was surprised to hear his name, because she knew all the strong heroes and not only them, but she heard this name for the first time. Having met them in person, Kara invited Jean to join their witch cult, saying that if he joined their ranks, he would be able to constantly receive ashes of the deceased in unlimited quantities. This sentence left our hero stumped. Usually the dungeon plot ends immediately after killing the boss, but now it seems to have expanded. To be honest, Kaga's offer regarding unlimited access to the ashes of the deceased really won Jean over. But on the other hand, joining the witch cult will definitely bring a whole bunch of trouble. That's why our hero asked for 20 minutes to think it over. Sir, I understand everything, but we don't have that much time. After Reinhardt's death, the Empire sent an entire army to suppress us. Kaga said anxiously. What should I be afraid of? When they come, I will simply kill them. I only need the ashes of the dead to hold the necessary amount of energy, Jean answered. I understand everything, but now we need to concentrate on the ice dragon, Kaga answered politely. To be honest, our hero wanted to deceive them and take all the ashes of the deceased and just run away. But apparently his charms do not work on the Kaga. Not wanting to lose a large batch of ashes of the dead, Jean tells the witch that he agrees to join their cult. But right after that, he stabbed the hair right in the heart of Kaga. Moreover, he did this right in front of all the monks of the cult, having exposed himself. Understanding the whole situation, our hero called on the Dark Emperor and Kaguya to deal with the monks. Naturally, joining the witch cult was absolutely pointless. Our hero was going to kill all the monks, take the supplies of ash, and leave the dungeon. When suddenly, one of the senior monks managed to trap Jean. To be honest, the guy was surprised that such weak people had such abilities. But be that as it may, Jean was many times superior to all of them, so such an attack did not work on him. While the spirits were dealing with the lower monks, our hero decided to deal with the main necromancer. But at that moment, a powerful earthquake began, and it was hardly a coincidence. The reason for this earthquake was that the main thing was that the necromancer freed the ice dragon from its shackles and subjugated it to his will. Jean didn't expect that this monk would be able to revive the ancient monster ahead of time. Due to the premature awakening, the ice dragon did not reach the peak of his powers. The arsenal had 3 skills with double effect, dealing damage and suppression. The damage of each skill was quite decent. Despite its enormous size and premature awakening, its power is only slightly greater than that of the Monster Lord. Taking into account all the nuances, Jean and Dark Emperor will fight in the vanguard, while Kaguya must deal with the Necromancer, Ice Dragon, essentially a spirit in the hands of this monk. The Necromancer completely controls all the actions of the dragon. Our hero was betting that it would be difficult for the Necromancer to simultaneously control the Ice Dragon and defend against Kaguya's attacks. Despite the reduced stats, even the Dark Emperor with his high defense stats had a hard time holding back the Ice Dragon's attacks. In this fight, the spirit plays the role of a tank, and Jean is the main damage dealer. Having waited out the icy waves behind the Dark Emperor, our hero went on the attack. With his very first blow, Jean was able to hit the dragon's vulnerable spot and inflict quite a decent amount of damage on it. After which, the Ice Dragon was stunned. And then the Dark Emperor also went on the attack. Although Yi's attack was quite effective, this monster had too much health, so it was impossible to kill it. Having become enraged, the Ice Dragon only became stronger. The lower his health became, the stronger and faster his attacks became. But our hero had the perfect weapon against the boss's ice techniques, 10,000 swords combined with the fiery spirit of the Storm Swordsman. As he rained down a continuous barrage of fiery attacks on the dragon, Jean shouted, "Kaguya, don't let the Necromancer rest!" "Got it!" The girl screamed and rushed into battle with renewed strength. The Necromancer didn't stand a chance against such a master of the Kaguya sword, so it didn't take even 5 seconds for her blade to pierce the monk through and through. Seeing this, Jean ordered all spirits to concentrate on the dragon. Our hero attacked the monster from above, Kaguya attacked from the right, and the Dark Emperor from the left, giving him the maximum lesson. No matter how many health points this boss had, he was not able to survive such a barrage of attacks. Of course, for killing the Ice Raycon, our hero received a whole bunch of experience. But more importantly, he was able to raise his level to 28. Jean decided to invest the characteristic points for the level he received into his own dexterity, and the ability points into the skill 10,000 swords. As this skill continues to improve, the energy consumption will decrease, eventually resulting in maximum damage with minimal energy consumption. However, experience and various ability points are not the only reward given for the boss of this dungeon. As a rule, monsters of level 30 and above contain hidden items, and the Ice Dragon was no exception in this regard. Although John was very worried that there would be no additional reward due to the premature awakening, he nevertheless took out a huge sword from the monster's skull. According to the description, it was a diamond rarity sword called Heart of Destruction. Honestly, this sword is simply amazing. It not only increases attack power by more than 200 points, but also all additional skills. It can be said that this is the best weapon at the moment. In addition, the Heart of Annihilation had passive skills that worked to immobilize the enemy during combat. It was surprising that such a sword was found in a mid-level dungeon. This may be due to the fact that in previous times, Jean fought only one spirit, and this time, two. As the difficulty increases, so will the reward. Having received a new sword, Jean decided to check if the ice dragon was hiding any more treasures. And as it turned out, our hero did it for a reason. In addition to the sword, the ice dragon also contained several medicines, a magic scroll, personal equipment, and a lot of coins. And if you don't count Heart of Destruction, the best loot could be considered Ice Dragon Horn. Thanks to it, you can summon a level 35 monster and make it a living shield. But our hero was not going to say goodbye to the Weeping Grave at this point. He wanted to return here for an improved batch of Ashes of the Deceased. Well, now, having taken everything he could, Jean finally leaves this dungeon. And about half an hour after the guy left the dungeon, Takachi entered it. This isn't the first time Jean has snatched the spoils from Derek's team. And now, Takachi has set himself the goal of defeating the Dark Emperor. Well, now I'll introduce you to a local police inspector named Tari. All his life, he was an ordinary guy. But at the age of 16, he discovered in himself a talent for solving crimes. So he went to study to become a detective. But on the day of the Great Awakening, a new S-rank ability, Future Modeling, awakened within him. The description said that this ability gives him the right to decide what will happen next in the world. However, as soon as Tari tried to activate the skill, he saw a message from you in the future, which said that he would soon die. Of course, the guy didn't agree with his fate. So, Tari decided to study the future diary and try to fix it. From the diary entry, he knew that a guy with black hair and purple eyes would come for him. By rewriting the scene of his death, the result did not change. Only the method of his murder became different. After which, he again tried to change the future, but the result remained the same. Of course, Tari, like any normal person, did not want to die, so he began to go through all possible options. But each of the scenarios he came up with ended the same way. This stranger was killing him. Having tried more than 1,000 different options for the future, the result was always the same. Tari understood that death was inevitable, but that didn't make it any easier. We moved to the present day. The remains of the insect army still terrorized the city. At some point, several monsters managed to get inside the police station. If you believe the future diary, it is from this moment that the last minutes of Tari's life will begin. Looking through the broken window, the guy saw his killer on the neighboring roof. Everything was just as it was written in the future diary. Unfortunately, Tari was on Jean's list of victims, as was Dean. In the future, this cute-looking guy will become the most bloodthirsty awakened. After watching the police station for a while, Jean noticed someone climbing out of a second-floor window. Understanding what kind of skills Tari possessed, Jean said, "Lord Prayer, it looks like our goal is clear. Send the beetles back to the shelter." In an attempt to survive for at least a few more minutes, Tari tried to hide in a dark alley. To our hero's surprise, the guy didn't even try to hide. He just lay leaning against the wall and choking on blood said, "This girl has become even more beautiful since last time." "What are you talking about? Did you know I was coming?" Jean asked in surprise. "Yeah, imagine, I have one like that. To anticipate the moment when you come," Tari answered with a smile on his face. Jean knew about his abilities, but only superficially, and now he has to understand them completely. Jean considered this ability a gift from fate, but Tari had a different opinion. He saw nothing good in knowing his future. Coughing up blood, the guy added, "What you read in this diary never changes. If it's not the curse, then what is it?" Having come to terms with the inevitability of his death, Tari asked Jean for only one favor. He wanted to die at the hands of Kaguya. Our hero refused this request and ordered the Dark Emperor to kill him. Jean was afraid that this could be some kind of trap for Kaguya. Realizing that he would die from the spirit in dark armor, as it was written in the future diary, Tari realized that fate cannot be changed. Before coming for the guy, our hero was tormented by doubts about whether it was worth doing this. But remembering his past life, all doubts disappeared. Moreover, the insects that managed to break into the police station seriously injured him, and he would not have lived long anyway. By taking advantage of the robbery, Jean received exactly the same skill that Tari had. Opening the future diary, our hero saw only blank pages in front of him. After thinking for a while, he realized that the new skill most likely worked the same way as the Lord of Prayers. So Jean said, "Future diary, tell me what will happen in the next 2 days." Entry in the future diary. "My name is John. If you are reading this, then I am already dead when I came to the secret dungeon, Weeping Graves. I met a man who claimed to be a modern heavenly master, Takachi. After a short conversation, Takachi just attacked me. Of course, I wouldn't hurt him. But I didn't expect that the Dark Emperor and I were no match for him. In the end, I died from his lightning spell. You have to change the course of events. It turns out that tomorrow, Jean must die in that dungeon. Let's remember Taki's words that the prediction of the future diary cannot be changed. John was seriously scared. Realizing that he was in serious trouble, our hero began to think about what to do. Rereading the predictions again and again, John will remember that he has heard this name somewhere before. Takati. After thinking for a bit, the guy decided to ask the Lord of Prayers for help. He wanted the future diary to tell him about an alternative development of events. New prediction. My name is John. If you are reading this, it means that I am already dead. After I found out about the future diary, I went to the weeping grave to find answers to my questions. But there, I met a man who was against me. I managed to surprise the enemy by being able to control several spirits at once, but after a long battle, the Lord of Prayers died, as did the Dark Emperor. Without my spirits, I became an easy target for Takaki, and I died. Of course, the new prediction was different from the previous one, but the result was still the same. Then, the Lord of Prayers advised our hero to call upon all his spirits and see how the prediction would change. Lord suggested that future diary makes its predictions based on the information it has, so it doesn't know about the existence of other spirits. Having summoned all the spirits except the Savior for an obvious reason, Jean asked to create a new prediction. Third prediction. My name is John, and if you are reading this, then I am dead. Having learned about my future, I decided to change it. In the dungeon, I met Takachi. Wait, why do I have 5 spirits? My opponent is probably the strongest enemy I've ever faced. So I combined all the spirits and launched an incredibly powerful attack. But after a long fight, I still died. This Takachi is incredibly strong with his SSS rank skill. Our hero couldn't believe his eyes. He was sure that 5 S-rank spirits could defeat 1 SSS rank. When suddenly Lord Prayer cried out, "Dark Emperor, kill our master!" It was absurd, but in this way they were able to call upon the Savior. Having appeared, the spirit once again asked Jean for permission to punish the Dark Emperor. But instead, our hero asked the future diary for another prediction. But even with the appearance of the Savior, the situation did not improve. In the finale, Jean dies. Covered in cold sweat, our hero whispered, "Do I really have to retreat? No, there must be a way out." After collecting his thoughts, John added, "Lord of Prayers, what tactics should I use to defeat the Takati?" Based on all the predictions, the Lord of Prayers thought that the last hope was an unborn moving fetus. And indeed, as soon as Jean took out the egg, the prediction in the diary of the future began to change. A new prediction. If you're reading this, it means I'm dead. What? I already have 7 spirits. My name is John. If you're seeing this message, it means I'm still alive. When I met Takati, I fought him, merging with my spirits. It was only through the power of all my spirits that I was able to win. Unfortunately, Takachi managed to escape. Nevertheless, I had an incredible experience and survived. Now our hero is faced with a question. Which emotion should he choose as the source of the birth of the moving fetus? After learning that he could win, it wasn't enough for Jean. He wanted to kill Takashi. To find out how to do this, our hero made a wish from the Lord of Prayers. Opening the wish book, the spirit said with a puzzled look, "I'm sorry, sir, but your wish will take all my energy, and I will go into silence." Of course, the gap between S rank and SSS rank is too big, and judging from the future diary, the Takati must have some other methods of fighting. John must prepare well for the fight. Well, for now, they will go to the prison to give the Ascension Crystal to our hero's brother, so that he can rise to the S rank. About 20 minutes later, City Prison Number 1 was attacked by a swarm of insects, just like what happened to the police station. After killing the boss disaster, John gained the ability to control small insects. The panic created by the monster attack created the perfect conditions to infiltrate the prison. Of course, it was possible to leave the guards to the monsters and sneak in unnoticed, but our hero chose another way. He realized that these people were not to blame for his brother getting into trouble, so there was no point in killing them. "Save the cops," Jean said. "I'm Eric's little brother. I need to see him." The police reported the incident to the warden, who authorized the visit, but asked that our hero come to his office after meeting his brother. The last time the brothers saw each other was in the last life, when Eric saved Jean from death. Upon seeing Eric, our hero whispered in a trembling voice, "Brother, it's so good to see you." "Jean, I heard that there are monsters in the city. Are you hurt?" If anything, call someone for help, replied Eric excitedly. Brother, don't worry, I'm fine, sadly added our hero. Hey, don't be sad, I'll be out soon and we'll solve all the problems, said Eric. Eric, as an older brother, was very worried about Jean. After all, he had been his father and mother, and his whole family since he was a child. In addition, the warden offered to commute Eric's sentence if he agreed to his terms, and Eric was willing to agree to those terms, all so he could get out of prison at least a little sooner. Seeing how worried his brother was, Jean said, Brother, believe me, no one will hurt me. I also brought you a present that will get you out of here soon. What? What gift? Eric asked in surprise. He didn't notice the spirit appearing behind him. A second later, the Dark Emperor shoved the Ascension Crystal into Eric. When the cops saw this, they ordered Jean to put his hands in the air and tell them what he'd just done. Hey, take it easy. I gave my brother a substance that disappears as soon as it enters the body. Nothing dangerous or forbidden, John replied with his hands up. Meanwhile, Eric was undergoing a very painful upgrade. Having risen to rank S, he had unlocked the skill Red Guts. From the outside, it looked as if the guy's entire body was covered in fire, and the hysterical scream of pain only emphasized it. And along with his new rank, Eric received a new spirit. Red Lotus Knight. Not to say his characteristics were outstanding, but they weren't exactly lousy either. After everything, Eric couldn't believe his eyes. He is the possessor of a high-rank spirit. Jean was sure that with the help of the Red Lotus Knight, Eric himself could break out of prison. At the same time, there was no need to escape from prison. There was a special program for prisoners who had awakened abilities. Eric was grateful to his brother for the gift, but he didn't understand why Jean didn't take the crystal for himself. But frankly, it didn't matter. What happened was caught on the security cameras and attracted the attention of the warden. He found it very interesting that our hero was able to raise the level of another man. Not 5 minutes into the meeting, the guards invited Jean to the warden's office. In parting, our hero said, Brother, don't worry. No one will dare to touch us again. I'll come visit you again. For now, be good and try to get out of here early. When Jean asked the guard why the warden wanted to see him, the warden replied, The master has an offer for you and your brother. From the very beginning, our hero knew that this whole promotion thing would catch the warden's eye. Jean had met this man more than once in his past life when he was trying to free his brother. Even then, he noticed that Dwayne had incredibly huge ambitions and would never miss a chance to get stronger. Simply put, our hero knew that after what had happened to Eric, he could make a deal with the boss about anything. Jean, you know your brother is no angel, but do you know what's going on with his case? What do you mean? Is there something wrong with the investigation? Jean asked Echidna. Why do you think your brother's case has been under investigation for 15 years? Eric, a common victim, he was just used as a weapon. Mr. Duan, please tell me everything you know, and in return, I will help you get rid of the monsters and protect the prison, Jean shouted excitedly. There is no need for that. The monsters will be killed sooner or later, Duan replied with a laugh. I saw you helping Eric to awaken the spirit, and don't deny it. It was caught on the security cameras, added the warden. Jean was hoping to help the prison get rid of the monsters, but it looks like that old fox has his eye on the Ascension Crystal. Realizing what Dwayne was getting at, our hero said, I don't think your information is worth what you want. After all, I can eventually find out for myself. Of course you can find out for yourself, but don't forget that I'm the one who can commute your brother's sentence. If you give me that magical artifact for awakening, it is my husband and I who will discuss what you came for. Dwayne replied, I understand what you want, but first you must tell me what is behind my brother's case. Jean added politely, Well, you're a good guy. I think I can trust you. Eric was framed by the Van Group Corporation, Duan said nonchalantly. After learning about it, our hero had one question. Why did the police knew about everything and kept an innocent man in jail for so long? You're right. But without hard evidence, we can't do anything. And everything we could get pointed to your brother. That's why we sentenced him to such a long time. Duan replied indifferently. It wasn't until years later that the chief of police found out by accident that Group 1 was behind the whole thing. I pointed out that it was the corporation that bribed the judge to give him a quick and long sentence. Seeing that our hero was filled with revenge, Old Man Duan advised him to give up any revenge. No matter how much power you have, Group 1 is the largest corporation in the country, and to face it alone is death. After that, Dwayne offered our hero a deal. Jean would help him awaken his power, and he would try to get his brother out. In this respect, Jean was in complete agreement with Duan. No matter how strong he was soberly assessing his capabilities against the strongest corporation in the country. The thing you're asking me for is in the vault, so I'll have to go get it. Agreed, as soon as you take this artifact, run to me, replied Duan cheerfully. And on that good note, they said their goodbyes. And of course, Jean wasn't going to give him the crystal. Now when our hero found out that the warden knew about everything and did nothing, he was going to kill him. After our hero, a guard came to the Duan's office and said that they had prepared a safe place for him to hide when the monsters attacked. There is no need for that. You guard the prison outside, and I will stay here and control everything, replied the man. Duan didn't really want the Ascension Crystal for himself, but for his son. As for Eric, the boss had a very simple logic. He knew that if he went against Group 1, he and his family would be dead that evening. Suddenly, a dark emperor appeared behind him and said, "Smoking is very bad for your health." At that moment, the man froze with fear and whispered in a trembling voice, "What's going on?" And a moment later, behind this huge spirit, Jean appeared and with a smug face said, "Mr. Duan, it's me." Seeing our hero, the man exhaled with relief. "Jean, don't scare me like that. Have you already obtained the Ascension Crystal? So soon?" "Of course, I'll do anything for my brother," Jean replied politely. "But you won't get the Ascension Crystal. Dark Emperor forward," added our hero, after which the spirit grabbed the warden by the throat. But Jean didn't want to kill him quickly. He wanted Duan to suffer as long as possible, just as his brother had suffered in prison all those long years. The man tried to call for help, but it was pointless. Before coming, Jean had wished that no sound would penetrate beyond this room. And finding himself face to face with the Duan, our hero asked the Lord of Prayer, "I want this man to tell only the truth." But before the interrogation could begin, Jean decided to beat the Duan properly for trying to deceive him. Perhaps our hero is doing the wrong thing. But is it right to keep an innocent man in prison for 15 years? After breaking a couple of bones, Jean finally stopped beating him. After waiting for Lord Prayer to cast a spell, Jean said, "Tell me, who in the Van Group framed my brother, and why?" "It was done by the second youngest master of the Van Group. Then they stole the artifact from the museum, and sold it to the Empire of the Rising Sun, and made your brother guilty, paying him 100,000, begging for mercy," shouted Duan. "What are you saying? They gave him the money and Eric just agreed to it?" Jean angrily interjected, ordering the Dark Emperor to break the man's legs. "No, it was me. They offered him a whole million, but he only got 100,000, and I took the rest of the money." Breathing heavily, Duan replied, "As I thought. Then the second question, where does a rat like you hide his money?" Holding back his anger, asked our hero. "Dream on, you and Eric will die anyway. Why do you need my money?" Duan replied with a sneer. Realizing that something went wrong, our hero looked angrily at the Lord of Prayers. Then Duan, crying and gritting his teeth, said, "I keep all my money in cash. There are about 94 million, all stored in the basement in the building number 14 in the district, Wuling." "Jean, you're just an idiot. Kill me, you won't get anywhere," the man added. "Do you really think I'm an idiot?" asked our hero in surprise. "You can consider me whatever you want, but it doesn't change the fact that you are a bastard who keeps innocent people in prison," Jean added with a smile on his face, leaning his foot on the man's head. A moment later, the monsters burst into Duan's office. Our hero was not going to kill the man personally, because then he would have gotten into trouble. It's much safer to leave the task to the monsters, and to make sure Duan didn't stand a chance, Jean asked the Lord of Prayers for help. The last thing the man said before he died was, "Jean, you'll die like a yard dog, just like your brother." Meanwhile, the guards tried their best to repel the insect attack, and no matter how desperately they fought, human casualties could not be avoided. Was the sergeant in charge of the defense? After losing several of his men, he decided to retreat back from the barricade on the second floor of the prison. When Eric came up to the lieutenant and offered to help, "How did you get out?" the policeman asked in surprise. "Those bugs destroyed part of the prison and some of the prisoners were able to escape, and I just awakened an S-rank talent." "I'll help," replied Eric. "Okay, if you help save the lives of my men, I'll do my best to make sure your labor is appreciated and you get out of here as soon as possible," replied the lieutenant. After getting permission from the policeman, Eric summoned the Red Lotus Knight. As soon as the beetles sensed the presence of a strong enemy, they decided to eliminate the threat, but they're not likely to get to Eric. The Red Lotus Knight will give his life to save his master. But defense alone won't win the battle. Eric ordered his spirit to destroy all the monsters and prevent them from harming people. Watching the Red Lotus Knight, the lieutenant was simply shocked at the power he possessed. Meanwhile, our hero was watching everything that was happening from the side. Of course, he could help his brother, but then Eric would not look so convincing on his background. Jean wanted his brother to do everything alone and get out of this damn prison. Besides, if suddenly Eric couldn't cope, Jean would be there to help. Just as suddenly there was a scream. We're finally free. These idiots are fighting bugs need to run before they see us. There was no doubt about it. Besides Eric, several other prisoners were able to escape from the prison. But Jean turned around and saw no one. Realizing that something was wrong, Jean called on the Lord of Prayer and said, "Say, someone just spoke." "Sir, it's one of the prisoners who has awakened a talent of rank S. Invisibility." Lord of Prayer answered. "So you know what to do? I want him to show his pretty face." With a smile on his face, Jean replied. After that, the prisoner became visible again. "Hello, who are you? Did you break my invisibility?" shouted the guy nervously. Realizing that our hero would most likely try to stop him, the guy decided to kill Jean. Looks like today's a lucky day for our hero. He got his brother out of jail and found a criminal with S-class talent. It's funny because according to the official data, criminals in this prison only had a maximum ability rank of A. How did this guy manage to avoid being tested? This guy, since waking up, claimed to have absolutely no ability and hid until the last moment. The invisibility skill. Too good and useful for Jean to just let this guy get away. Besides, if the Lord of Prayer was to be believed, this criminal deserved his punishment. So by killing him, Jean would be doing society a great favor. Realizing that our hero was not a policeman, he realized that he was likely to be killed, so he wanted to escape at the first opportunity. And Jean, too, realized that the guy was unlikely to fight to the last man and try to escape, distracting our hero by the incessant attacks of his spirit. The guy tried to get over the main wall of the prison. In addition, the skill, invisibility, this is only part of the talent, hermit. The guy can not only become invisible, but also completely remove his scent, which made detecting him almost impossible. Realizing that if the guy got over the wall, finding him would be quite problematic, Jean summoned a keg and finished the job in one blow. By some miracle, his ability has been upgraded to level 5. And now the talent Hermit, with all the abilities, belongs to our hero. Thanks to this new skill, Jean can enter a state of invisibility for 2 seconds right before an attack. This increases his chances against the Takati. But unfortunately, this effect lasts only an hour, and after a hidden attack takes a full day to recharge. Perhaps the effect of this skill will improve if our hero raises his rank to SS. But in addition to invisibility, talent Hermit still had a skill, Shadow of the Purple Vine, on the principle of application, something similar to the Green Demon. And in addition, this skill quite well compensates for the shortcomings of invisibility, because it is very powerful and numerous. Suddenly Jean felt a severe headache, but soon the pain was replaced by a daze. Then, he received a notification that the skill looting is temporarily blocked. Apparently, the presence of 9 S-rank abilities is a limitation for looting at the current rank. Jean knew that something like this would happen sooner or later, so he had already made a plan for it. After prison, our hero went to a dungeon, Wolf Valley. It's a dungeon with very weak monsters, but it's one of the few places where you can get lottery tickets. Our hero took 400 lottery tickets from Dwan, and in this dungeon he got 100 and only 500, plus the energy Jean got from the Weeping Tomb. All of this should be enough to raise the loot to SS rank. Calling upon the Wheel of Fortune, Jean made a wish at the Lord of Prayers. The winnings he received should be enough to raise the Dark Emperor to the SS rank. He also asked for his luck to increase to the maximum and for the Lord of Prayers to not have energy hunger. Given the reserves of Ashes of the Dead, this shouldn't have happened. But our hero decided to reinsure himself. What we need most right now is the Spirit Ascension Crystal to strengthen the Dark Emperor, because the difference between the S and SS ranks is enormous when it comes to combat power. Considering that our hero has as many as 500 lottery tickets, the chance of getting the right items is very high. After stopping the Wheel of Fortune, Jean received 1 Ascension Crystal of Diamond quality, 1 crystal of Gold quality, and as many as 3 crystals of Rare quality. On top of that, there were 51 S-grade crystals. Considering the number of lottery tickets, more than 10% yielded very good items, which could be considered an amazing result. As he planned, Jean gave all the Spirit Ascension crystals to the Dark Emperor, so that he could definitely raise his rank. As the spirit absorbed the crystals, it could feel all of its characteristics increasing rapidly, but this did not guarantee that it would be able to raise its rank. Jean did not know exactly how many Spirit Ascension crystals were needed to raise the Dark Emperor's rank. However, after a moment, it was clear that it had all worked out. After all, our hero had received a notification that the loot had attained the rank of SS, although it did not give new opportunities to increase the rank. But now Jean is able to get as many as 19 other people's skills. Among other things, Our hero also received another Crystal of Ascension for himself. With its help, he can reach the limit of his talent, or help someone to awaken, as it was with Eric. As for the Dark Emperor, it's not clear yet. He was still going through the amplification process. 5 minutes later, the process was complete. And now, the Dark Emperor is the second spirit in our hero's arsenal with the rank of SS. After upgrading the rank, the spirit received an increase in all 6 of the main characteristics, and even received 2 new skills: Fist of Aggression and Flame of the Black Emperor. However, the next promotion requires a whole 1,000 experience points. But with the loot talent of SS rank, this shouldn't be much of a problem. After upgrading the Dark Emperor, Zhang still had some Spirit Ascension crystals left, which he decided to give to the Lord of Prayers. The remaining crystals weren't enough to raise the spirit's rank, but they were enough to raise its characteristics a bit. After upgrading the spirit, our hero has increased the chance of inflicting non-critical damage to the enemy, and given his new sword, Heart of Destruction, the probability of inflicting a critical blow is equal to 50%. Absorbing the crystal, Lord Praying thanked his wife for giving him the opportunity to become stronger. There were no more Spirit Ascension crystals left, but there was still a whole mountain of small, useless crystals. By giving some of these crystals to Kaguya, she also increased her base characteristics. The crystals received were enough to increase the rank of the skill Rainy Night, which in general equaled the Kaguya in strength to the Dark Emperor, who was above her in rank. Notice that Jean is falling off his feet, as he hasn't rested in a week. The Lord of Prayer has offered to help. The remaining crystals might be enough to awaken the Moving Fruit and upgrade it to the SS rank. This is only possible because initially, the Moving Fruit hunts at the peak of the S rank. Considering all the spirits and equipment, Jean is now around level 7, rank SS. And an awakened rank, SSS, with only 1 spirit is unable to resist our hero. However, if the future diary is to be believed, Takati, an unusual awakened rank, SSS, our hero's only chance of victory is the new Dark Emperor. Meanwhile, Takati was waiting for our hero in the Weeping Grave, and you can be sure he prepared for their battle. As a monk in one of the oldest temples in the country, Takati could call upon the gods for help.
Let's see how these gods will help him against our hero!
After a failed attack, Jean said, "Bravo. I knew you were incredibly strong, but I thought a surprise attack would take you by surprise." Seeing in front of him a young skinny guy, Takati asked in surprise, "Who the hell are you? And why are you attacking me?"
So you don't know me? Let's get acquainted, I'm the one who will kill you!
Jean shouted angrily. "Kill me? You're just a child. Don't think you can do anything to me with your spirit," replied Takachi with a laugh. Couldn't such a highly ranked awakened person feel the power of our hero? Realizing that every second counts, our hero summoned a Kaguya, trying to launch a surprise attack once again. Just like last time, the attack was unsuccessful. Only this time, Takachi summoned his spirit, Divine Projection. It was only through a miracle that Kaguya was able to block the attack. "Kid, I'll let you live if you tell me who sent you to kill me," Takachi asked our hero. At that moment, Jean stood dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that the man was able to sense and block Kaguya's hidden attack. After all, she has the lowest visibility among spirits. Realizing that things were not turning out in his favor, Jean ordered the Dark Emperor to deal with Takati immediately. But to no avail, the man summoned his second spirit. "Dark Emperor Kaguya, retreat!" shouted Jean in alarm. "Really so, Dark Emperor? That's you? I didn't expect you to have as many as 2 spirits. That explains a lot." In a smug voice, Takachi said, "I finally figured it out. I recommend you to give it your best or you'll die," replied Jean. At that moment, Takati was curious as to why the Dark Emperor had come for him so suddenly. But remembering Derek's words, he realized that our hero is most likely reborn and knows something. I must say that this man has won more than a dozen battles, or rather, he has never lost, even with his tongue hanging out. Realizing at last who he was dealing with, Takati asked the dashing demon to share a lair with him. Takati and Jean had much more in common than they both realized. Both were willing to do anything to achieve their goal. They weren't afraid to get their hands dirty with blood. Summoning his strongest fighting spirit, Takati offered our hero a choice. If Jean would kneel and surrender, he would let him live. If not, he would kill him without hesitation. After dodging the attack of the dashing demon, Jean made a wish. "All the power of the world will disappear before me. The attacks of the Dark Emperor will not be stopped." After waiting for the spell to work, the Dark Emperor attacked, and with him and Kaguya along with him, Jean planned to launch a double attack from different directions so that the Takati wouldn't stand a chance. There was little chance of this attack, but it was worth a try. Besides, Jin wanted to see what Takichi was really capable of. This tactic made the man use the Thunderer's skill and ask the Goddess of Mercy for help, which caused the Dark Emperor to be thrown backwards. And a moment later, there was a tremendous rumble in the canyon. And out of the cloud of smoke, a giant hand appeared. It looks like this is the spirit that made Katya get the SSS rank. The giant god spirit called Danmo. And when I say giant, I mean taller than a 50-story building. After Danmo appeared, the Dark Emperor and Kaguya's main goal was not to kill Takachi, but to protect Jin. Because of its enormous size, Danmo was slow, which the Dark Emperor wanted to take advantage of. Kaguya also decided not to stand by and try to stop the spirit, to no avail, even without the use of skills. Danmo can easily stand up to 2 SS rank spirits. Despite its slow movement, Danmo had a very high attack speed, not to mention its catastrophic damage. According to the future diary, Takati still had skills that could summon lightning strikes. So on top of all that, he also has 3 spirits with different types of action: attacker, defender, and tank. Given all of this, it's clear that he got his rank for a reason. Suddenly, Takachi ordered Danmo to retreat.
Hey, old man, why did you call him off? Are you afraid?
Shouted Jin with a sneer. Laughing loudly, Takati replied, "Kid, don't make me laugh. Even if you are reborn again, I will not be afraid of you." Although Jean didn't show it, he was surprised that the man knew about his rebirth. "Takati, that's your name, isn't it? Tell me, is my rebirth the reason you want to kill me?" our hero asked. "Not really, I just want to prove that even if you are all from the future, you're still weaker than me," replied Takati. Jin couldn't help but notice that Takati said the word "you," which meant that our hero wasn't the only person who could be reborn. After hearing this, the guy realized that he had to find others like him. But first he had to deal with this old man. Changing his sky blue aura to wild flames, the man summoned another spirit, Flaming Night Yang. This spirit was well known to our hero, as it would become a legendary spirit in the future. "I see you are surprised. Danmo was able to resist 2 of your spirits at once, but Flame Knight will not leave you the slightest chance," Takati said smugly. After that, Jin pulled out a gun. When the old man saw this, he laughed. After all, in the age of the awakened, only weaklings and idiots use firearms. "I didn't prepare this gun for you." Putting the gun to his temple with a smile on his face, Jin said, "Man, just because you can't beat me, doesn't mean you have to kill yourself. Doesn't mean you have to kill yourself. I can make you my assistant." Takachi added fearfully, "Are you stupid? Who told you that I'm going to kill you?" Holding back laughter asked our hero. But despite this, Jin still pulled the trigger and put a bullet in his head. And of course, this whole theatrical performance was for one purpose only: to summon the savior. You have to admit, bringing a gun to summon a spirit is pretty smart. Takati found this way of summoning a spirit quite amusing. But he was sure it wouldn't make a difference. "Hey, old man, since you summoned 4 spirits, I had to summon a few more," said our hero, holding back a smile. Realizing that the battle was starting to heat up, Takati ordered his spirits to kill Jin immediately. Jin was of the same opinion. He ordered his spirits to avoid fighting Takati's spirits and concentrate on capturing the man. Realizing that getting to the man would be difficult, the Dark Emperor decided to distract Danmo. Kaguya wanted to fight the Flame Knight and the God Projection, while the Savior was capturing Takachi. But the Savior ordered the girl to help the Dark Emperor, while he will deal with the rest of the spirits. Besides, he's the only spirit in our hero's arsenal that can more or less fight on an equal footing with the Flaming Knight of Yang. Still, we shouldn't forget that the difference between SS rank and SSS is incredibly big. But a big difference in strength doesn't mean that the Savior can't fight against the Flame Knight. The Savior surpassed the Knight in intelligence, and in battle it was evident. He succeeded in trapping the spirit, but unfortunately it did not bring any significant result. When Takati saw that the Flaming Knight was trapped, he sent another spirit to help him. He sent a spirit named Guan to help him. Unlike all the spirits, she was the only one without combat skills. But she made up for it with her healing abilities. All the damage that the Flaming Knight received from the explosions was healed in a matter of seconds. At this point, Jin realized that attacking while Guan was still able to heal was a waste of energy. Realizing that all attacks were futile, Jin ordered the spirits to retreat. Even the Savior, with his ego, was in agreement with his master's decision. Seeing Jin retreating, Takachi laughingly shouted, "Scared? Realize there's too much difference between us." And the old man counterattacked. The situation was the same as the prediction in the Diary of the Future. Remembering the last prediction, our hero decided to activate the perfect fusion. Thanks to his higher rank, Jin can merge 3 spirits at once. Kaguya was taken as the basis of the merged spirit, dressed in the armor of the Dark Emperor and imbued with the aura of the Savior. The resulting spirit was given the rank of SS+++. This spirit is fully comparable to a spirit of the SSS rank. 4 spirits, 2 of which were SSS ranked spirits, were up against one reinforced Kaguya. The first to attack was the God Projection. Let's see who's stronger than heaven or hell. With her first blow, Kaguya broke the Holy Staff, the strongest weapon of the Takati spirits. Next in her path was the Flaming Knight and Danmo. They would be much harder to deal with than the God Projection. After all, they are both spirits of the highest rank. Takati suddenly said, "Dark Emperor, I admit you're strong, but you can't beat me with these tricks. Let me show you what the strongest monk can do," added the man, taking out a small gold bar. Raising this artifact above his head, Takati began to recite a prayer in the dead language of Ishi, which frankly frightened Jean. After all, it was unclear what to expect. January 11th, 1821st year, the 56th generation of monks of the Temple of Heaven performed a true miracle. They single-handedly defeated the Wild Hunt, which had been doing evil for years, wiping out entire towns and bringing death wherever they set foot. And 116 years after those events, the holy artifact that defeated the Wild Hunt was inherited by the next monk. The previous owner of the artifact entrusted the holy treasure to his successor to free the land from chaos. And after another 56 years, this holy artifact was given to a Takati for the same purpose. In the heavenly temple, there was an ancient scroll with a prediction that the age of chaos would begin at the beginning of the 21st century. The Council of High Monks placed the burden of saving the people on the shoulders of the Takati, and this holy artifact the man prayed to was summoning the souls of all the previous owners. Simply put, Takati had just summoned 12 high-ranking spirits. No matter how much Jean wanted to, he couldn't handle such an army. Kaguya fought off the monk spirits with all her might, but there were too many of them. While Kaguya fought off the spirits, other spirits activated the holy sealing technique. The angel bell is designed to seal all living beings without exception. Takati was sure that the fight was already over. He promised to keep our hero alive if he would bend the knee and surrender. "After you, I'll take on Derek, because you've both come back from the future. That'll be my team. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but you've already lost. Tonight I'm going to destroy everything you believe in," Jean replied with a smile on his face. At that moment, a look of genuine bewilderment appeared on Takati's face. By activating the emotion detonator, our hero was about to grow a moving fruit. The diary of the future had made it clear that only with his power could Jean win. If Jean chose the wrong emotion to awaken, this fruit could harm him. That's why our hero activated the emotion detonator to find the right material for awakening. But in the range of the skills, there was only fear, terror, anger, and despair. But all these emotions didn't fit. Suddenly, 100 kilometers away, Jean saw something interesting. The head of the city police was rewarding a reporter for a job well done. She had filmed the battle between the Dark Emperor and the boss of the disaster. And now, the recording of this battle want to include on all TV channels to show people that these monsters are not invincible. Encouraged by our hero, the people took a fighting spirit and were ready to repel their city and the insects. Hope. This is the emotion that makes the moving fetus be born. Hope, an incredibly powerful emotion that can endow a spirit with absolute capabilities. Having absorbed the hope of a city of many millions, the fetus finally began to awaken. First, wings as white as the light of the sun emerged from the egg, and soon a beautiful angel of hope emerged from the egg, who was ready to help Jean overcome all difficulties. The new spirit was a SS-ranked spirit. Its basic characteristics were at a very low level. However, the skill Overloaded Existence completely compensated for these shortcomings. By absorbing people's hope, the spirit is able to make the other spirits not consume energy and increase their power by 20%. Meanwhile, Takachi went on the attack. "Hey, gray-haired princess, how can your faith compare to the hope of millions of people?" our hero asked with a smile on his face. Thanks to the Angel of Hope, Jean finally had a real chance to win. After gathering enough power, the angel took action. The enhanced Kaguya, trapped in the trap, felt her power begin to grow unstoppable. A 20% boost to all her stats was more than enough to break Takashi's shackles. Seeing Kaguya escape the trap, the monk tried to stop her with his protective spirits. Their attacks were no more dangerous to her than a mosquito bite. Thanks to her high intelligence, Kaguya knew it was risky to attack head-on. So she allowed Takachi to launch a series of strong attacks to create a cloud of whir on the battlefield. Using this cloud, the girl was able to take the monk by surprise and get as close as possible to attack him. But unfortunately, it didn't work. Takati, with the help of Guan, took the form of a spirit and lost his physical body. After that, she was attacked by a divine projection. It didn't do any damage, but it bought Takati some time. Once again, after dealing with the god projection, the girl decided not to make up anything and just attacked the monk openly. At this moment, our hero asked the Angel of Hope and Lord of Prayers to strengthen the cage as much as possible. The next attack should end their fight, so Jean wants to act for sure. Under the reinforcement, the already reinforced spirit has unlocked a new skill: Hound Posts. With the new skill, Kaguya was able to completely neutralize an entire army of Takati's spirits. In desperation, the monk decided to use his last trump card. He summoned the Great Arctic Warrior. Interestingly, Takati can summon so many spirits, even more than our hero. In addition, this Great Arctic Warrior is simply enormous in size, even bigger than Danmo. Despite its appearance, this spirit had only one ability. It could teleport its master. Everything happened just as Future Diary had foreseen. Takachi escaped. After seeing the monk disappear, our hero ordered the Lord of Prayers to locate him. Because the monk used up too much energy during the battle, he couldn't get far. Meanwhile, Takati was trying to figure out what to do next. Only 3 of the monk's army of spirits remained alive. He realized that if he fought the Dark Emperor again, he would lose his remaining spirits. The only choice was to go back to the temple and ask for help. Takati's only regret now was that he hadn't killed Jean in the beginning. Suddenly, the monk felt someone approaching him. To figure out what was wrong, he decided to use the sacred talismans of the divine eyes. Then he saw the spirit of our hero running a few hundred meters away from him. "How the fuck did he find me so fast?" Takachi shouted in fright. Realizing that he couldn't take another battle, the monk asked the Great Arctic Warrior for help. A moment later, our hero arrived at the same place. However, Jean was not going to let him go just like that. The guy asked that the Lord of Prayers constantly track his movements. Of course, our hero could let Takachi go, but he realized that sooner or later they would meet again, and then there would be no guarantee that he could win. While hiding, the monk tried to understand how our hero could possess so many different skills at the same time, because Derek said that there were no such people in the future. Suddenly, Takati met a military man who asked for his help. The thing is that while clearing the city, the military came across a huge boss, which even awakened S rank cannot cope with. But at that moment, the man felt someone approaching him again. Realizing that it was once again Jean who had come for his soul, Takati pushed the military man away and continued to run wherever his eyes could see, leaving defenseless humans to be torn apart by monsters. Or not. Luckily for the military, there was our hero, who, unlike Takati, decided to help them. "Hey kid, are you okay?" asked our hero. Seeing Jean, the eyes of the military man almost fell out, after which his shaking voice shouted, "Impossible! It's you!" But time to talk to the guy. Our hero had no time. He had to kill all the monsters, so that they do not hurt people. Watching the Dark Emperor crush his monsters, the military could not believe that he could survive the night. After seeing that, the soldier begged Jean to help them deal with all the monsters. After all, ordinary monster automatons are harmless. "You just don't worry, as long as I'm here, no one will harm you," replied our hero. Of course, fighting monsters, there is a high probability of missing Takati. But if our hero does not help us, the Angel of Hope will lose its power. You may be wondering where this boss came from, but Vicjan has already dealt with it. It's very simple. Disaster bosses act like wild animals. They occupy a certain territory and dominate it. Simply put, there can be multiple bosses for one disaster. Listen, gather all your men and retreat, protect the people, and I'll deal with this monster. Taking out the Heart of Destruction, added our hero. Having already defeated one such monster, Jean, how to defeat him. And with the new sword and strengthened Kaguya, it will be easy to do it. But unfortunately, at that moment, the perfect fusion came to an end. In the end, everything turned out exactly as Future Diary predicted. John defeated Takachi, but he escaped, especially since saving hundreds of lives of ordinary citizens is more important than chasing an idiot. Meanwhile, the soldier our hero met reported to the High Command that their squad was saved by the Dark Emperor. As our hero planned, after defeating the first boss, he became a real hero to the ordinary people. Meanwhile, Jean was fighting the boss with all his might. He decided to use the same tactic as last time, a joint attack. With the upgraded spirit rank and new sword, it only took a couple of blows to send the boss to the next world. After that, within a radius of 10 kilometers, the normal insects began to behave strangely. They didn't seem to panic or know what to do. A minute later, the radio reported that the Dark Emperor had just defeated the boss, which raised the morale of the ordinary soldiers. With the boss finished, our hero decided it was time to take on his pathetic insect army. Of course, the battle with so many monsters will be very energy-consuming, but will give quite a lot of experience points. Besides, this is the perfect time to test something out, namely the spirit of the ice dragon from the Weeping Tomb. Although its combat power is no different from a normal S-rank spirit, its large size is perfect for fighting these insects. In addition, the ice dragon has a pretty good skill for defeating a group of enemies. Killing bosses brings Jean 5 lottery tickets on the Wheel of Fortune, and the experience gained for killing small insects can be enough to improve the characteristics. Suddenly, our hero heard a shout, "Dark Emperor, hold on, we're coming!" Turning around, Jean saw an armed group of soldiers rushing to his aid. Funny thing is, after what he saw, they decided he needed help. "Don't come any closer, just watch!" shouted our hero in a commanding tone. Jean might have let them help, but as long as the boss is alive, it's too dangerous. It will be very problematic to fight an army of monsters and make sure no one gets hurt. At one point, our hero decided to show off his power and kill the boss without the help of spirits. With the heart of destruction and specialization, Swordsman of the Storm, to do this is more than realistic. After killing the next boss, Jean received 5 lottery tickets and 5 destiny crystals, and raised his level to 29th. Seeing the man single-handedly slaying the disaster boss, the soldiers' mouths dropped open in surprise. Noticing this, Jean added pathetically, "This trash is finished, take care." After dealing with the next disaster boss, Jean not only earned additional experience, but also raised his social ranking. Meanwhile, Takachi was desperately trying to escape from the pursuit. Given his low energy reserves, the monk thought the best place to hide was their team headquarters. He hoped that Derek would help him get rid of the Dark Emperor, but to his disappointment, there was no one at the headquarters. So Takachi decided to leave a note. "I found the Dark Emperor. His powers were far greater than we thought. If you help me get rid of him, I promise I won't be in debt." Staying here without any support was dangerous, so the man left a note and left. Running away forever, Takachi couldn't do it. He wanted to find a way to get rid of the Dark Emperor's surveillance. To do so, he summoned the spirit of his mentor to help him break the spell of persecution. This spirit is a bit like the Lord of Prayer, but unlike our hero's spirit, this one couldn't fulfill every wish. However, the spirit of the mentor had magical powers and could help Takachi in this situation. By casting a special spell, the spirit made the monk practically invisible to any sensory skills. Asking for help from his mentor, Takachi realized how reckless he had been. Because of his arrogance, he had lost most of his battle spirits. Now the monk's only goal was to get stronger and wash away the shame he had recently suffered. Opening the system window, Takachi noticed that one of his spirits had lost as much as 120 intelligence points, and the Heavenly Greatness skill was only 60% active. But there was no time to deal with it now. First, we need to hide in a safe place. Meanwhile, the Lord of Prayers reported that he had lost Takachi's trail. That's okay, I have other things to do. Besides, thanks to the future diary, whatever he does, I'll be able to get ahead of him. With a smile on his face, our hero replied. In addition, Jean made a wish. If Takachi gets any of those who are dear to our hero closer than 20 kilometers, Jean must know about it. Having finished with all the disaster bosses, the guy decided to see what reinforcements it brought him. The Lord of Heaven's dignity was pumped up by 40%, and the Dark Emperor gained as much as 20 intelligence points. Interesting. There was no doubt that the Dark Emperor had taken the intelligence points from one of Takachi's spirits. But how did that happen? But we'll deal with that later. Right now, Jean was trying to figure out how to use the Heavenly Teacher's order. Remembering that Takachi had applied something similar to his flask, our hero tried to do exactly the same thing, but without success. Most likely, it didn't work because it's a special fact of monks, not meant to be used by ordinary people. After some thought, Jean asked the Lord of Prayer to change the Heavenly Teacher's order so that only he could use it. Of course, the spirit could do this, but it would take half of his energy to do the conversion. Jean believed that energy was just a resource, a means to an end, so he stockpiled crystals to replenish the spirit's energy. After rewarding the Lord of Prayers with a couple of these crystals, the spirit began the spell. This token is like a dungeon treasure, with a characteristic panel comparable to a divine level item. After Jean was able to use this token, he learned of its very interesting abilities. With its help, our hero can summon 10 spirits of monks from the Heavenly Temple to help him fight. It turns out that after Kaguya killed most of the monk spirits, this ability was passed on to our hero. Even though Jean didn't manage to kill Takachi, he ended up winning the fight. Now that the catastrophe has begun to recede and Takachi is carefully hidden, it's time to replenish his energy reserves. After all, with the increased rank of the spirits, the energy consumption had also increased. Meanwhile, Derek's teammates reported some very interesting news to him. They had discovered Takati's letter and told Derek the contents of the letter. To be honest, Derek wasn't happy about it, and neither were the rest of the team. After all, Takati is the strongest of them all. Derek was well aware that the Dark Emperor now had reason to deal with him and his team. Realizing that the situation was even more dangerous than before, Derek decided to explore the Weeping Tomb. Finding the canyon where the battle had taken place, Derek asked his spirit to rewind time. He wanted to see what happened that made the Takati so scared. After rewinding the time back a few hours, Derek found the fragment of time he was interested in. While watching the fight, he was particularly interested in one segment, so he decided to watch this episode of the fight in more detail. Once inside, Derek immediately stumbled into a cage. Looking around, he found the Dark Emperor. Now Derek knew what he looked like, and frankly, the man was very surprised. And there were several reasons for that. First, Jean was much younger than Derek had imagined, and secondly, he knew all the legendary heroes, and Jean wasn't one of them. Realizing that something was amiss, Derek decided to watch the fight to the end, to find at least the slightest clue. And the more he watched, the more horrified he became. Derek had no doubt that Jean had stolen some of his power, and to get it back, he'd have to kill our hero. But despite that, Derek still didn't understand how Takati could lose. After all, he's a true SSS rank. Watching the fight over and over again, the man couldn't understand at what point the Dark Emperor took the initiative. Suddenly, his spirit said, "Sir, my strength is running out. I still don't understand how this can be. How can he have so many spirits?" shouted Derek nervously. "I have to look again. Extend the effects of the skill," the man added rudely. "Master, but in that case I'll have to sleep for a while," replied the spirit anxiously. "It's okay. Even if I have to use up all the energy, I have to find out what his power is," replied Derek. As he rewound time again, he finally found what he was looking for. He saw Jean taking the power of the man he'd killed. What he saw explained how the Dark Emperor had gotten hold of so many spirits. But there was a new question. How could he take Derek's power? I mean, they'd never even met before. Having learned about the origin of our hero's power, Derek's spirit offered to track down our hero and kill him. However, the man rejected the idea. First, he wanted to find out if the Dark Emperor was a good man. After all, the impending monsters from other worlds will bring chaos to the world, and a man like the Dark Emperor can become a serious weapon in the hands of mankind. Meanwhile, our hero has once again cleansed the Weeping Grave, all for the improved ashes of the dead. Immediately after the Weeping Grave, our hero traveled to the Holy Lands to gather the fruits of the Divine Tree, and after collecting all the loot in this dungeon, Jean went to the Duan Vault. With the help of the Lord of Prayers, he found the building of interest in the vast metropolis. Entering the supposed vault, Jean found himself in an ordinary office. But on one of the bookshelves, he noticed something interesting. One of the books was much less dusty than the others. Tilting this book opened up a secret passage, just like you see in the best detective movies. Inside, our hero was ready to see anything, but not this. In all the time Duan had been in charge of the prison, he had managed to steal enough gold to provide for a small country. It's true what they say, in bad times the poor get poorer and the rich get richer, the kind of money that can solve any problem. So our hero took it for himself. After that, Jean ordered the Lord of Prayers to find a guy named Vance, who works in the Van Group. It's time to avenge the bastard for what he did to Eric. If it weren't for the sudden appearance of Takachi, John would have dealt with him long ago. As the second young master of a huge corporation, Vance lived in the most expensive neighborhood in the city. Besides, while Eric was rotting in jail, the asshole was spending his illicitly earned money on all sorts of nonsense. Vance had a lot of other crimes on his record besides his illicit wealth. But because of his money and power, the police turned a blind eye. And after the disaster in the city, Vance lost all humanity. He would kidnap women from their homes and do whatever he wanted to them, then just kill them. Then one day, on one of Vance's usual days, the lights came on in his office. Jean suddenly appeared and said, "Vance, I think you're getting a little carried away. I suggest you play one last game with me. Who are you, and how did you get here?" Vance whispered fearfully. After which, Jean activated the skill Dignity of the Lord of Heaven, plunging the guy into illusions. And so, when you don't ask any more stupid questions, I'll tell you the rules of the game. The only question is whether or not you survive tonight. Listen carefully. There are 100 monsters waiting for you. If they catch you, you're finished. Well, it's a game, and you have a chance to win if you can get out the back door. I'll let you go. Well, I think I've explained it all quite cleverly. So good luck with that. As he left, our hero said, after which Vance woke up and whispered, "I have to finish with this chemistry. I'm already starting to hallucinate. Just then, on the roof, there was a loud stomping of paws and a shrill screech of wings. A moment later, a group of insects snuck right into his office through the vent. Running away from the insects, Vance screamed hysterically, asking for help. Remembering our hero's words about the game, the guy ran toward the back door. And so he did. As soon as he stepped through the door, the insects got away from him.
Congratulations! You have successfully passed the first level!
John shouted out of the thick fog, holding back laughter. Let's keep up the pace and start the second level right away. Meet the White Fog Killer, added our hero.
Who are you and what do you want? You do realize that as soon as I get out of here, you're dead!
Vance shouted back angrily. And you're funny. Try to get out of here first. From the fog, our hero replied. On the second level, our hero prepared for the guy a huge bug called Cleaver. The condition for completing this level was to get back to the room. All these trials with monsters, Jean prepared for one purpose, to make fun of this bastard. Running away from Tisak, the guy firmly decided that any price must and find out the name of our hero and kill him. At one point, Vance was so intent on the manner that he failed to notice the threshold and stumbled. And that mistake almost cost him his life. But Jean couldn't let the guy get killed by some monster. Our hero had organized this game just so that Vance could experience a real horror in his last moments. After Tisak grabbed the guy, he started begging for mercy, trying to bribe our hero with money. I'll be honest, I don't like you. However, if you answer my questions, I might let you live. With a smile on his face, said our hero. I am interested in who besides you. Who else was involved in the theft of relics from the Hangzhou Museum? Jean added. Vance was surprised to hear this, because he was sure that he had solved this question even then. Boy, I don't know what kind of body you had before, but I was acting on the orders of Bharat Wang, Vance replied in a trembling voice. Are you saying that Wang Chunji, your big brother? Questioned our hero in surprise. Yes, he is the most important in our family. Everything we do, it's on his orders, excitedly shouted Vance. After that, the guy activated his talent Charm, thanks to which he lured girls to him. Vance hoped that his skill would work, and he would be able to convince our hero that it was all his brother's fault. After listening to the guy, Jean sighed heavily and said, Strange you are a man, and after all, I gave you a chance. Then he attacked the boy. You promised to let me go if I told you everything. Vance shouted through the pain. Tell me, are you really such an idiot or just pretending? Did you really think that your low-ranked skill would work on me? Asked our hero with a haughty face. With Vance, it's clear he's a scumbag to the core. But his older brother Vance was different. He valued and respected all people regardless of their condition, and taught his son the same. But to no avail, the boy thought all poor people were stupid sheep who served the rich. Suddenly, Van felt that someone was following him, so he summoned his spirit Como. In addition to the spirit, the guy also decided to reinsure himself, so he prepared a gun. And a moment later, a stranger walked through the door and shouted loudly, Does Wang Chunji live here? Thanks to his high perception, Wang sensed that the stranger was dangerous. However, he didn't get heated, just asked who he was and what he wanted. It doesn't matter. I'm just a man who passed by and heard what your son thinks of us. You can call me a stupid sheep. And all the men across from him answered Jean. To be honest, I like that kid's analogy. But I have a question for you. What do you think a sheep will do if it gets power? Added our hero. I don't think you can be called a sheep if you manage to get into my house, through all the guards, answered the van. Believe me, you're mistaken. I'm just a common sheep. Please answer my question, asked John politely. With all due respect, a sheep is always a sheep, no matter how much power it has, replied Van with caution. Because fate in being eaten by a wolf, added the lad, to which our hero reluctantly agreed. At this point, our hero remembered his last conversation with his brother. As unfortunate as it may sound, but in today's world, good deeds do not earn you respect. In the end, you'll be eaten by the wolf. You know, Mr. Van, your answer has opened my eyes to a lot of things. It seems that only by not becoming sheep can we avoid the fate of the sheep, said Jean. That's all very well, but you didn't come here for that, did you? The man asked a little nervously. Thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot. I came here to collect my debt, Jean replied with a laugh. Debt? Wang asked in surprise. Yes, this is a tangential relic stolen from the Hangzhou Museum. Your brother said that you are involved in this, or am I wrong? Jean asked sullenly. God, him again. I don't know anything about this beauty, Van replied with a heavy sigh. Our family lives by all human laws, but Vance is an exception. He always liked to get into trouble, added the man. Well, we have the testimony of two brothers who blame each other. Jean felt that Van awakened S rank. so there was no point in fighting him. According to this, our hero decided to just tell him the whole story as it was. Seeing that the guy was sad, the man said, "I understand you are a victim of that situation. I realize I can't fix it, but I can offer compensation. And you're smarter than your brother. Ordinary people would probably thank you for it." With a slight smile, our hero said. Hearing this, Wang was really scared. Whereupon our hero proposed to parry. He will let Wang live if his spirit lasts longer than 5 seconds against the Dark Emperor, to which the man readily agreed. After all, he was an awakened S-rank spirit after all. The man's spirit had maximum strength and agility, making him a very dangerous opponent. And thanks to a special skill, Wang could see the future 1 second in advance. Fully convinced of his superiority, the man ordered his spirit to kill Jean. But no sooner had he attacked than his face met with the Dark Emperor's fist. Thanks to his higher rank, our hero's spirit didn't stand a chance against the Steel Knight. The van couldn't believe his eyes. Just now, a foolish sheep had finished off his S-rank spirit with a single blow. Well, since the man had failed the test, Jean was going to kill him. And that's when Wang put his gun to good use. No matter how fast the spirit was, he would hardly be able to keep up with the bullet. However, our heroes were ready for such a development, and asked the Lord of Prayer that his gun jammed. And it did. The trusty Glock failed. I realize I have no more trump cards left. Van offered to buy his life. All right, I'll listen to you. How much are you willing to pay for your own skin? Asked our hero with a sneer. Instead of money, the man offered me something else. The help of his family. It's a tempting offer. I won't deny it. But your family has already given me too much. It gave me a reason to fight. What do you mean? The man asked fearfully. But instead of answering the question, our hero ordered the Dark Emperor to finish what he started. Because of the reduced damage to humans, the spirit needed several blows to kill him. After killing Wang, our hero wanted to create a new obedient puppet in his family. By robbing the man, Jean gained a new S-rank talent, on a whim. Effects. When danger strikes, different levels of warning will appear depending on the degree of danger. Considering future plans, this skill could become quite useful. However, as you and I already know, the new skill is not the only thing Jean has gained. The new spirit retains all of its previous characteristics and abilities. The only thing that has changed is his name. He is no longer a Steel Knight, but a Transcendent. Transcendent is a very powerful spirit, but its abilities are inferior to Dark Emperor and Kaguya. Suddenly the spirit said, "Sir, you underestimate me. I am much stronger than you think," clearly implying superiority over the Dark Emperor. The newcomer's insolent behavior angered the Dark Emperor, so he offered to fight him again. However, Jean stopped them, for there was no need for a battle. Dark Emperor had long since reached the SS rank, while Transcendent was still a normal S rank. The skill of anticipating an attack greatly interested our hero, so he wanted to raise the rank of his new spirit. After talking to the two brothers, Jean still didn't know who had framed Eric. Not wanting to talk to those arrogant assholes anymore, Jean asked the Lord of Prayer to have the main tower of the van group besieged by monsters. It's time to meet a man named Dao and his son. At the moment, Dao is the third contender for the title of head of the family, after Vance and Van. Unlike Vance, Dao is not just a bad man, he's a real strategist. He realized that this disaster was the perfect chance to create his own team and take control of the best dungeons. As Dao was discussing his son's plans for the future, our hero joined them. "Hello, I just took care of the first 2 applicants for the head of the family," Jean said with a smile. "What did you just say?" shouted Dao and his son in surprise. "How dare you kill my cousins? You can't live for this!" With rage in his eyes, the boy added. "Shut up and bring this young man a cup of tea," interrupting his son, shouted the Dao. "And be quick about it." With full seriousness in his voice, added the man. Left alone, the Dao thanked our hero for his help. "No need for unnecessary thanks. I hope your son will not cause me any trouble," asked Jean politely. "He's a good guy, don't worry about that." "Is what you just said true?" cautiously asked the man. "Wait until the disaster is over, and then you'll find out. Besides, I'll help you solve all the problems that may arise on your way. I don't want to insult you, but your view of the future is too shallow. Soon this world will disappear and there will be chaos," replied Jean. "Are you saying that there will be some kind of apocalypse?" Tao asked in surprise. "You could say that. With your resources, we will take over the world." Echidna chuckle replied our hero. Frankly speaking, Jean's behavior a little alarmed Dao. After all, he was still very young, and already talked about such things. Anyway, our hero offered a deal. He would help Dao take over the family, and the man would help him in the future. When he saw the doubt in the man's eyes, he said, I need your family to complete my plan, and you need me to fulfill your ambitions. But the man still had his doubts because he was seeing our hero for the first time. I understand your anxiety, but frankly I don't want any trouble to happen to you, and especially not to your son, whispered Jean in a grim voice, as Dao's son entered the room with a tray of tea. Son, you're just in time. Please call Uncle Pant, anxiously asked the man. Pant is an employee of the Group 1 who recently awakened an S-rank contract-type talent. And after a couple minutes the guy honored his father's request and brought Pant. Dao asked Pant to summon his spirit and talk a little about his abilities. His skill is called Yesterday's Contract. He can make a contract for both parties. If one party fails to fulfill what the contract stipulates, it will be enforced when time runs out. A rather curious skill. Dao was willing to make a contract with our hero, provided it was formalized by a punt with his skill. Under the terms of the contract, Dao becomes the head of the family, and Jean receives 30% of all earnings of the Group 1 and 40% of their connections. Well, the terms of the contract were more than acceptable. After Dao put his seal on the contract, John did the same. Our hero agreed to this contract for one simple reason. His rank is much higher than the Panthus, and even if he breaks the contract, there will be no repercussions for him. After the successful conclusion of the contract, our hero decided to leave. Left alone, the son of Dao said, "Dad, do you really want to make an alliance with him? He single-handedly killed Vans and Van, so yes. In this situation, he could be useful to us," replied the Dao sadly. In the meantime, after the contract was signed, Jean decided to concentrate on increasing his strength. First, we need to make a stockpile of energy and various potions, because soon it will become the main currency. Then, our hero was going to create a company, and then a guild. He decided to follow the example of the strongest people from his past life. At this point, Jean felt like a real cheater. In addition, for his great contribution to the disaster, he received the sword Leap of Fire, and with it, the hidden skill of Storm Swordsman, wielding a two-handed sword. Also, Jean was only one step away from reaching level 40. Although the catastrophe happened beforehand, it only ended with the appearance of the next catastrophe. That means that very soon the world's first dungeons of level 40 and above will open up. But before going there, our hero wanted to improve his swords to the limit. And to do so, Jean came to the Minimoku Bears. In a past life, many awakened men had tried to learn their secrets, but had always failed, no matter their rank. Our hero witnessed a very interesting situation. An awakened man wanted the Minimoku to repair his sword for free, while threatening them with death. These bears may look cute, but they actually have a nasty temper. As expected, the Minimoku didn't tolerate the insults, and threw the guy out of their workshop, and banned him from entering their realm. Otherwise, they would kill him. Next in line was our hero. He wanted to improve the order he'd gotten after his fight with the Takati. After examining this metal token, one of the bears sullenly said, "Quite interesting, but you still need the essence of the king." Ajin suspected that he would need something unique to enhance such a relic. But the king's essence is an incredibly rare item that can only be obtained from high-ranked bosses of 6th level and above. "I heard you. I'll put this order on hold for the day for now. Now help me with these swords." Holding out the Heart of Destruction and Fire Leap, our hero said. Fortunately, the diamond rarity sword didn't require any special items to enhance it, just the skill of a Monomoku. It only took 15 minutes for the bear to enhance the two swords. Not for their work, they wanted 10 gold coins. Considering the work done, the price was quite fair. Each of the swords received an attack enhancement of 50 points, Minimoku constantly offering improvements to the awakened to earn more money. Each time the upgrades get weaker and the price gets higher. But with an almost unlimited supply of money, Jean decided to upgrade the swords once more. Remember, I told you that Minimoku had a bad temper. Now in the second upgrade, they make the weapon very fragile so that it breaks quickly. You might ask why they do that if they're going to lose customers. It's very simple. They don't care about their customers. Their bad souls want people to be angry and dissatisfied. And Jean knew this about bears, so he made a wish from the Lord of Prayers. A wish. "I only want the Minimoku to strengthen my weapons." Of course, the bear noticed that with each blow of the hammer, the weapon only got better. Nevertheless, he continued his work, hoping that sooner or later the sword would break. But no matter how much the Minimoku wanted to hurt, the result was the opposite, with both swords gaining improvement in almost every characteristic. But despite the utter failure, Minimoku kept working. He was sure that just a little bit more, and the swords would break. But to his disappointment, the swords only got stronger. At one point, the bear went mad, pounding and pounding with his hammer. I hope to break the strong steel. When finished, Bear said, "This is the first time I've ever seen a sword improve without a single failure." "You don't say, it's like magic," smilingly replied John. Minamoku wanted to keep trying to break swords, but reached his daily limit. In his previous life, our hero had lost a dozen swords because of these bears. So this could be considered moral compensation. When suddenly a spirit appeared and began to tell us all the hidden information about Jean's swords. And of course, our hero didn't like it very much. "Shut your mouth. I do not want others to know what my blades are capable of. Or you will get to know them better," shouted Jean in a rage, and then the spirit fell silent. Our hero was afraid that the other awakened would want his swords. "I'm sorry, it's just that your weapon is so amazing that I couldn't resist," replied the jeweler sadly, then added, "Sorry again, my name is Eagle, and this is my spirit. I can see all the hidden information about anything. I noticed how you smiled when Monomoku tried to break your weapon. I take it your spirit brings good luck," replied the stranger. "You hear that, boy? Come out and we'll have a proper talk," shouted Jean angrily. "You misunderstood me. I want to ask you for help when I find a good weapon," added the stranger politely. In fact, the offer was quite interesting. After all, in his previous life, the guilds used to look for luck talent awakeners and pay them very good money. "Okay, I'm fine with your offer. Let's exchange contacts," added our hero. Meanwhile, in the security bureau, there was a meeting regarding the disaster. Fearing that the situation might get out of control, the head of the bureau was going to create a special team to handle the situation. And as captain of the new team, the council wanted the Dark Emperor. But what confused them was that his brother was convicted of a serious crime. But the head of the security bureau reviewed the case files and realized that they were victims of corruption. So he ordered Eric's release as soon as the disaster was over. In addition, the bureau was willing to give the Dark Emperor any means to join the ranks. Though the council had differing opinions on the Dark Emperor and Eric, the decision has been made. The Dark Emperor should be the captain of the new team. After Minamoku, our hero went to his brother's prison to tell him what to do during the next disaster. He also handed him some crystals and a feather of hope. The crystals can be used to upgrade, and the feather if you get into trouble. After thanking his brother for his concern, Eric said, "I'm being treated well. I'll probably be out of here soon." When suddenly, our hero heard the guards whispering that he was the real Dark Emperor that everyone's been talking about lately. Now China is still in the age of peace. It would be impossible to establish your power here. However, there is a small country in the north that has been swallowed up by chaos, where you can seize power. Calling on the Lord of Prayer, Jean asked him to find the man who could take him to North Maymar. And moments later, Jean received a message from the Lord of Prayer about the diamond media. Sometimes skillful hunters can become someone's prey in a matter of seconds. Meanwhile, in the main office of Diamond Media, the editor-in-chief and his secretary were discussing a story for tomorrow's newscast. Or should I say planned. According to the information I received from Lord Prayer, Diamond Media was in this building. But before entering the building, Jean made a wish that ordinary people wouldn't recognize him as the Dark Emperor. You may ask me, what the hell is Jean doing at a news organization? It's very simple. He's here for a job interview. Because of the situation in North Myanmar, no one else goes, except for the various media outlets. Simply put, becoming a reporter is the only way to get into a country in chaos. Thanks to a fake resume and a personal recommendation from his secretary, our hero was quickly hired. Jean's job as a reporter was to get the public's opinion on the latest news. His first day on the job would be tomorrow. Jean's resume was completely fake, and the secretary helped him, only because she wore the charms of the Lord of Prayers. 2 days later, our hero's group finally set off for North Myanmar. Since there were only low-ranked reporters, they were assigned one high-ranked guard, and on this mission, the man will be their team captain. The only way to get to North Myanmar alive was by ground transportation, since the monsters would shoot down any air transport on approach. For most reporters, this was their first trip into the danger zone. Heading north, Jean sensed trouble ahead, but that was nothing compared to his main goal. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Share your opinions in the comments. As for me, the title is not bad, but with its own problems. See you soon.